Hey everyone! I'm sure you can gather exactly what this video is from the title and the sheer length of it alone. Dragon Defender decided to compile every single one of my Songs of War rewrite videos into one mega compilation in chronological order, and wanted to share it with you all. Huge shout out to him for suffering through all the editing required to make this video a reality, and for adding some parts of his own in there as well. And as always, there were so many other people involved in making these videos happen. Get Scribbled, Jesus Alex, all the renderers, animators, and everyone who joined in for the Knights of Ardonia rewrite, thanks to all of you for your contributions. You're awesome. And without further ado, please enjoy this mega rewrite compilation.
In the days of the champions, long before tragedy befell the four clans, our legend begins in a humble fishing town where mighty waves crash and golden lights illuminate the shores. Among the Nestoris Ardoni who dwelled happily here, two were expecting a son. Gloom had no place in their home, yet their spark of joy was snuffed out. The birth of their child caused the death of the mother, leaving behind merely the father and his only newborn son. The lone father buried himself in grief, and in his sorrow he could no longer bear to look his son in the eyes, the very child who stole the life of his mother. The Nestoris cared not for his child, as every time he so much as glanced in the boy's direction, he was reminded of what he had become and who was lost. The markings before him were a spitting image of his own. The father, however, abided by the mother's final wish to give the boy a name of nobility and purity, meaning a bringer of hope. Achilian Nestoris. The battle at Mount Velgrren was a turning point in Ardonia's history, and in this rewrite, as you could tell from the title, it would end a bit differently than the script. Zulius doesn't die. Galadar and Hadeon double-team Deathsinger so their friend can escape, so this time around, Zulius lives. After he escapes, he's met by none other than the Tidesinger himself. Achilian stepped through the portal not long after the Deathsinger, and he and Zulius escaped the mountains together. Now that Zulius is an actual relevant character, we have to expand on his already existing characteristics. When he's introduced, Zulius is the only one who's outraged at the Voltaris attacks, and the first to volunteer to hunt them down. He regrets ignoring Thalius, and the death of the old champion shaped Zulius' worldview. He feels like he needs to be the next Thalius, and takes up the responsibilities left behind by the champion. He's guilt-driven, and knows he's partially responsible for the destruction of the villages, and now the deaths of his companions. Had he listened to Thalius the first time, perhaps all these tragedies wouldn't have happened, and now he's the one who bears the devastating knowledge that Thalius was right. He feels like he must make amends for his arrogance and complacency by helping the Tidesinger stop the Deathsinger and prevent him from destroying the world his friends gave their lives to protect. Okay, something that always bugged me was how both singers time traveled into the future, but that never really came up again and wasn't important at all. To fix this, Achillean struggles to adjust to Ardonia after the Great War, and with redstone technology on the rise and civil wars across the kingdoms, there would be a lot for him to learn. Together, Zulius and Achillean travel to the clans to persuade them to take action in this dire situation. Their plan fails because Zulius rambles incoherently about Thalius being right and Deathsinger's return. And the Tidesinger isn't tide-singing. On the contrary, he's completely disoriented, showing no signs of being a competent leader. Instead of rallying to fight, the masters locked down their borders like cowards. No one else in the provinces knew of the singer's survival, and everyone in that room swore to secrecy to keep it that way. Zulius and Achillean are on their own, so they try to find the Voltaris and get the Tidesinger adjusted to living 150 years outside of his own time. 6 months after the Deathsinger returned is when Season 2 begins. The clanless Ardoni Sen is training with his mentor, Gallius, and his core motivation for training so hard is pure hatred of the Voltaris. Sen's home was destroyed by the Voltaris clan, and his mind begins to spiral. They took everything from Sen. They burned his village, killed Thalius Sindaris, and slaughtered his family, leaving Sen with nothing but grief that turned into anger. Sen has been idolizing Thalius ever since he watched the champion die, and during their training, Gallius sees Thalius' blind hatred in him. He fears Sen will go down the same path his brother did, and he sees a twisted reflection of Thalius in Sen. In the beginning of Season 2, Sen had been asking Gallius when he'd learn to use his songs, yet every time he diverted the topic. Sen grows tired of Gallius' avoidance and begins to act even more like Thalius. He reluctantly calls one of his previous students, Val, to teach Sen about songs. He eventually realizes that Gallius called Val to teach him about the dangers of songs instead of how to actually wield them, but Val teaches Sen to use his song anyway, against Gallius' will. Gallius saw Sen and Val on the shrine using songs from afar, and he just sighs in disappointment, not even attempting to stop them. Val also can tell Sen is a pure Voltaris hater and tries to calm down his anger in her own way. She makes things fun as they learn and lightens up the mood a little whenever they're with each other. Sen's Voltaris bloodlust subsides a little thanks to the peaceful nature of Ataraxia, Gallius' guidance, and his friendship with Val. When Sen overhears Gallius receive a report of a resistance group called the Knights of Ardonia, he remembers Hubris' offer and decides to finally join them. Sen tries to leave in the middle of the night so Gallius wouldn't know, but Gallius being Gallius, of course he knew. He's waiting for Sen in the main room and has a talk with him before he leaves. Gallius can't stop Sen from going and found out he was learning songs behind his back. He isn't mad, he's just disappointed. He's kinda like a tired parent, yet Gallius knows if he stops Sen, then his resentment would only grow. Instead of lecturing Sen, they have a meaningful conversation before he goes off to fight. Sen realizes the not-so-great way he'd been acting and apologizes to Gallius, yet he's still resolute to join the resistance. Sen departs from Gallius on better terms than earlier in Season 2. He just tells Sen to make wise choices and to make him proud. Sen leaves Ataraxia well-equipped with new knowledge, skills, and able to wield songs decently enough to join the fight. Abigail trains Luna as she hunts unyielding legionnaires around Ardonia. She's been gathering information about dragons in the End, not yet sure of her place in all this. Abigail occasionally travels home to Underwood to anonymously deliver supplies and food to Mr. Finch, but she never stays long. Abby finds some legionnaires in Liwa, just west of Underwood, and fights a high-ranking legionnaire with a stolen magic artifact. The Unyielding Legion is super underdeveloped, so we're giving them a basic hierarchy, and only the top members have access to highly sought goods and weapons. Abigail takes back a chest with one such high-value artifact, an Eye of Ender. Then they walk through Underwood to check on Mr. Finch again, and this time she actually sees him from afar as she's leaving food on his doorstep. She runs out of sight before she's spotted, and Luna looks at her sadly as they walk away, implying the question of, why doesn't she just go see him? And Abby just responds with, I know, but after the way I left, I don't know if he'd want to see me again. Merlin the messenger bird arrives and tells them to go to Ataraxia, and once there, Gallius explains more about the End and its many mysteries. He says the End chooses Ender Knights not based on physical might, but on their quality of spirit and mind too. He also warns them, saying, there have been sporadic reports since the Ender Knights disappeared, that the End has been guarded by abnormal creatures from ancient times. We know not what they are, yet it has been confirmed they exist, so be mindful, for no one knows what you may find when you venture into the End. Before they leave, Gallius asks if he could shed some of Luna's overgrown scales, and they oblige to the request. Now, Gallius has the proper materials to forge new obsidian armor. Abby and Luna then go use the Eye of Ender to find the others who've been called by the End. Each episode in the first half of Season 2 will introduce a new Ender Knight. Danny is found first at the Pinkelson Farms, and his and Abby's first interaction is pretty much the same as the script. Danny bids his family farewell, and the Eye leads them to Amaria, where law enforcement officers spot Luna and immediately ask Danny and Abby to help them in arresting the local illegal alchemist. They reluctantly agree, and Abby, Danny, Luna, and the police have a fun little chase running after Saxon. Luna pins him down and they're about to arrest him, but the Eye of Ender circles around him and they realize Saxon the Alchemist is the Ender Knight they came for. When the police refuse to let him off the hook, Abby grabs one of Saxon's slowness potions and throws it at the officers as they run. Outside the city, where it's safer, the three get properly introduced to one another. The Eye leads them to Etheria next, and the city has been in lockdown since the heist pulled by Jelkar and Grimm. Saxon and Abby sneak in with invisibility potions and follow the Eye until they come across Trevor, an apprentice for a master enchanter in the city. The old man leaves the room and the Eye stays lit as they see Trevor use an enchanting table unsupervised and realize he's a prodigy enchanter, yet his master only used him for his dirty work. They try convincing Trevor to go with them, but his master walks back in, and the Eye flies out of Abigail's hand and circles Trevor as if to protect him. Trevor gathers the courage to stand up to the master, and just as he leaves with them, Saxon throws a blindness potion at the old man and shuts the door behind him. Abby asks what was that, but Saxon just says, nothing, and they walk off. Abby and Saxon make it past the guards since they were with a known apprentice, and they reunite with Denny and Luna, and all four knights get acquainted once again, and they march on. They follow the Eye through the Hoodwin colony, and a dragon flies down out of nowhere. Alistair and Thunderdome found them first. He was already on his way to the End Stronghold when he heard rumors of a girl recruiting the new generation of Ender Knights. He seems like this really friendly, helpful, charming guy at first, but Denny realizes he's from Diamond Heights, and notices Thunderdome's submissive attitude towards Alistair and keeps this in mind. The others welcome him with open arms, but Denny sees past his friendly facade. Alistair and Abby have their flying lesson, where Abby rides Luna for the first time through this really cool mountain range. One night, Abby asks Denny what's wrong, and he mentions all the awful things the Evansteins did to farmers like him. But she says Alistair doesn't seem like the rest of his family, and perhaps he was chosen for a reason. Denny still doesn't buy it, but he gives Alistair one chance, and it goes horribly. Alistair downplays Denny's accusations, and this enrages him as he walks off, annoyed. Alistair acts confused and apologizes for how that went, and Denny becomes alienated from the group as he can't get over Alistair's apathy. He becomes gloomy, only staying around out of a sense of loyalty for his newfound friends. The others try to cheer him up to Alistair's dismay, who from time to time asks why not just abandon him. They take this as a joke and nonchalantly refuse, frustrating Alistair, but he keeps his annoyance to himself. Despite Denny's behavior, Alistair warms up to the others and realizes they're making him feel things he'd never felt before, a true sense of belonging, friendship, and camaraderie, and sees them as valuable in a way he'd never experienced due to the sentimentality and warmth they provide his cold, unfeeling heart. He's still a psychopath and sees them as possessions rather than friends. They simply provide a different form of value to him, a far greater feeling than riches or gold could ever bring. Since we're rewriting a whole arc this time, we're going to dedicate this section to explain the basic character changes we're making. Abigail doesn't need too many changes, she just needs to be expanded on. Abby is reminded of Sam through Luna, seeing bits and pieces of his personality in her since we can't just have her forget about Sam. Her greatest challenge is being the first female Ender Knight. Before the kingdoms were formed, Ardonia was more male-centered, and girls never had the opportunity to display the qualities needed to be an Ender Knight, and Abby's the first one to do so. The end itself was never discriminatory, rather it was a reflection of human culture at the time. Abigail has to accept being called by a higher power, and she wasn't chosen because of her physical prowess. She was chosen because she embodied other qualities needed to protect the End. Abigail must live up to the Ender Knight's legacy and the external calling bestowed on her, while grappling with the idea that she must earn her leadership. Denny is still our sweet farmer boy, and he has a bit of a crush on Abigail. The major thing we're adding is he's more resentful towards Alistair for the way his family profits off poverty. It's not just his family that suffered abuse. He's resentful because many farms were run dry, many poor families were displaced, and Denny lost a lot of good friends because of this. Only a handful of families, the Pinklesons included, had enough resources to survive this long. Denny has every right to be upset and antagonize Alistair, but maybe Alistair's story would have ended differently if this wasn't the case. Saxon and Trevor are the dynamic duo of the Ender Knights. Saxon is the loud, rash one, and Trevor is the quiet one, and they have a fun bromance that's basically the extrovert adopting the introvert type of deal. Now it's time for the controversial character, Alistair. Everyone hates script Alistair, and for good reason.
It's not right for a woman to read. Soon she starts getting ideas and thinking.
So instead of being blatantly unlikable and creepy, he's a charming, helpful dude at first. He was his father's firstborn, spoiled beyond belief, and taught from a young age that everyone has their uses, and holding sentimentality towards them would only hurt him. Loyalty was simply a tool to get what he wanted, and Alistair grew up becoming cold and manipulative. When his dragon egg hatches, Alistair believes he has a greater destiny, and deems his own family useless now that he's an Ender Knight. Luna's the same as before. She's like Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, and Thunderdome is like Alistair's abused animal. He's not evil. He only ever did what he was ordered to. Each rewrite Ender Knight was chosen for a different reason. They all possess different qualities the End needs. Abigail has resolve and willpower. Alistair has strength and ambition. Denny was loyal and courageous. Saxon had diligence and optimism, and Trevor was humble and patient. Moving to the Nether, let's talk about Pythus. Okay, you thought rewrite Tigran was bad? Just wait till you meet this psycho. He is the dirtiest kinslayer to ever live. This guy killed his own mother when he was young and usurped the throne after murdering his father. Pythus also embodies the 7 deadly sins. He's wrathful because he kills his own men at the slightest inconvenience. He's prideful by believing himself superior to all. He's greedy because he wishes to rule over all things and thinks everything is his to take. He's gluttonous because he's never satiated. He's slothful by sending his goons to do his dirty work and only acts when there's no choice. He's envious since he resents Vulcanus for being the true heir, and finally, he has a lust for blood and chases after short-lived ties. We're making him actually menacing, like how Snake animates him. Even when Pythus isn't on screen, his presence should be felt by the other characters as this looming threat over all Ardonia, kinda like Death from Puss in Boots 2. Pythus' motivation is also more than just power-hungry. He's still pure evil, yet he's inspired by his merciless great-grandfather to bring the Nether to a golden age of prosperity. Pythus doesn't care for his people, and he believes his father failed as king. He eliminates any threat to his kingship, yet the only reason he spared his brother was to prevent uprisings. The Nether under Pythus' leadership is like a dystopia, since he rules with absolute authority. Volcanus is the oldest son of Chronos, and the rightful king. Volcanus had a wife and daughter before Pythus took the throne, named Nephilia and Venilia. Volcanus' daughter died during the Great War, and his wife was found dead a few decades after, leaving him alone for many years. Volcanus' sadness also factored into Pythus letting him live, deeming him a non-threat. He's a father fighting for his lost family, unlike almost every other protagonist who's a teenager. We also cut the Volcanus and Abby ship for a plethora of reasons. It'll be more of a found family dynamic instead. The necromancers have slowly been building their forces and are officially at war with Feldon, and episode 1 opens at the siege of Fort Zuka. Here, we'll introduce new necromancer abilities and lore to make this fight slightly more fun. Throughout season 2, they gain more diverse and dangerous undead to control. Drowned, skeleton and zombie horses, wraiths from Minecraft dungeons, and they'll even reanimate a few ancient Jagathan skeletons. These are undead that Withers have never controlled before, so the necromancers are a huge anomaly, and the first to do so in the history of Ardonia. They experiment with new powers, and it takes a valuable resource to actually use any of them: a Wither skeleton skull. Without Wither skulls, they can't do much. These skulls can create explosions of black smoke when smashed on the ground, shoot out torrents of this smoke by blowing air through it, and they can be ignited in white wither flames to throw like a Molotov cocktail. They can also wither plant life by turning them dark gray and draining their life, and through the skull, transfer that life force to the holder. This is a very slow process though, and leaves the holder exposed. Other things skulls can do include eroding and slightly speeding up the rusting of metals, disorienting people with miasma and smoke to lose their 5 senses, and create small illusions with smoke constructs. The reason they wouldn't use any of these in Season 1 is because they take a rare object to use, and each Wither Skull can only be used to do one of these things before it's rendered useless. So the Necromancers save these skulls for their larger battles. Feldon loses Fort Zuka. However, we're making a big change to the ending of Episode 1. Nika doesn't sneak in by herself and get indoctrinated, because that was a stupid move on her part, and Dark Nika contributed nothing to the plot. Instead, the episode ends with some necromancers delivering word to their leader, like, "My lord, we've found it." Lucan and Nika are with the Feldon armies, and we get to explore more of Lucan and Kyoshi's dynamic. Kyoshi and Lucan were childhood friends who simply went down different paths as they grew older. Script Kyoshi is one of the better written characters, so we aren't changing much about him. We're just adding more depth to his and Lucan's disagreements. We won't be talking much about Kyoshi's inner conflict since the script actually does a decent job with him. Back to the rewrite, Lucan is a petty thief, so he has decent knowledge of the criminal side of Feldon, and his dirty street tactics are a direct contrast to Kyoshi's formal military ways of fighting and planning. Kyoshi is tired of Lucan's antics, so at some point, he and Nika just sneak off to do their own thing and get to the bottom of the Necrolord's plan without Kyoshi and the military slowing them down. Kyoshi, of course, doesn't know what they're doing and sends forces after them for desertion, a very serious crime during war. Now that Lucan isn't being watched like a hawk by the military, he contacts some old acquaintances, like smugglers and thieves, to help them out. These guys are good at sneaking around, stealing, and gathering information in the shadows. Lucan and Nika get directions and advice, and he even gets in contact with the higher-up connection in the Unyielding Legion. And this is a stark contrast to all his other petty thief contacts who stay out of the Legion's way, because they're the real deal, not just petty thieves. The Legion is full of actual assassins and high-ranking criminals. Basically, even if you're a fellow lawbreaker, you don't mess with the Legion. Lucan was never in the Legion himself. Lucan just has maxed out charisma, and it came in handy. He met his Legion connection at a bar, and they simply got along too well. Nika's like, "How do you even know these people?" And Lucan just says casually, "Oh, we met at a bar once." Zarya learns of Lucan and Nika's side quest and convinces the Necrolord to let him personally hunt them down since he's dealt with Nika before. Necrolord, however, hardly even knows who she is. In Season 1, all he knew was some girl caused Zarya trouble and they weren't able to kill her. Necrolord has no vendetta against Nika. He's completely indifferent to her existence. Despite that, he allows Zarya to chase after her because he has bigger plans of his own. Zarya's backstory is really interesting, so I'll give you the basic rundown for a second here. He started as a nobody in a small, nameless town outside of Feldon or any jurisdiction of the kingdoms. His town was attacked and Feldon refused to help, so he was captured and enslaved by the Nether, like his fellow townsfolk. This also expands the Nether lore. During Pythus' reign, he launched periodic raids on worthless small towns that the kingdoms wouldn't care about if they were suddenly wiped off the map. This is how Pythus got resources and slaves for his kingdom. And yes, Nether slaves were briefly mentioned in the original script, so all we're doing is expanding on this concept. Zarya absolutely hates the Nether for this, And one day, Sen Voltaris was in a more remote corner of the Nether gathering wither skulls and freed some of these slaves. Necrolord offered them to join his cause, where they would be housed and fed and promised them glory, or to run off and return to their worthless lives as nobodies. Zarya joined him and became one of the first necromancers, and idolizes Zon for freeing him from slavery. Since they use wither skulls, Zarya derives immense joy from being able to disrespect on relics from the thing he hates most, the Nether. He also has a disdain of Feldon for abandoning his village and doing nothing to save them, but his hatred of the Nether trumps Feldon by a long shot. The cliffhanger ending of episode 2 would be hundreds of necromancers and undead dragging a massive body out of a lake with chains in an unknown location in Ardonia. Those of you who watched the Ender Arc rewrite know where this is going, but the protagonists have no idea yet. Mitsuki the Chronicler is sent to Feldon to record the Necromancer War, and Alec escorts her for the time being since Lucan is nowhere to be found. During Lucan and Nika's time alone, she finally reveals more about her story and why she's hunting the Necromancers in the first place. An idea from the old draft doc says Nika had a boyfriend who was killed by the Necromancers. So we expanded on this. He was a Feldon agent who investigated them first, and Nika kept telling him to stop, believing there was no such thing. He kept digging until he uncovered something he shouldn't have, and Zarya killed him while Nika watched, hidden and powerless to save him. Nika has worked alone ever since, due to the trauma of not wanting to be attached to anyone and losing them all over again. She continues the investigation and wants to destroy the Necromancers herself. When Lucan learns of her past love, he immediately gets jealous of this dead guy, and it causes a bit of a petty rift in their relationship. He was a Felina playboy in the past. This line implied it pretty clearly.
Which night are we talking about? I get my Felina girls mixed up.
And Nika would have found out about this during their time in the criminal side of Feldon. Nika would be decently upset learning about this part of him she was never aware of. And now Lucan has to actually work to gain back her trust, making sure she knows he's not just there for her looks at the end of the day. Lucan and Nika find a whole bunch of necromancer tunnels in their side quest and a bunch of other misleading, contradictory clues. It would take an episode and a half of stalking for it to click in Nika's head what they're doing. Her fears confirmed when they see necromancers carrying back the body of a dragon from the Great War. They both know exactly what this means, and it's now less of a mystery what they're doing. It's a matter of preventing it before it happens. Meanwhile, Kyoshi travels to the other kingdoms to find recruits to fight the necromancers. Feldon is not doing very well and they need support, so there's a montage of him beaconing around for help. He tries recruiting other captains and generals, like Roman from Northwind, and the Sidonian rhino-riding captain who we named Ahmed. No one joins him though, until finally he goes to Ujiki. This is inspired by some folks in the Squared Media Discord server. Ujiki and Kyoshi are in love. They just never had the time to be together and put their kingdoms above their personal wants. There aren't many good couples in Songs of War, so even just one scene of these two and showing their relationship for a few minutes can help. She sends some troops back with him. However, chaos ensues in Feldon while the captain is gone. Lucan and Nika are caught and surrounded by the Feldon soldiers at the Mahoa docks, where they try explaining what they saw, but Alec confronts them for desertion and questions their loyalty to Feldon. In the middle of this interrogation, the necromancers strike the port, and Lucan and Nika are caught up in one of the largest battles so far, the Battle of Mahoa Docks. The necromancers knew the captain was gone and took the opportunity to attack. A single, small dark oak ship with black and gray sails arrives from the west, but that was far from their whole army. Beneath the waters, a massive horde of drowned follow behind the ship unbeknownst to the Feldon fleet. 2 trapdoors of the ship open and swarms of wraiths and phantoms fly out as the Feldon forces open fire. Okay, there wasn't a single naval battle in the script, so we thought it'd be cool to add one here. The horde of drowned split into 2 as the majority of them get to the docks and attack, while the remaining undead climb into the Feldon fleet ships to board them. Lucan and Nika are stuck in the middle of all the fighting, and the fleet is sunk, and the boats in the docks are burned. The soldiers have no choice but to retreat into the jungle, and there, Lucan and Nika get lost among the crowd and separated. The necromancers pull a pincer move on the retreating army as another force of undead led by Zarya appear from the jungles, massacring them, and Zarya finally captures Nika in the chaos. The battle ends in a major loss for Feldon. Their entire fleet is destroyed, and the necromancers now have a direct route to attack the capital. Rather than doing the mature thing and reporting to Alec what the necromancers' plans are, Lucan runs after Nika to save her. Because he's a simp. We never said he was smart. Nika is taken to Mount Tempest, where Zarya brings her before the Necrolord, who hasn't been present in the war since the Fort Zuka siege. He's been slaving away performing rituals on the dead dragon's body ever since he got his hands on it, relentlessly attempting to revive it. I'll also expand on the Necrolord's character real quick. He was a stray Voltaris loner during the war named Zon, a quiet kid with genius levels of intelligence. He has a massive vendetta against Kyoshi's family since his grandfather, Yokoshi, utterly annihilated the Voltaris in Felden in the First Great War. Yokoshi is his name in the upcoming Songs of War What If, so we're using it too. Zon witnessed all his brothers in arms die, and in his desperate retreat, he saw Withers control a massive army of undead that pushed Yokoshi and his army back. This battle leaves a huge impression on young Zon, and it's kinda like the Vietnam of the Nether Voltaris Alliance in the First Great War. Over the years, Zon grew obsessed with necromancy, formed the Necromancer faction, and traveled to the Nether somewhat frequently for years retrieving Wither skulls. Zon is psychotic, yet calculated and patient, hyper-fixated on the undead, and specifically his mission of creating an undead dragon. Nika is brought before the Necrolord, and they have a tense conversation. Nika's under the impression she's actually slowed down the Necromancers all these years, and sees the Necrolord and Zarya as her greatest rivals. Necrolord completely flips her perspective, putting Nika in her place by basically saying,
"I don't even know who you are."
Her efforts were nothing in comparison to his ambitious plans, and made her feel like her life's purpose of destroying the Necromancers was in vain, as she accomplished nothing in the grand scheme of things. So he basically just says,
"I would even keep you as a slave in my empire!"
This really takes a toll on Nika. She's so irrelevant to the Necrolord that he doesn't even care to learn her name after she devoted years to oppose him. The Necrolord just leaves, cause he's got more important things to do. And Nika's saved by Lucan, who used an invisibility potion from his contact in the Legion. Nika thought no one was stupid enough to go after her, but Lucan has proved his views have changed. He's there to save her because he genuinely has feelings for her and proves it through this rescue. They beat the Necromancers guarding them and run away from the enemy base. And it's now that Zon's intense ritual finally succeeds. Only at the tail end of the Necromancer War does Zon finally achieve his goal of reanimating a dragon's corpse, and the dramatic cliffhanger ending of episode 7 would be a close-up shot of the undead dragon opening its bright white eyes. So, most of you may be asking why we decided to add such an outrageous and wild concept like an undead dragon, and the answer is very simple, so bear with me here and hear me out. The Necromancers as a faction are insanely powerful in concept, as seen in many works of fiction. Yet in the original script, their powers barely went beyond controlling, or as Pythus put it, guiding the undead into battle and arming them. The undead dragon is meant to represent the sheer power and unnatural nature of the Necromancers as a whole. They've desecrated the corpse of a majestic creature and twisted it into an abomination of a monster they can control. The undead dragon is also a dark reflection of the alive ender dragons, since it's larger than they currently are. This would also make the Necromancers an even more appealing choice for an ally in the eyes of Pythus than if all they could do was simply guide the undead, which the Nether can do too. The Felden arc is practically devoid of anything remotely related to the Ender arc. Zan Voltaris connects them to the Ardonia arc, but the End stuff is pretty much foreign to them. Through the Undead Dragon, there's another tie-in between the previously disconnected arcs. The Ender Dragon whose corpse the Necromancers desecrated would be that of the dragon ridden by the knight Pythus killed in the prologue, and whose body can be seen after the battle. His body was never able to be recovered since the war was still ongoing, and by the time there was any free time to retrieve it, the high tide of the lake claimed it first, and it became lost in the waters. The reason the Necromancers would even know of it and where it could be found is thanks to the Necrolord himself, as he lived during that time and would have heard of and studied up on the battles prior to and of the Great War. He sent a group of Necromancers and hundreds of undead to that location to find and recover the dragon's body from the bottom of the lake, taking it back to their base where Zan would begin to experiment on it to try and reanimate its corpse as an undead. Luckily for the Necrolord's plans, Ender Dragon corpses rot very slowly thanks to their resistant scales, and despite the dragon's corpse having been underwater for over 150 years, it is still relatively intact and able to be used. The undead dragon would be teased throughout Season 2, from hundreds of undead dragging it out of a lake with chains, to the Necrolord and his Necromancers performing a multitude of dark magic and necromancy rituals to awaken it with almost no avail. Despite all the failed attempts, the Necrolord would not relent. Even though such a thing had never been done before, he knows it's very much possible, and after many attempts, he would finally get his wish. The largest and most devastatingly powerful ritual in Ardonia's history is a success, and the dragon's corpse opens its eyes, shining in a fiery white glow, and its flames burn in the silver-white tone of the undead. The Necrolord would name his new dragon Ripper, and use it to directly attack Flora, completely skipping over Ferndale to Kyoshi's dismay. The undead dragon would be the Necrolord's personal ride, controlled with his Necrostaff. Despite that, he'd still give Kyoshi an honorable one-on-one fight out of spite and kill the captain without using his steed. Now that all 3 villain factions are working together with a dragon of their own, the Ender Knights will have some tremendously powerful threats to face in Season 3. Alright, first up, we've got Ignis himself. Our favorite book-loving dude who has his own thoughts and beliefs, contrary to almost every other Magnerite who more or less act like sheep. We aren't changing much about Ignis, just adding on to what the script gave us with some new stuff. He's the hero of Carthan, the savior of Phaethon, and the weakest Magnerite turned legend. Need I say more? The actual rewriting starts with Borgin. In the script, Borgin opposes Malachi, Carthan's dictator. In this rewrite, Borgin actually starts out as a minor villain. He's Malachi's right-hand man and the second strongest Magnerite alive. Thus, he serves as the enforcer and overseer of Mount Kaos, Carthan's most important military base. Malachi himself is getting an upgrade too. Like many other rewrite villains, we're making him much more memorable and evil. Malachi is now the freaking Minecraft equivalent of Kim Jong-un. I don't think I need to elaborate much further. He kinda has a god complex and turned Carthan into a complete Orwellian nightmare, 1984 style. Since Onyx is a Magnerite too, we may as well discuss him here. He was the weakest of his pack, and abandoned Carthan. Ria and Greg found him, and Onyx, looking for a fight, challenged Greg as he foolishly believed he could take the Jagathan down. After getting humiliated by Greg, he angrily leaves and childishly vowed revenge on them. Yet Ria walked up and instead offered him a place in their group, promising him the chance to grow stronger through battles against Ardonia's enemies. With that enticing prospect, and the chance to be close to Greg to one day get his revenge, Onyx accepted Ria's offer and became the 5th member of the Knights of Ardonia. As time went on, the relationship between Onyx and Greg evolved into a very one-sided rivalry where Onyx constantly tries to one-up Greg. But our favorite Jagathan outperforms him easily and always acts friendly afterwards. Onyx's constant defeats to Greg caused him to become more self-conscious of his weakness and grew frustrated every time. Other than that, the two got along pretty well. Though Onyx would never admit it, he eventually began respecting Greg's strength and his humbleness about it, while Greg would likewise admire Onyx's determination and will to keep going despite the monstrous gap in strength between them. With Onyx out of the way, let's get back to the characters actually living in Carthan. Okay, serious question, does anybody remember Maxwell from the script? Yeah, me neither. For the 3 people watching who do remember Maxwell, we're making him more complicated too. He was originally a boring human politician who wanted peace for all, but that's pretty unrealistic. Rewrite Maxwell is more of an anti-villain. He still wants to change Carthan for the better, yet he only cares for the betterment of humankind and absolutely hates Magnerites. He wants to get rid of them all, seeing them as nothing more than a hive mind species and a huge liability. Maxwell wants to replace the Carthan Magnerite government and make the kingdom more human-centric, and either exile all Magnerites, enslave them, or genocide their species in its entirety. His end goal is peace, but his reasoning behind it and the route he's taking to get there is very immoral. Almost every Carthan character is rewritten to be more nuanced, two-faced, and pessimistic as a contrast to Ignis's blazing optimism, so he'll have to use his smarts to convince people to join his cause and end the dictatorship the kingdom has found itself in. Ignis's arc starts when he arrives at Meridian, in Cydonia. Cydonia is largely hostile to Magnerites thanks to their reputation as aggravators, yet Ignis finds Aaron the Fletcher and convinces Aaron to take him to the Carthan Wall. Before we go any further, I should mention we're extending this arc so we have more time to expand on the lore. So, the two of them head off into the deserts of Cydonia. Aaron rides a camel while Ignis walks, and they become friends and have a sense of camaraderie throughout their journey. Ignis being a Magnerite made the journey fairly easy thanks to his traveling experience and being able to easily fight off the husks of the desert at night. Aaron starts warning Ignis what he's getting himself into. Carthan is a merciless dictatorship that's difficult to sneak in, or get out. One of the few ways to get in undetected is through these desolate stone mountains to the east, left largely unguarded thanks to another great threat, block giants. This image is in the original draft docs, and these rock giants inhabit the mountains east of Carthan. They're normally dormant and peaceful. However, they're so massive that even when they move in their sleeping state, it causes earthquakes in the area. The giants have also accidentally stepped on explorers before by just not even knowing they were there. These giants have caused trouble outside of their mountains before too, accidentally wandering into Magnerite territory and causing mass destruction. They've been used for war as well. Carthan has committed war crimes on Cydonia by awaking the block giants on purpose and guiding them to the neighboring kingdom to trample and wreak havoc on their lands. There's even a legend that the Deathsinger himself slayed one of these giants in the Great War, making him a terrifying legend to even the Magnerites, as they know how dangerous the giants are. Aaron warns Ignis they may wake if he walks through there, and if he chooses that path, he would have to take his time. This is actually how Onyx escaped Carthan. He was the only one stupid enough to traverse through here and was lucky enough to not wake one, even boasting to his packmates how he wasn't afraid and waltzed right into their territory, and his packmates never saw him again. This mountain range is one of only 2 ways to infiltrate or defect from Carthan. The other way is through a narrow blind spot used by smugglers and spies leading straight to Tartarus, and it's way harder to get through, but much faster than the mountains. And so, Ignis being Ignis, decides to use the narrow opening, choosing the riskier but faster path, wanting to waste no time. When they finally arrive at the border, Aaron offers Ignis a job, and while Ignis seems to briefly consider it, he simply thanks him and politely declines. Aaron says his offer will still stand should he survive and change his mind. They part ways as comrades with mutual respect, and as Aaron and his camel begin walking back, Ignis heads to the narrow pathway. After barely avoiding being caught, he manages to sneak inside the kingdom without being detected. Once in Tartarus, he's still quite naive to the reality the Magnarites here face. He's heard plenty about it, but actually seeing it for himself is much different than what he thought. Ignis holds his head up high as opposed to every other Magnarite. They walk with their heads down low. Malachi's totalitarian rule has destroyed any sense of individuality they may have had in the past, taking advantage of the following the crowd mentality of other Magnarites. Ignis is the only one who actually looks up and sees beyond what's currently happening, literally and metaphorically, and all the other Magnarites who are just regular citizens are in a trance-like state. They're locked in a cycle of pointless aggression, being pitted against one another and blindly following orders rather than recognizing who the real enemy is. Malachi is rarely seen by many aside from his grand speeches, and he never interacts with lowly civilians unless they do something horribly wrong in his eyes. He's more of a big brother entity in the first few episodes. Malachi isn't physically there, but he's used as a threat that always watches and looms over everyone in Carthan to keep them in line. Ignis asks other Magnarites for their names and what's going on, but they all ignore him and go back to their work. Nobody even answers Ignis, and he eventually walks to a nearby tavern in defeat, sitting down and just trying to get a grasp on it all. He then sees a small group of humans and eavesdrops as they mention a human politician named Maxwell. Ignis goes to find Maxwell and tries to get more answers from the politician. Despite being in a high position in the government, Maxwell's power is still very limited compared to Malachi's. Over the years, he's slowly been trying to diminish the political power Magnarites have over the kingdom, still bent on erasing them entirely. When Ignis knocks on his door asking questions about the way things are, Maxwell's at first suspicious and passive-aggressive, yet suddenly he realizes the golden opportunity he has with Ignis and formulates a plan to use him as a tool to stir up a coup. He lets Ignis in and helps him understand the weight of their situation, at first out of pure selfishness. Maxwell's advice is genuine though, and Ignis begins to hide his naivete by acting more like a typical Magnarite, blending in with the crowd and going with the flow. He goes to Mount Kaos undercover as a worker, as Maxwell says there's information he'll need for their plans, and Kaos is the easiest way to find answers. Uncovering Malachi's plan in the capital, the very heart of the dictatorship, would be riskier. Plus, only Magnarites are allowed in Mount Kaos and at the mining site, so Maxwell uses Ignis as his eyes and ears. At Mount Kaos, Ignis is in a massive crowd when he sees Borgin from afar, where he hears Borgin impose Malachi's ideology on everyone, seemingly a daily occurrence there. Mount Kaos was not only a military base, but also a hub for mining resources to transport to the tunnels under Tartarus. Ignis does his best to keep his head low until a dangerous mining accident occurs, and a bunch of Magnarites are stuck and none of the others bother to help. Ignis is the one who steps out of line to help them, undoing his cover as a regular Magnarite, basically screwing himself over to save others from a much greater danger. With his smarts, he finds a weak spot on the collapsed stones and uses it to free the trapped miners. Borgin arrives to see what happened and finds Ignis having saved the other workers. Rather than being looked down upon for standing apart, Borgin takes a liking to Ignis' quick thinking and tells him to come out of the mines, instead taking a walk with him around the outside of Mount Kaos to chat as all the others are still working tirelessly around them. Borgin actually likes Ignis' company, and he thinks Ignis is from Carthan, not knowing about his plan to end Malachi's reign. Ignis now has a high connection and reports back to Maxwell, who's been learning about Ignis' interactions in Tartarus through the only messenger bird he has. Maxwell starts seeing Ignis in a new light, as he actually helps humans who are struggling whenever he can and has more integrity than many others, still doing good deeds even when he might be judged for it. He sees Ignis' kindness and thinks maybe a Magnarite truly was capable of thinking for himself. His perspective truly shifts when one unsuspecting day he suffers an assassination attempt. Malachi's goons discovered Maxwell's messenger bird and killed it after learning who it was working for. Then Malachi sent those same goons to silence Maxwell himself. They threw the messenger bird's body through Maxwell's window, and Maxwell immediately knew what was about to come through his door. He was prepared for such an attempt and fights back, but eventually exhausts his defenses, and when he's about to be struck down, Ignis arrives out of nowhere and shields Maxwell with his body. The blade that would have killed Maxwell does nothing to Ignis. It's a natural progression from the Season 1 scene where Jalkar tries the same thing, but this time, Ignis intentionally steps in the way to block the blade. Once they take out the goons and get out of there, Maxwell asks Ignis why he saved him, and Ignis just says they're both on the same side, wanting to make the kingdom a better place for everyone. Ignis's kind-hearted nature couldn't let them silence him like that, and he was still too naive to suspect Maxwell's two-faced attitude and true intentions. This is the defining moment in Maxwell's arc, and now he sees Ignis as more than just a tool and is completely on his side, deciding to work fully with him rather than using him. Ignis is also becoming closer with Borghen, subtly giving him ideas to revolt against Malachi. Ignis accompanies Borghen to a private meeting, and this is the first time the audience actually sees Malachi face to face. It's a tense, quiet scene with only Ignis, Borghen, and Malachi in the room, and a stark contrast to the loud, booming image everyone has of him, as well as a contrast to what the audience expects. In the script, Malachi was introduced in a bar fight, but rewrite Malachi is widely feared and nobody would dare fight him, especially given his absurd strength even for a Magnerite. And Borghen gives him updates on Mount Kaos' mining and tunnel networking when Malachi drops his ultimate plan on Ignis and the audience. He has been digging a tunnel straight under the town of Phaethon, one of Sidonia's last remaining farming communities. And with the resources gathered at Kalos, he's trying to forge enough explosives to create a force powerful enough to level entire mountains and use it against Sidonia to continue instigating conflict and eventually overpower the kingdom. Malachi is nearing the end of his life, and when Magnerites reach old age, they can either accept death peacefully or fight it as the pressure keeping their bodies together fades. This becomes more agonizing the longer it goes on, as Magnerites are literally holding on to their life force, and this could go on for a maximum of 2 years. Malachi chooses to forcefully hold himself together like this, hurrying to finish his greatest project yet. He's been around long enough to establish this whole regime, and before he dies, he desperately wants to leave a legacy surely no one will ever forget. Ignis does his best to hide how horrified he is, and as Malachi leaves, Ignis notices him fiercely gripping a long axe hammer in his hand, the axe of Carthan leadership. Time for another quick lore tangent. This axe is passed down from Magnerite leader to leader, much like Ardonia master stabs. It's forged from the remains of the strongest Magnerite to ever live, Tartarus. Before he died, he told his subordinates to construct a weapon from his remains as his last will to continue protecting his people even in death. It's enchanted to resist impossible temperatures, absorb kinetic energy and heat to empower itself, and legends claim it is indestructible. It's become a symbol of leadership in Carthan and stands for the will of the people, similarly to the Darksaber lore in Star Wars. Malachi wields this weapon to claim he's meant to lead Carthan, and twisted its original intention to fit his narrative. Sometime after Malachi leaves, Ignis accidentally slips up in front of Borghen, revealing he has outsider knowledge of the world beyond Carthan, something no Magnerite would know unless they were highly ranked or weren't from the kingdom. Borghen catches on and realizes Ignis isn't loyal to Malachi, and initiates a one-on-one traditional Magnerite fight. And although Ignis is physically weaker, he wins not through sheer force, but ingenuity. The meeting and fight would take place in this room, and Ignis knocks down the chandelier and drops it on Borghen. This room is near the very edge of Tartarus, in a secluded area behind a few doors, so no one would hear the crash. Once Borghen gets up to charge at Ignis, he's unharmed, but in shock that Ignis would pull something like that. All Ignis has to do is move out of the way to evade his angry attacks, and sticks his foot out so Borghen trips and rams straight into the wall instead. Ignis uses his surroundings to his advantage, and they continue this back and forth for a while until the room ends up completely destroyed. Ignis manages to immobilize Borghen and puts his arm around Borghen while he's on the floor, counting to 10 while keeping Borghen in place, like in wrestling matches. And just like that, Ignis has won. Ignis has gotten to know Borghen quite well by now. He was born during Malachi's reign and rose through the ranks because of his blind, almost fanatic loyalty to Malachi. He made Borghen his second in command, and Ignis realized once Borghen had a personal connection to Malachi, he saw firsthand the evils of his reign. Borghen hardened himself to the cruelty over time until he was reduced to an emotionless servant, telling himself it was all for a greater cause. He too doubted Malachi, but was too scared to speak. Ignis may not have known Maxwell's original intentions, but he could sense Borghen was hiding something, and could tell he experienced grief in the same way his friend Sen did. Ignis gives Borgren a hand and offers to help him, saying with his strength, they have a real chance to change the way things are. Ignis' optimism and constant thinking outside the box gives Borgren a hope he hadn't felt in years. That if a weak Magnorite like Ignis could best someone like Borgren, then it's not as futile as it seems. He reluctantly joins Ignis and Maxwell's cause, as Ignis has proved he's capable of showing the way and waking up the mindless from their delusion. Borgren has a quarter of Carthan's total military might under his command, yet he knows if he involves such a large force in the coup, the chances of it leaking to Malachi and their plans being crushed early becomes inevitable. Instead, he only involves a dozen of his most loyal lieutenants in the coup, allying with Maxwell and his army of human soldiers. Maxwell is the only human with some semblance of power in the Carthan hierarchy, so Malachi placed him in command of the human divisions of the army. Humans make up only 1% of their military, but it is better than nothing. They formulate a plan to end Malachi's rule in the vast mine network and prevent him from blowing up Cydonia at the same time. An extremely high-risk, high-reward plan to topple the dictatorship in one swift move. Malachi does weekly inspections on the Tartarus tunnel, and Borgren knows when he'd be there and when they should strike. Borgren and Ignis infiltrate the tunnels together and confront Malachi on their own, while Maxwell's and Borgen's forces hold back Malachi's relentless horde of mindless followers. As they prepare to part ways, Maxwell and Ignis talk, and Maxwell casually says something like, "Good thing I didn't go through with my original plan of backstabbing you." Ignis laughs with him for a second and is like, "Yeah. Wait, what? Anyways, good luck, my friend. We'll see each other when this is over." The heck? As Maxwell, the human soldiers, and Borgen's lieutenants fight off Malachi's followers, Borgren and Ignis arrive at the end of the tunnel and confront Malachi. The other Magnorites immediately run off, leaving the three alone as it becomes a fight between the strongest Magnorite versus the second strongest and weakest Magnorites. This brawl shows exactly why Malachi is the one who took command, as his sheer strength and durability are incomparable to any other Magnorite. And he has one extra buff that made many follow him unquestionably: his heat power. As their name implies, Magnorites are made from magma, yet they don't seem to burn things or hurt people when they touch them. Instead, we thought Magnorites would have the ability to control the heat they emit like a furnace. Most Magnorites aren't born with much of this power and can't properly weaponize it, only ever being able to contain their heat within themselves. Some train themselves to weaponize the heat they naturally emit and use it in battle. However, not all Magnorites burn with the same amount of heat. Most can barely emit enough to burn on contact, while some Magnorites born with greater power emit such powerful natural heat that other living things in their vicinity could burst into flames. The drawback is if a Magnorite emits their heat without rest and forces themselves to burn hotter and brighter, they will eventually burn through their entire life force and die by exploding with the force of the heat they're emitting. Many Magnorites will not take that risk. And then we have Malachi. He's one of the few born with such great heat power that he has to contain it at all times. From the moment he was born, the very stone around him immediately turned white hot and any organic matter was instantly carbonized. Malachi was born with immense power, an anomaly amongst Magnorites, as he learned to control his power and weaponize it to perfection. Now that he's fighting two traitors to his perfect kingdom, he has no reason to hold back and unleashes the heat and power he's been containing for his entire life in this fight. Ignis may be smart, but now he's in a dark cave surrounded by explosives and fighting the strongest Magnorite alive. Malachi rips off Ignis' left arm and beats Borgren to a magma pulp, easily defeating them both. Malachi even references his initial attack on Cydonia in an attempt to further humiliate the pair, saying how the young captain of Cydonia, a mere human warrior with no magic or special weapons, put up more of a fight against him than both of them together. But this does prove he can be defeated in single combat. Magma drips from the stub by Ignis' shoulder, and despite that brutal hit, he keeps fighting in his own way. He tricks Malachi into starting the explosion early, taunting the crazed Magnorite by coercing him into releasing his heat indiscriminately, as he's being beaten up. Ignis manages to anger Malachi enough to the point that the whole stone cavern turns white hot. With the last of his strength, he pushes Malachi into the center of the cave, and he falls into the stone like quicksand due to it being way too hot, keeping him in place as he sinks into the ground and becomes stuck. The obsidian containers around the room holding the explosives heat up as well, and despite his pain, Ignis helps Borgren up and together they run off into the tunnels, fleeing as Malachi tries to escape too. His heat makes the obsidian itself burn into a red-hot state, igniting the materials inside of them. By the time the explosion has set off, Ignis and Borgren are halfway through the maze of tunnels, and just as Malachi freed himself from Ignis' trip and took the first step out, the room immediately blew up, as all the obsidian containers were ignited. This explosion was not technically ready, and didn't even have the full force Malachi planned yet. but it was so powerful its shockwave knocked Ignis and Borgren further down the tunnel and back to the mining site at Tartarus, saving their lives. So, as you can see, in this fan rewrite, Ignis lives, albeit with a missing arm. I'm fairly certain some of you are not very happy about this, and have a whole list of reasons to keep Ignis dead. So here are my arguments for keeping Ignis alive. Welcome everyone who skipped straight to this part. Yes, I know you're there. So, spoiler alert, Ignis survives the explosion. I had a feeling half of you would be disappointed either way we went, whether he lived or died. So, why should Ignis survive? I gathered a list of people's arguments about why Ignis should stay dead, then prepared some counter-arguments for you skeptics, as well as some rewrite-specific reasons to keep him alive. Number 1. Respecting his sacrifice. I would argue his sacrifice wasn't respected enough in the original script. Outside of one quick mention to Sen and a scene of Mount Ignis in the epilogue, there was no mention of him at all. If he lives, we have the chance to continue honoring him throughout the story and have others actually acknowledge what he lost to achieve peace, by still losing an arm and struggling to adjust to that despite his cheery demeanor. Next, his death was a cost for victory. His death doesn't have to be the cost for victory. That's not the only way for this scene to be impactful. The victory cost was arguably higher in the rewrite by having the civilians of Phaethon and a chunk of their town get blown to bits in Malachai's nuke. Ignis is gonna have to work to help reconcile the two kingdoms in spite of the fact that they still did damage to a Sidonian town. Alright, next up, a bittersweet ending for his arc, and a necessary story beat. Ignis didn't have much of an arc in the script. He was always the same optimistic guy who never saw any change. In this rewrite, he started naive and still extremely optimistic. However, Ignis' time in Carthan and surviving the explosion allows him to face the harshness of reality, and it shapes his perspective, letting him grow as a result. It may make sense on the surface for an idealist like him to die for their cause, but it's even more impactful if Ignis remains just as positive through it all. He's no longer naive to the ways of the world, yet he continues smiling to lift others up and help them see things the way they could be, like how he does. And about his sacrifice as an essential story beat, Ignis' death was important to the audience, yes, but it didn't really impact other characters. Whether he lived or died, the outcome for Carthan was the same, so his death doesn't truly carry the weight it should have. And Ignis can still have a mountain named after him. One was nearly dedicated to Malachai while he was still alive, so there's no reason for Ignis not to have one. There's one final argument to counter: the emotional beats with Sen. As I said earlier, it's just one scene where he's acknowledged, and that's it. And script Sen, being the blank slate he is, doesn't change at all because of it. We can arguably get far more emotional beats when they reunite and when Ignis stands on Sen's side, never doubting his friend. Sen and Ignis are both outcasts turned legendary heroes, and through Ignis' survival, their dynamic can be far more than what the script presented. We've also been subtly incorporating changes in our rewrite that allow Ignis' survival to be even more meaningful than his death. I'll expand more on these reasons once we get further in the story. So, Ignis and Borgren were far enough away to survive the explosion, but it still had devastating consequences. The mountains near the explosion are completely leveled, and Phaethon isn't spared from the destruction. The outer Sidonian town suffers the initial brunt of the destruction as the shockwave sends houses flying off their foundations, and 60% of the population was killed. The range of the explosion was massive. Malachai was basically constructing a nuke, and this radius would have been even greater if he finished building it. Despite there being casualties in Phaethon, 40% of the townsfolk survived, so Ignis and his allies saved more lives than if they did nothing at all. Ignis finds help for Borgren, given he was beaten up even more severely, and they help cover Ignis' wound so he doesn't keep bleeding out magma. Ignis fights the pain and stumbles back to the explosion site, only finding a massive crater where the mountains once stood. Ignis squints and sees a small, moving figure at the bottom of the crater. Malachai was still alive. Through his crazy durability, he barely survived the explosion and attempts climbing out of the smoking rubble, yet his body is now incredibly weak, brittle, and filled with cracks as magma leaks from them. All of Malachai's movements cause his body to have the sound of rocks falling apart, and even still in this weakened state, his rage fuels him. Kinda like another rewrite character I know. Ignis slides down to the bottom of the crater as he walks up to Malachai and sees a shining object in the distance. The axe of leadership. It endured the explosion completely unscathed, yet his thoughts about its indestructibility are cut short by Malachai's pained groans. Upon seeing Ignis, he finds the strength to speedwalk over to him and punches him so hard that he sends our boy flying backwards and crashing through a boulder. Yet in doing so, Malachai's right arm falls apart, for his brittle body could no longer handle the force of his own strength. Ignis composes himself and tries calming Malachai down, only to be hit again as Malachai uses his left arm. His punch still sends Ignis skating backwards, leaving a trail on the floor. And then, Malachai's left arm falls off as well. Malachai keeps trying to rile up Ignis as his legs begin to crumble too, and he falls to the ground, slowly dying a brutal, Magnerite-exclusive death. Ignis walks up to him and kneels to the limbless Malachai, who commands Ignis to just finish the job like a real Magnerite. Instead, Ignis tries comforting him as he exhausts his remaining strength, insulting our boy until he finally dies. Malachai's body completely falls apart into a pile of rocks and magma, and Ignis just stares solemnly at the sight on his knees. Borghen and the Magnerites walk up behind Ignis, and Borghen puts his hand on Ignis' shoulder as the camera pans out, focusing on the kneeling Ignis next to the pile of rubble that was once the mighty leader of Carthan, ending the episode. In the aftermath, chaos erupted in Malachai's council as news of their leader's death reached them, believing it was a mining disaster. The Magnerites fight each other for the right to become the next leader, when all of a sudden Borghen, Ignis, Maxwell, and a multitude of soldiers walk in, and Borghen throws the axe of leadership in the center of the table to get everyone's attention. He explains what actually happened, and declares they defeated Malachai in a coup, and how the small, weak Magnerite was the one who finished Malachai off. The council is in shock, and after some more debating, they settle on appointing Ignis as the new leader of Carthan, since he technically is the one who destroyed Malachai. Ignis is taken by surprise, but immediately refuses, mainly because he doesn't want to be stuck in Carthan for the rest of his life, and also because he knows he's not cut out for the job. He gives the responsibility to Borghen, and admits he's stronger and would make for a better leader. Ignis takes the axe of leadership and hands it to Borghen as Maxwell proclaims Borghen as the new leader of Carthan, signifying the official change in leadership and finally ending the authoritarian grasp Malachai once had over the kingdom. Instead of Sen and Ria reuniting right before his first mission, we thought it made more sense for them to meet at the Knights of Ardonia's base, since there was no real reason for Ria to attack the Voltaris by herself, besides unnecessary arrogance. Ria's not the captain of the Knights of Ardonia in this version. Rather, she was one of 3 co-founders, the other 2 being Hubris and Grek. Sen and Ria finally see each other again, but they look and act much different than before. Something to keep in mind for this rewrite are the major themes surrounding these characters. Sen is clanless. He's been an outcast his whole life, and the Voltaris destroyed the only place he could call home. He doesn't know who he is, but the little identity he had was stripped away from him. Both Sen and Ria had everything stolen from them by the Voltaris, and their core motivations stem from the grief and loss they experienced in Season 1. Sen is driven by despair, knowing there was nothing he could have done. Everyone was already dead when he and Thalius arrived, while Ria was driven by regret because she was there when the attack happened. She feels like a failure for fleeing and doing nothing to save her family. Also, she wasn't skilled enough in songs to figure out how to use it on her own in this rewrite. Obsidian sacrificed himself so she could run away, and she hid on the northern outskirts of the village, and that's how she survived, instead of committing a Mary Sue and learning how to use the song all by herself, with zero training whatsoever. We don't do that here. Ria still has her own faults and issues, but she wants to protect other people from going through what she did. And Sen wants to eliminate the enemy responsible for their hardships in the first place. Sen and Ria have similar reasoning behind their actions, but how they deal with it is completely different. Sen internalizes his grief and idolizes Thalius to use the idea of his power to stay strong, but Ria was more outward with her grieving at first, and it caused her to build a wall around herself so nobody could see her weakness. Ria treated the other knights more harshly at first to protect herself from how she'd be perceived if she showed weakness. Sen and Ria don't seem to particularly acknowledge one another when they first meet back up. It's been months and they both thought the other was dead. They do get a moment to talk on the way to the vault, and it's in this conversation that Sen and Ria realize just how far apart they've drifted and just how different their lives have become. Ria was under a ton of self-inflicted pressure from the start, going on missions and hunting Voltaris, giving herself a reason to keep going despite all she had lost. Revenge was her one goal in life, only adding to her mental instability, whereas Sen had a much easier time in Ataraxia. Although he still held resentment, he learned not to take it out on others and focus on better things thanks to his much better circumstances. The Knights of Ardonia traveled to the vault to defend it from the Voltaris, who also found out a Prime Song was there. Ever since the Death Singer returned, he'd been uniting the Voltaris clan and attempting to hunt down the Prime songs. Ingressus respected Tigran a great deal in the beginning since he killed Thalius Sindaris. Tigran Voltaris took command of the clan in the Death Singer's absence, and he was merciless. He slaughtered 4 villages, including Sen and Ria's, and was incredibly loyal to the Death Singer at first. Tigran believed Ingressus would be the one to bring the Voltaris out of the shadows and get their revenge on the world. However, his high expectations of the Death Singer would be brought down at the very first encounter they had with the Resistance group. After a few months, Achilian is much better adjusted, and he and Zulius have become pretty good friends. A messenger bird tells them to travel to Ataraxia one day, and there they meet Gallius, who gives Achilian his songs and urges them to get to the vault as the Voltaris have been spotted there. They hastily leave the city with one of Gallius' students, Val, and make it to the vault before it's too late. Tigran and Death Singer are walking on the bridge after stealing the Saporium Prime when they're confronted by Sen and Ria, this being a rash decision made solely by Ria, of course. Even though Hubris, Grek, and her had agreed not to confront the enemy alone, she disregarded them pretty quickly and went to fight on her own at the first chance she got. Sen decides to follow her since he recognized the Voltaris next to Death Singer as the one who killed Thalius. Tigran spits insults at them and goes to fight the 2 teenagers, easily defeating them both and nearly killing them. Despite all their hard work and months of training, there's still no match for Tigran or Ingressus. As Tigran is raising his diamond blade to strike them down, the Death Singer steps in front of him and stops him. Death Singer stares at Sen's markings and orders Tigran to stand down. Those few words set off something in Tigran's mind, and he is in disarray because the Death Singer, the mighty leader who murdered hundreds that stood in his way, is showing mercy? Sen and Ria are both stunned as well, and Sen's worldview of the Voltaris being nothing but monsters was put into question by the Death Singer himself. The Death Singer is a mere moment away from saying something when the other knights swoop in. Sen and Ria have already stupidly gone to confront Death Singer and Tigran on the bridge, and all the other knights of Ardonia are on the mainland. They were losing the fight, and after a quick moment of analyzing the situation, Tidesinger took action. He drops from the sky, landing in front of Sen and Ria with the Jumpy Boy song, and Zulius arrives normally from the pathway. Zulius helps Sen and Ria up and ushers them off the bridge, and Val goes to the other knights to help them. Tigran and Ingressus stare in shock at the Tidesinger, alive, having seemingly spawned out of nowhere like a guardian angel to protect the knights. Tidesinger being alive didn't affect much in the original script, so having his presence drastically change the trajectory of this fight makes his impact far greater. Tidesinger has to shape the plot and influence characters just as much as Ingressus does. He's supposed to be the Death Singer's equal, so fixing the weak framing the script had of him is crucial. Tigran, however, interrupts the silent moment by firing his agrosphere, and he and Zulius have a stare down before engaging in a rematch. Neither of the singers can get a word in through all the fighting, and Achilian duels the Death Singer to take back the Saporium Prime. Death Singer's now the one playing defense to keep the Prime for himself, and Tidesinger is on offense. But this wouldn't be a very fun Tidesinger-Death Singer fight if it was limited to just this small bridge, right? This is where their songs come in handy. Death Singer now has a Saporochesis from the fight at Mount Velgrren, and to combat Achillian's Jumpy Boy song, we're giving him a new mobilium that we've named Mobiliswing. Imagine a mix of Spider-Man swinging and some aspects of the omnidirectional gear from Attack on Titan, and that's basically how it works. The other new song we're giving Death Singer is called Protoguard, and that song summons 2 small arm shields for the user, and when combined, they create one bigger, more powerful shield. It would work well in tandem with the flying gear, since it has an aerodynamic shape, and it would look cool too. Now their fight is more equal, and they can duke it out not just on the bridge, but in the sky and underneath it, and make this set feel grander since there wasn't a whole lot to work with originally. Tigran and Zulius fight on the bridge while the singers are zipping all over the place, and Zulius sees an opening and fires Aggro Vortex at Death Singer. Through this quick distraction, the Tidesinger's speed lets him strike the Death Singer so hard he hits him straight through the roof of the vault. Ingressus lets go of the Prime, and it was sitting on the roof, so the Tidesinger seized the opportunity and took it. The rebels are winning the fight, and Tigran is now almost surrounded. Ingressus knows they're outnumbered, so he uses Saporochesis to forcefully lift Tigran out of there, further humiliating him, but saving his life. Being dragged out of a fight like a child would definitely contribute to Tigran's resentment of Ingressus, but we're not here to talk about Tigran. The Knights of Ardonia celebrate their victory, and they let the Tidesinger take leadership of the group. In the script, Achilian did a lot of meandering about, not doing anything important until his last fight. This time around, he's an active force in the plot, making decisions that impact the story's direction and actually influencing other characters since, after all, he's the legendary Tidesinger and absolutely deserves to live up to that title. Achilian rallies everyone to head to Crown Peak to retrieve the next Prime Song, and Zulius is named Achilian's second in command. With 2 experienced warriors at their side, the Knights are now a genuine threat to the Death Singer and his plans. In the midst of everything, they managed to take back the Sephorian Prime from Deathsinger since he couldn't link himself to it yet. Sen and Ria survive, but the Voltaris find an opening and escape. In the script, the Vault fight never felt like it had much impact on the story. Sure, the Deathsinger got the Prime song, but nobody's characters change in a meaningful way. Through this rewrite, the Vault fight is a catalyst for change, in both plot and the characters' psyches. Sen's Voltaris-hating worldview is shot to the ground, and Ria's confidence in her abilities wavers. Tigran's vision of the Deathsinger being their only hope is put into question, and the Knights of Ardonia got away with the Prime song, pushing Deathsinger into desperation to seek some allies. The Knights of Ardonia won the fight, but seeds of doubt start growing in the back of Ria's mind about the Voltaris, and this makes her more aware of her own weaknesses. Being thrown down by Tigran made her feel humiliated and helpless, and she continues covering up her weakness by putting on a mask and acting tough and emotionless. The Knights may have won the fight, yet Ria worries if she makes more dumb decisions, then eventually her mistakes will catch up to them and cost them greatly. She also noticed the Deathsinger looking not at Sen's face when he ordered Tigran to stand down. Rather, he was paying attention to Sen's markings. Ria develops a suspicion about why Sen is clanless in the first place, and she hopes she's wrong in believing he may be a Voltaris. Ria tells no one about her new fear, wishing it to be nothing more than a coincidence. When the Tidesinger shows up, Ria's little fumble causes her to feel unworthy, so she hands over leadership to Achilian, and the other two co-founders agree to let him take charge. Other than Ria's downheartedness, things are looking good for the Knights of Ardonia now that they have the Tidesinger in command and protected a Prime song from the Voltaris. Tigran, however, is not happy about any of this. But what bothers him most is the Deathsinger's leadership. Tigran questions Ignis' competence and willingness to do what it takes, and everything goes downhill from here. Tigran begins plotting against the Deathsinger since he showed weakness at the Vault, and sees Ignis as softer than the legends portrayed him. Tigran knows he can never win in an actual fight with Ignis, but he has more practical knowledge of the state of the Voltaris and modern times, since Deathsinger's basically a time traveler who skipped 154 years. His schemes begin shortly after the Vault fight, and Tigran's radical ideals would begin to cause a rift in the Voltaris clan. At the Stronghold, they leave the dragons outside as they jump through the portal and emerge in the End Realm. The End has a mystical, dreamlike ambiance. There is no sun, and the cities are built as if they're made for flight. They find obsidian armor in the castle, and this special armor allows Ender Knights to breathe without much air, like at high altitudes. It's very durable, and resistant to extreme temperatures and some magic as well. Yet there are no sets for a female. It's here where Alistair delivers the first sly comment questioning why that is, catching Abby completely off guard, but she brushes it off. They split up as Saxon and Trevor find the obsidian nest at the palace with the last remaining dragon eggs. They each pick one up, and the eggs glow faintly like Luna's in Season 1. Ender Knights can only be bonded to one dragon at a time, and their bonds have just been formed. The others find the throne room, and Alistair picks up the crown resting on it. In that moment, he reconsiders his whole strategy, fearing losing his treasure more valuable than gold. However, he sees Denny's hateful eyes fixated on him and remembers how the others always advocated for Denny, seemingly preferring that farm boy nobody over him. It's the last straw, and he places the Ender Crown on his helmet and proclaims himself as Ender King. Denny tears him a new one, yet Alistair keeps his charming facade and says they could have been friends if he just let go of the past. Denny says despite all his talks of letting go, he omitted one crucial detail. Not once in his empty words did he ever pretend to feel sorry or show the slightest remorse for his family's crimes, and that's why Denny never trusted him. Snapping out of shock, Abby believes Alistair is still good, and he pretends to hesitate as he draws his sword and stabs her. Saxon, Trevor, and Denny watch Abby fall into the void and they jump Alistair. He dodges their attempts and leaves since they're not threats to him, for he didn't know Saxon and Trevor claimed dragon eggs and they would soon hatch. Had he known, he would have destroyed them. Alistair goes through with his original, shallow plan to reunify the kingdoms and become the ruler of Ardonia. Abigail falls further into the infinite void, and just when she begins to pass on, she hears a teleporting sound and suddenly feels the cold endstone floor beneath her. Her vision is extremely blurry, yet she sees a towering dark figure, far bigger than any Enderman. This figure emanated small streaks of Ender energy from its claw-looking hands as it began to heal her. When she's fully healed, she finds herself outside the castle, seeing no one around and wonders who or what that thing was. Abigail comes out of the End and finds the other three with Luna, and Gallius also arrives with her newly forged armor and tells her to take back the crown. The Knights head straight for Crown Peak since Sen told them the Mobilium Prime was there, and Tigran starts forming a small faction of extremists who desire revenge, full of young, ambitious, and motivated Voltaris, Delthius included. These young fighters are just angry at the world and want a better future while getting the vengeance they think they're entitled to. While Ingressus is busy allying with Pythus in the Nether, Tigran employs Lucidius as a double agent to get information from the Deathsinger from eyes and ears that aren't his own, in order to discover Ingressus' weaknesses. Ingressus notices Tigran's sneaky, rebellious behavior and does not trust Tigran as much as he once did. Whenever Tigran and Deathsinger meet face to face, Tigran still acts submissive and cowers before him out of fear, contradicting every other time he's on screen. He fears the Deathsinger's power more than anything, yet he has zero respect for Ingressus himself after the vault. The Knights of Ardonia take a pit stop and set up camp for the night. We still get a campfire scene of all the knights. However, this time, Tidesinger goes to talk with Ria, and Sen stays with Grek. Grek and Sen have a talk in which Grek reveals that he and Ria had trained with each other for the past few months, and Ria poured her whole being into those sessions, frustrated at her own weakness. Thus, Sen would learn how the recent defeat might have devastated Ria, and Grek states that he feels responsible for not being a better help for Ria's mental health. This is also where Grek and Sen begin to form an older brother and younger brother kind of bond. Sen and Ria aren't as close as they used to be, so Sen begins hanging out with Grek more and more, accidentally becoming close friends with him. Achilian sees an all too familiar look in Ria's eyes and wants to help mentor her. Here's a nice little parallel. Gallius wanted to train Sen the right way because he sees Thalius in him, while Achilian trains Ria the right way because he sees the Deathsinger in her. Achilian personally trains Ria in combat and leadership so she wouldn't fall to the dark like Ingressus had. Achilian knows what it's like to feel powerless and withdrawn, and he knows full well Ria doesn't deserve to go through this alone. Another reason Achilian wanted to guide Ria instead of Sen is because he recognized her markings as those of an old champion in the days before Thalius. He couldn't bear to tell her when she already had so much baggage, so Achilian settled with teaching her the truth of champions in general and the atrocities they committed, but refrained from telling her that she was descended from one of them. The knights camp out for the night, and all 5 Ardonia clans have a representative here, even though Sen is clanless right now, but we'll ignore that. Each clan has a distinct culture, so seeing them all mesh and interact here would be really cool. 2 important things happen in this scene. Achilian begins acting as the moral compass for the knights, namely the 2 that are hellbent on revenge, so he decides that he must keep them from going down a dark path like Ingressus did. The other important thing is the start of slight disagreements between Zulius and Achilian on how to deal with the Voltaris. Zulius, like Thalius, wants the Deathsinger dead. He wants the job done as soon as possible and sees all Voltaris as obstacles to overcome. He believes all Voltaris are evil, especially the Deathsinger, after killing his friends. Meanwhile, Achilian has moral qualms about killing Ingressus, but he can't let the others know that. The Tidesinger is the only one who can defeat the Deathsinger, yet Achilian avoids the topic at any cost. Zulius knows Achilian better than anyone else here, so he would be the only one comfortable enough to challenge and question his morals, something that never really happened before. Zulius would also shift the dynamic of the Knights of Ardonia, as he would strategically organize the resistance and make it less like a ragtag club of teenagers. Another dynamic that would be introduced is the Zulius and Hubris relationship. Zulius offered Hubris to join the assault on Mount Velgrren in Season 1, but he refused, saying they needed a whole army. Zulius ignored Hubris' warning, even though he turned out to be right. Hubris would be annoyed at Zulius' sudden shift in attitude towards the bigger picture, and Zulius would be annoyed at Hubris' childish "I told you so" attitude, and they would quarrel quite a bit in the background. Achilian learns more about Ria and Hubris, and he notices both of their markings are the same ones as 2 old champions. Season 1 showed someone with Hubris' exact markings in the tournament, so him being descended from one, like Ria, doesn't seem too far-fetched. The Tidesinger mentors them both, mainly to lift Ria up and to stop Hubris' overbearing ego from weighing everyone down. Achilian goes to talk with them and acts like any normal Ardoni as opposed to the legendary Tidesinger. Seeing him be so down-to-earth was a bit of a shock. For all they know, he's this grand legend with 0 weaknesses. Everyone there sees Achilian as an object rather than a person, not realizing he has fears and doubts just like the rest of them. After inquiring about who they were, Achilian tells them more about his origins as a fisher in Nestoria, coming from practically nothing. His father never cared for him, and his mother died before Achilian could even meet her, and Master Aegis helped raise him since his real father was too resentful and unfit to be a parent. Achilian left off there, telling them nothing more. Alistair flies to Crown Peak and claims the throne for himself, and Abby rushes in with Luna and her brand new obsidian armor to stop him. This fight is similar to the script, and after an epic dragon battle, Abigail knocks off Alistair from Thunderdome as he crashes with such force that he leaves a crater. He crawls out of it and takes his helmet off since he had the wind knocked out of him. throwing his helmet in front of him where Luna lands and Abigail dismounts. She takes the Ender Crown off of his helmet, throws it aside, and glares at Alistair. He looks up and taunts Abigail. For the first time since they met, Alistair shows his true colors, and he acts the way he really is, without any facades. Abigail tells him her own feelings on the matter, and Alistair says his final words. "You won't kill me. It's not in your nature. You never could make the tough decisions." And Abigail places the crown on her helmet and it ignites, while she says her own rebuttal. "You're right. I won't. But she will." And Luna torches him alive. Thunderdome just watches from afar and flies off. In the end, Alistair died a disgraceful death where he was completely alone and everyone abandoned him. The thing that deep down, he feared the most. The Necrolord commands the dragon with his Necrostaff and changes plans from attacking Ferndale and finishing off the Felden army to straight up attacking the capital city and winning the war by default. Necrolord sent a token force to Ferndale to make the army believe that's where the attack would take place. But it's Lucan and Na who informed them of the Necrolord's true intentions. They specifically found Alec first and convinced him to tell Kiyoshi, mainly so they don't get arrested. Alec runs with them to tell Kiyoshi, and when they say the necromancers have a dragon of their own, the room is plagued by shocked gasps and terrified looks. And Kiyoshi has to rally the troops anyway, saying that dragon or not, they have a duty to fulfill. The Necrolord is at his peak of power here and uses his mastery in dark magic and necromancy to create a massive sheet of dark clouds above the entire kingdom of Felden, covering the sun and allowing his army to fight unimpeded. Lucan and Na watch this happen, and it is the strongest display of magic in the series yet, making Rewrite Necrolord one of the top dogs in Ardonia. Zahn comes across Kiyoshi and Flora, and in their confrontation, the audience would learn the extent of his hatred for Yokoshi, who Kiyoshi is a spitting image of, only far weaker. Necrolord challenges Kiyoshi to an honorable one-on-one duel without the undead dragon interfering, instead ordering the abomination to go rampant on the city, for he wants to end Yokoshi's descendant himself. Zahn craves vengeance for the horrors he suffered during the Great War, and reveals Yokoshi's strength to Kiyoshi, even stating that he saw him fight and kill a Wither all on his own without any help. Yokoshi was one of the strongest Felinas in history, and he expresses his sheer disappointment at Kiyoshi's weakness in comparison to his ancestor. This only furthers Kiyoshi's struggles grappling with his role as captain and his family legacy, the same conflicts he faces in the script. As they fight in the burning city, Zahn continues insulting the captain. Kiyoshi forces himself to fight on despite his doubts, since at the end of the day, he's the captain of Felden and his people's last hope, so he fights even harder and does extremely well. Kiyoshi is indeed strong enough to match Zahn's power, and the two have an insanely close duel, until, all of a sudden, Kiyoshi gets the upper hand and is about to kill the Necrolord when Zahn fires a song at the captain, which he dodges pretty flawlessly, yet he looks at the Necrolord with sheer horror at the realization of what just happened. In that moment, Kiyoshi asks a simple yet impactful question, since this would be the first time the audience learns of this.
You're an Ardoni.
Just as Kiyoshi says this, a few embers from the fires around them land on Zahn's robes and partially burn them away as he takes off his mask and reveals his identity as Voltaris, to both the audience and the poor captain. Zahn reveals his name and sees the fear in Kiyoshi's eyes, granting him the confidence to laugh out loud, mocking the captain. Kiyoshi has to continue fighting, yet the fear has already been implanted in him. The tragedy lies in Kiyoshi's mind, as his fear is what gives the Necrolord power over him, thus granting him the upper hand. Kiyoshi finally breaks under the immense pressure and stress he's feeling, and as they continue to fight, Kiyoshi begins to second-guess himself and hesitates to attack, as his confidence has shattered, believing he would never be able to kill an Ardoni. Zahn uses a Saporium that he specifically chose to weaken Felinas and uses it against Kiyoshi, one we've named Sapporo-Dole. This song dulls an opponent's instincts and senses, taking away Kiyoshi's upper hand with his naturally heightened senses and reflexes. This, combined with Kiyoshi's broken mentality, was all that prevented him from ending the Necrolord. And what's even more tragic is that Kiyoshi was strong enough to kill Zahn. After a lackluster performance from Kiyoshi after discovering the Necrolord's true identity, Zahn finally strikes Kiyoshi down, and he dies a meaningless death, overlooking the destruction of his kingdom, knowing he failed everything and everyone he ever fought for. His kingdom, his people, his soldiers, and his family's legacy. Kiyoshi's death is a tragedy because of its meaninglessness, only further proving Zahn's point and dooming the kingdom of Felden as well as its people. The Necrolord kills the Felden officials and sees a certain little chronicler standing to the side recording everything with absolute fear in her eyes, almost tearing up. She's heartbroken seeing it all unfold, and Zon walks up and asks what she thinks she's doing. Nitsuki says, "My job, sir, I'm a chronicler of Northwind. I was sent here to—" And Necrolord interrupts flatly, saying he knows what a chronicler is. He's baffled at Northwind being so bold to send one of their own to interfere in his war. Nitsuki says chroniclers are neutral, and she's just there to record. But Zon doesn't care and yanks her notebook away, glading over the pages and throws it into a fire, burning all of her records. Nitsuki is too terrified to protest, and Necrolord says he will write his own history, and there was no need for a pesky little chronicler. He raises the necrostaff, and Nitsuki is devoured by the undead, killing the young chronicler. Everyone is shocked. Even the other necromancers are stunned at Zon's actions. But Necrolord doesn't care about an old international law. He ignores everyone's concern and orders his men to send her body back to Northwind as a warning, should they choose to intervene again. The Nether arrives to conquer Feldon not long after, and Zon is prepared for Pythus' arrival. He presents the undead dragon in all its might, and this impresses the Nether King enough to create an alliance. They have common enemies, and with all the new necromancer abilities plus their plethora of diverse undead even the Nether can't control, there is zero incentive for Pythus to oppose them. Yet. Zarya severely objects to the alliance with the Nether, and he feels betrayed. The Necrolord promised them glory and allowed Zarya to take out his anger on the Nether by abusing their relics. And now Necrolord was going against everything he and Zarya originally stood for. The moment Pythus and Zon shake hands, Zarya voices his concerns. Necrolord would have killed him for such disrespect in front of their new ally if he wasn't the second strongest necromancer alive. Zarya leaves, bowing slightly, but is left extremely frustrated and disgusted by the choice his idol made. The sole reason Necrolord allowed Zarya to go on that wild goose chase with Nika was so he could prepare for the Nether's invasion without Zarya's objections. Being a Voltaris, and a smart one at that, despite leaving the clan, he knew Deathsinger was bound to return, and he would likely ally with the Nether again. He knew Zarya hates the Nether more than anything, so Zan utilized this opportunity to distract him from his ulterior motive of eventually joining forces with the Nether and using the undead dragon as his ace. The Second Great War spreads not just throughout Feldon, but all of Ardonia, as the Nether, Necromancers, and Voltaris teamed up. The Necromancers have a strong grasp over Feldon, and the undead dragon is chained away, but always ready to be used if the threat of rebellion arose. Lucan and Nika are slowly overcoming their personal issues and have to learn to depend on one another if they're going to survive and take down the enemy. Nika is learning to let down the walls she's built since her last relationship, and Lucan has been trying to better himself after being a dirty thief and a player. He can't be aimless like he was in the beginning of Season 1, for Nika's sake, and now for all of Feldon. Lucan and Nika organize a small resistance against the enemies, staying under the radar for as long as possible, until spies and allies from outside the kingdom are able to help. A couple days later, the knights walk to the gates of Crown Peak, and they see dragons in the sky and nether forces starting to invade the city. The Tidesinger knew there wouldn't be another opening, so he quickly got Sen and they snuck into Crown Peak to get the Mobilium Prime. Zulius stayed at the city gates and led the evacuation, as he saw Ria running into the city and Hubris following her. Zulius yelled at them to come back, but neither of the teenagers listened, so he decided to just stay put and keep helping the innocents escape. Deathsinger found the song first, and Sen is absolutely livid when he discovers Solomon willingly gave the song to Ingressus. Sen is furious that Solomon betrayed them just to save his own skin, and he nearly advances forward with intent to kill Solomon in his bloodlust to get justice for Thalius, his idol. Tidesinger stops him, knowing they'd gain nothing from this useless old man's death. The two singers have a quick fight in Solomon's house, and while the Deathsinger ignores Sen for the most part, Sen is having none of it. He wants to be confrontational with the Deathsinger and demand to know why he was spared at the vault, yet he still fears Ingressus, like any rational person would. When Achilian is knocked onto Solomon's balcony, Sen musters up his courage and lets out his frustration after losing everything because of the Deathsinger, in the form of a few words that would cut deeper than he ever thought they would. Had Master Aegis known who you truly were, he would have never allowed you to boast Nestor's colors, Deathsinger. He should have killed you the first chance he got. Little did Sen know he touched a sensitive topic for both of the singers, hurting Ingressus especially, yet they both managed to hide the twinge of heartache that struck them. Before the Deathsinger can say anything in response, an Ender Dragon interrupts their confrontation and defends the Tidesinger and the clanless Ardoni. As this is happening, Ria, Hubris, and the other knights are still evacuating the city, but Ria wants to do more to help. In a panicked frenzy, she sees an Ender Dragon flying to where Sen headed and runs into the city, choosing her impulsive emotions over logical thinking. Ria still has nostalgia for the old times, and doesn't want to see the kind kid Sen once was getting defeated and killed easily by a single Wither skeleton. Hubris tried to stop her, but he ended up chasing after her instead, now putting his life in greater danger too. After Hubris manages to calm Ria down a little bit, they work together to try and kill some wither skeletons and slow down the invasion. Would this whole thing be a stupid move on both of their parts? Yes, absolutely. Would it also be hilarious to watch two dumb teenagers running around aimlessly in Crown Peak with a bunch of enemy forces for a minute or two? Also yes, 100%. As the two of them run around Crown Peak killing some skeletons, they see a human father and his young daughter about to be crushed by a collapsing building near the edge of the city. Ria quickly uses her Mobilium song and gets them both out of harm's way, saving their lives. Ria's confidence in herself goes up a little bit, and she's just glad the father and daughter are safe. Her heart is in the right place, but her self-confidence is very fleeting. Hubris and Ria run into one wither skeleton as they're trying to escape, and Ria, in a moment of desperation and not thinking clearly, throws her spear to try to hit it, but she misses. Hubris has to distract the skeleton as she again uses her Mobilium song to retrieve the spear. But now they're almost surrounded and barely escape the city because of her one tiny mistake. She missed a shot that should have been easy for her to make. Tigran easily chucked the spear at Thalius from 15 blocks away and killed him. But Ria couldn't even hit a skeleton from a closer distance because she was scared and her hands were shaking. That little failure could have gotten both her and Hubris killed, and her own stupid errors weigh on her even more. Ria thinks something is wrong with her when she keeps making the same dumb mistakes over and over again, first at the vault and now at Crown Peak. The knights regroup at the edge of the city, and Zulius scolds Ria and Hubris for their stupid little stunt, but he's glad they're alive. The Nether begins their invasion of Ardonia, and the knights go into hiding. The Deathsinger makes arrangements with Pythus and spends a great deal of time in Crown Peak when the invasion begins. Tigran wastes no time while Deathsinger's busy and finalizes his plans. He intends on turning every Voltaris against Ingressus and convincing them that he should be the master. Tigran does not care about Voltar, nor does he care about the lives of any Voltaris who disagree with his perspective. Rather, he sees leadership of the clan and Voltar as a tool to exact revenge on the world. In order for his plans of revenge to work, he needs the Deathsinger gone and the authority that comes with holding Voltar. Ingressus knows Tigran is up to something, and every time they interact, the atmosphere is tense. Deathsinger vaguely knows what Tigran is doing, yet both of them are in a difficult position. Ingressus cannot kill a member of his own clan without it being against everything he stands for, and Tigran cannot kill the Voltaris Master without it being an act of treason. Ingressus refuses to destroy Tigran despite him being so obviously a threat because he didn't want the other Voltaris to see him as a monster. None of them know much about Ingressus, and he doesn't want them to be afraid of him. Eliminating Tigran would only make it seem like Ingressus is willing to kill any Voltaris who disagrees with him, making him no better than Tigran himself. Tigran is willing to betray and kill the Deathsinger, but Ingressus refuses because he wants the Voltaris to respect him, not to be terrified of him. While the Voltaris are relocating to the city of Hailstone, they start having this back-and-forth battle of wits for the allegiance of the Voltaris clan. The divide between the opposing Voltaris worldviews becomes so great that it devolves into a cold civil war between Tigran's extremists and the Deathsinger's loyalists. Meanwhile, the Knights of Ardonia would travel to Ataraxia to receive guidance from Gallius on what to do next. Ria is now personally being trained by Achilian, and the two of them form a close-ish bond as he teaches Ria to see past her shortcomings. Ria thinks all the training she's done is pointless if she can't even keep herself level-headed in battle. Achilian helps her understand that even though she screwed up in Crown Peak, she also saved the lives of at least 2 innocent people. Had she not ran back into the city, that father and daughter would have died. Through the Tidesinger's mentorship, Ria also feels a ton of grief for the way she's treated the other knights solely because of what she suffered. As the second season comes to a close, Ria makes an effort to change her attitude towards the others and apologizes to Greg specifically after all he's done to help her, and how little she'd done to return the favor. Ria becomes more honest and open with everyone so they can properly work together as a team and not suffer because of miscommunication or dishonesty. Ria starts out self-assured and emotionally far removed when Season 2 begins, and now because of the good people surrounding her, she's able to start working past her issues and take the first steps towards learning from and eventually becoming a good leader. Sen still feels isolated from Ria, but his friendship with Greg and Val is getting stronger by the day. Despite Ria being mentored by the Tidesinger, Sen is still the only one who sees Achilian as more than just this legend. He calls Achilian by name rather than everyone else who still calls him by his alias, the Tidesinger. Sen is also dealing with some inner demons after his second interaction with the Deathsinger, and living through it. As much as he wants to hate Ingressus with every fiber of his being, something just isn't adding up in his head, and it unnerves him to his core. As Sen's mental warfare grows more complicated by the day, the resistance grows in strength to strike back. The season ends with the Knights of Ardonia preparing to free the world from the Nether's grasp, while Tigran gains more and more confidence in his conspirators and his plot to overthrow the Death Singer when he least expects it. Eventually, the knights all reconvene at Ataraxia, where they safekeep the Saporium Prime. When the topic of the Death Singer arises, Zulius and Achilian's polar opposite views cause them to argue a little bit, but the Tidesinger quickly changes the subject to tell the others of an ally who may answer their call for help. Achilian gathers a small team to go summon his friend, and a few knights accompany him to the northern part of the heart of Ardonia's valley. Achilian locates something and removes the overgrown leaves and moss from it, revealing a long-abandoned shrine made of gold, netherrack, and redstone. After lighting the redstone torches, Achilian ignites the Shire with an aggro beam, and they wait, and wait, and wait for something, anything to happen. As the hours pass, Ria talks with Achilian, and he continues inspiring her and promises to train her so she will not lose her composure in battle. Achilian also helps her see the errors of her ways and to keep her revenge-seeking attitude at bay. Of all people, Achilian should be the one who's full of hatred towards the Voltaris, Ingressus, and even towards his biological father, but he knew better. Continuing the cycle of hatred accomplished nothing, and when Ria tells him what she lost to the Voltaris, he admits that he lost his closest brother to the Death Singer. Much later that night, something extraordinary happens, as the heart of Ardonia begins to shine brighter and brighter, waking up the knights when suddenly a thunderclap booms and the entire valley shakes as the call is answered. They all back away in fear, seeing two glowing white eyes in the black smoke, but not the Tidesinger. They recognize the figure as he, or the ghost of Ardonia, or the apparition, but we the audience know him as Herobrine. I'm fairly certain the original writers included Herobrine just to hook the little kids and nostalgia bait Minecraft veterans into watching the show. And given everyone's initial reaction to his teaser in the prologue, it worked very well. However, his original purpose was just that, fan service. He never had a real reason to exist here beyond recognizability, so we're going to fix that and give Herobrine a clear purpose within the narrative. He's fundamentally different from almost every other character because he's from an outside source, and we had to find a justification for that. The script touched on Herobrine crossing different dimensions and his fragile mortality, and we leaned heavily into these more abstract ideas. In our rewrite, Herobrine has an unnatural and mysterious existence. He's above space-time and exists outside of the dimensions as a whole. Herobrine's true form is purely conceptual and beyond the common understanding of both nature and magic. Basically, he's five-dimensional, but such a thing is simply referred to as a higher realm. To interact with Ardonia in the physical realms, he has to use a vessel. If a mortal saw his true form, their brain would be fried. The vessel he uses would be the form we know him as, the Steve skin with glowing white eyes. In his physical form, Herobrine only has a fraction of his power, and his stamina is incredibly weak since whenever we see him, it's only his lesser, humanoid counterpart. The longer he stays in Ardonia, the more mortal his vessel becomes. So theoretically, it could die the same as any of us if he didn't return to his own dimension to recharge. Herobrine fears dying in his mortal form, and thus, fears permanently losing his vessel. He intervened in both Great Wars because they brought great unbalance, not just to the physical realms, but the higher realms as well. He's an anti-hero in Songs of War, cloaked in black when he first appears, and seemingly uses his power in questionable ways. However, it's to keep the balance and prevent the higher dimensions from shattering since their foundation is in the lower, physical dimensions. If any of the realms collapse, all of them do, and that's what he's here to stop. Herobrine fights far more actively in the Second Great War because things are worse this time around. King Pythus is ruling most of Ardonia with an iron fist. The Voltaris and necromancers are working with the Nether for a triple-threat villain alliance, and the new Ender Knights are not at all prepared for what they've been chosen to do. Few mortals dare even speak Herobrine's name, commonly referring to him as just he. They say he is a creature who never blinks nor casts any shadow. Others say if you stare at his white eyes for too long, you'll get a glimpse of his true form and go mad. For that reason, all mortals instinctively avoid eye contact with him. All except for one, the Tidesinger. The only person in Ardonia who knows a decent amount about Herobrine is Achilian. The others have no idea what his intentions are or how powerful he really is. They only know the plethora of myths and stories surrounding him, portraying him as either a benevolent ally or painting him as a heartless monster beyond the stars. Some say he's responsible for the Shrouded Islands becoming nothing but stony wastelands. Others say he battled an evil shadow deity of similar nature as him, and few paranoids claim that he sunk half the continent and created the Uncharted Islands as a result. Regardless of the veracity of said legends, Herobrine has acquired fame and gained plenty of epithets throughout Ardonia's history, including the Phantom, the Ghost of Ardonia, the Lord of Lightning, the Celestial, the Apparition, and more. Now, Herobrine has some actual background surrounding him, and his menacing presence is more justified. His mythical powers also extend beyond basic lightning and thunder stuff. Herobrine would get more of his abilities from Squared Media's Alex and Steve series, which includes flight, telekinesis, teleportation, and shockwaves. He'd also be able to manipulate energy and matter, and can see all possible future outcomes. He can travel through higher dimensions, which also means he can manipulate beacon travel as well. Despite all these buffs, his powers in Ardonia are limited compared to his highest form. He's still insanely strong and has abilities no one can understand, but someone like Deathsinger could still defeat him in combat in the physical realm. Herobrine's purpose in the plot is to uphold the balance between the realms, and his actions will have a major influence on the fate of all Ardonia. Now, he has a reason to be in Songs of War besides fan service. He also brings a whole nother element of complexity to the lore and magic that extends the world far beyond what the main characters can see. All this information would be shown throughout Season 3, but for now, we can get back to what actually happens once Herobrine joins the party. I thought it would be easier to give him an entire section since this stuff is so abstract compared to the rest of this video. So, thank you for listening to my Herobrine TED Talk. Let's get back to Season 3. In the epilogue of Season 2, we see Ignis replace his lost arm with an obsidian one, and stays in Carthan for a little while longer to help rebuild and prepare for what's to come. Under a newly reformed council, Carthan begins preparations to make amends with Cydonia. As preparations for the delegation are made, a messenger arrives and declares news that the Second Great War had begun. As Borgin and Ignis look at each other, the camera fades to black, ending their arc in Season 2. Ultimately, Carthan being separated from the Union worked to their advantage, as when the Nether invaded the overworld, they used the beacons for fast travel to all the capitals and easily took over most of the world. Yet the one kingdom that had no beacon access was Carthan. So the Nether was unable to conquer them from the inside, and struggled invading their lands from the outside in a long conflict known as the Carthan Campaign. In the 2 years between Seasons 2 and 3, Carthan became more and more like the United Kingdom in the first part of World War II as they were fighting alone. The war was a struggle for both sides, and Ignis trained with Borgin and other Magnites to learn the basics of self-defense, now being an average fighter, but Ignis' real use lay in his strategies and intellect. He's responsible for some of Carthan's victories against the Nether, even utilizing the rock giant mountains to their advantage as a natural defense. Now that we've gone over most of the lore for the Knights of Ardonia, here's a TLDR of how I'd write their dynamics. Grek, Hubris, Onyx, Grim, and Sen would be the ones carrying the comedy in the group. I envision Grek annoying Hubris, Grim being a silent little agent of chaos, Onyx always trying to one-up Grek and failing miserably, and Sen being the clueless goober in the middle of it all. In Season 2, when the Knights aren't doing anything particularly plot-relevant, that's when all these character dynamics would be built up, so they actually feel alive. These guys gotta be like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, we've got Grek, who's basically Drax, except he can actually understand idioms, I think, and Grim, who's just Groot in another font. And now, for the Season 3 conflict for the Knights, I'll hand the mic over to Meowsomnia.
Thank you, CK. Hello everyone who lived through previous parts and got here. I am Meowsomnia, and you might know me from the Renderers team. Apparently I got a promotion, because today I'm here to show you my rewrite of Frederick. I'm not as entertaining as my dear friends Morons, but I think this section is worth your time. Cat, what are you doing? Stop it! Most of the characters we see are heroes, magical creatures, rising legends, or particularly clever humans with a knack for getting into trouble. But behold, here comes the average Fred. Frederick was a normal guy from the neighborhood who liked playing with redstone and was lucky enough to get accepted into Redstone Academy to become an engineer. We meet him in the Nether-occupied Redstone Academy. He and other students were captured and became Pythus forced laborers with one goal: create a tool to locate the prime socks. Unlike the original script, here the engineers fail miserably, and with each progressless day, the guarding Netherlands kill one of them. Time is running thin, and in best invention, Capra Golem is unable to do the job. The day comes for Frederick. The day comes for Frederick to be executed. However, fate brings him Hubris and Grek in Season 3, Episode 1. Frederick is the first and least guarded person they found. He was already in a separate room, awaiting his execution. With Frederick, Knights of Ardonia gain very little. The young engineer does not have much information about the primes, but there was one thing that turned out to be a game changer. During his time as a student, Frederick was assistant for the construction of an underground railway and had a pretty good idea of the layout. This railroad project was abandoned when the Nether took over, and thanks to this, the Knights of Ardonia have a faster, hopefully safer way to get to their destination. Continuing on with this, now it's time to get into...
Oh, that hurts!
Valerie, are you...
Am I late?
Nope.
Oh, good. For a sec, I thought I missed my part. I'll take this. Go rest. Alright, now is the moment you've all been waiting for. Allay lore! We've got a lot to cover in this, so y'all better get ready for...
Valerie, you better let me keep this video under 20 minutes!
Guess I'm not gonna share everything, but still buckle up, cause it's gonna be a wild ride. Okay, so, first off, what exactly is an allay? I mean, we're all familiar with the wholesome blue goober Asher has all made us fall in love with his wholesome singer renders, and the blue Vex lookalikes that fly around and follow you if you give them something. But where exactly do they come from? The answer? They're creatures most commonly created in hotspots of energy, namely amethyst caves, with the largest of these allay nurseries being in the Shimmering Valley. Pockets of energy will coalesce in these caves, give it a few days, and bam! You have yourself a duo or trio of gently glowing, lovable blue goobers with wings and a slight case of kleptomania. Normally. There are rare, and I mean rare, occasions where one of these pockets of energy will create only one allay. The golden allay. It's like the blue goobers you all know and love, but brighter and, well, golden. So where does the allay fit into all of this? Yeah, he caught wind of the Triple Threat Alliance finding a golden allay in the Shimmering Valley, although he doesn't know it's that. The reason why this is important, golden allays can feel the songs, although not the way Ardonia can. And by using the allay, Ingressus would be able to find the primes a whole lot faster than the Knights would. Guess what we don't want happening? Yeah, exactly. Achilian doesn't want this happening either, so he and a small group go out to recover whatever the frick Zari informed Achilian of. Anyway, after taking a detour at the Redstone Academy and walking through the empty underground railway for a bit, they arrive. When they get to the valley, however, they're in for a whole lot more than they bargained for. After all, an allay isn't just a machine you can operate. They're actual living creatures with their own fears. They may not be able to talk like we do, but they're still sentient. And this is something the Triple Threat Alliance doesn't understand. Because of this, when Grimm finds the allay, this leads to a trauma bond forming between him and the allay. Yeah, I said bond. What exactly is this bond? Well, it's when an allay's consciousness melds with another creature's. This sort of thing helps them pass thoughts and feelings onto each other, so in the span of about 15 seconds of finding the golden goober, Grimm is smacked in the face with feelings of pain, fear, confusion, you name it. And, well, since now he can feel another creature's pain, he's gonna do something about it, right? I just realized I'm late for a date with a certain Atharan! Oh crap, did I say that out loud? Frick! Hold on! You're up!
And now we're on to the best part of the rewrite, the Music Man section. This will essentially be a place for me to shamelessly plug my music for 5 minutes straight. And another thing... what's that, CK? Oh, I can't just hijack the rewrite to rap about music. Okay, right. Okay, so I guess I have to actually put some work in. Whatever, I can do that. The idea behind this railroad chase is that the Nether ambushed Frederick, Greg, Zulius, Sen, and Grimm on their way back from the Shimmering Valley with the Golden Allay. The Knights of Ardonia had previously peacefully suggested to Frederick that he take them through the Underground Railroad, a network which Frederick was actually the assistant builder of. He's able to take them closer to the Shimmering Valley without too many problems, but since he isn't exactly familiar with the super secret Ardonia location of Ataraxia that nobody, aside from, everybody is meant to know about, there's no direct tunnel to Ataraxia on the way back. While Frederick attempts to recreate Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, he also has to deal with Greg being weirdly unwilling to adapt to modern technology. Or incapable. One of the two.
No. I'm not getting in that.
It's perfectly safe.
I don't trust it.
No, you gotta sit in it.
Oh, okay.
No, okay, stand in it. Now sit. No, just
This seems like a really difficult contraption.
Really? I've found it quite easy and intuitive. What are you even doing?
Did we all forget that the Nether are on our tail? We don't have time for this. Just stand in the blasted minecart.
What now?
Crouch for Ardonia's sake. You did it! Great. Just stay seated. Oh my...
Even worse, once Nether arrive, the Golden Allay freaks out and... Basically, the Golden Allay has an effects mechanism where it emits a bright light when scared enough. On top of that, the only person not affected by this would be the person the Allay bonds with. In this case, the lovable Grim. Everyone else is left blinded and disorientated. And poor Grim has to drag everyone into the minecarts and try to get Frederick stable as the Leather are hot on their tails. With the Nether on their heels, no direct tunnel to the super secret Ardonia location, as well as the massive headache, which forces Frederick to improvise by going through some ever so sketchy tunnels which are half built, basically falling apart, and quite obviously attempting to impersonate a Glove World ride and only mostly succeeding. At this point, a long chase ensues, our heroic Knights of Ardonia and Frederick being chased by the very best of the Nether fleet, Blazes! They're lean, killing machines, and they were the only ones who could fit into the tunnel and fly, so they finally get their time to shine. Who wrote some loser on the team came up with this idea? Was that me? I don't remember writing that. I did not write that. Who wrote that? I need to know. I found out who it was. It was Tyler Plays. Anyway, let's get back to it. The chase finally ends when Zulius thinks on his feet, as opposed to his head, and decides to use his song to collapse the fragile tunnel behind them, cutting them off from the Nether. Now that the boring rewrite stuff is over, it's time to talk about the What If soundtrack. Now, crafting this was a very interesting process. Hey, what? CK, stop! I need to... CK! Alright, fine!
Tidesinger, Hubris, and Ria traveled to the clans once more to convince them to join the war effort. This time, Achilian is confident and he acts much more like the Tidesinger, and delivers a powerful speech that finally convinces the masters to join the fray. Tidesinger starts tide-singing again, and just as Zulius and a few other knights return to Ataraxia from a quick mission, they see Achilian with a vast force of Ardoni warriors, some on foot while others ride horses, the most strength the modern Ardoni clans have to offer. Achilian's been training Ria and Hubris, while also doing extensive undercover operations thanks to Gallius' vast networking, and Season 3 is when his plans begin coming into fruition. Since we're talking about the Tidesinger, we're gonna go a bit more in-depth for some of our rewritten battles. He leads most of these, and even impacts the ones he's not there for, so it's only fair we get to talk about him actually doing cool stuff. So, here's a brief timeline of all the relevant battles and campaigns between seasons. First, the Siege of Meridian, where the people held back the Nether's original attack with the sacrifices of Sidonia's captain of the guard and his elite troops on the backs of rhinos. Many able-bodied citizens stayed to fight while the young and old were evacuated to the Trinity Islands. The Nether eventually pushed through the kingdom and all the Sidonian council members were killed except for Hassan. But the citizens and soldiers continued fighting tooth and nail for every street and every house, all the way until Season 3. Second, the Carthan campaign. It's what we've called the Nether's futile attempts to conquer the kingdom, but thanks to Carthan's separation from the Union, they've stayed strong and resisted the invasion. Third, the fall of Northwind. The captain of Northwind was on a mission at Frostburn when he got news of the Nether's invasion and decided to mount the resistance from the small fishing town. Fourth, the Felden resistance. While the Nether and necromancers spread throughout Felden, Lucan and Na organized their own resistance, recruiting people like Marcus and Eddie for it. Together, their resistance is no more than a group of 30 people, yet they've been waging a guerrilla warfare against the Nether, and the real trump card for their group came with a Nether Star and an upcoming date for a plan set in motion by the Knights of Ardonia. During their preparations for the upcoming battle, Zulius and Achilian disagree about the Death Singer, and Zulius inquires why Achilian refused to simply kill him to end all the bloodshed. In between Seasons 2 and 3, the tensions between them regarding this subject has erupted. The Tidesinger's greatest weakness was his reluctance to give up on Ingressus and kill the Death Singer. Achilian's moral compass would either destroy any hopes of them winning the war, or it would be destroyed in the war. Zulius can't understand Achilian's hesitations, and Gallius tries to stop their bickering. Even through their small dispute, the Tidesinger is giving Gallius and Zulius vague hints about his plans for the resistance after the next battle, but they get ignored in the heat of the moment. Later that night, Gallius asks Achilian privately what it is he's fighting for, but Achilian doesn't give him a straight answer. Despite Gallius' attempts, Achilian and Zulius part ways on negative terms for the battle.
Season 3 begins about 2 years after the Nether initially invaded Ardonia. The Knights have been gathering forces around the world to fight back, including many Ardoni thanks to the Tidesinger. Sen and Ria have trained rigorously during the time skip and are stronger than before. Sen is more conflicted about the Voltaris, though he'll still do what it takes to eliminate any threat to Ardonia, including them. Though Ria tried not to show it to Achilian, she craved some revenge after all Tigran and the others did to her. Unlike Sen's Voltaris bloodlust from Season 2, Ria knows there are more important things than vengeance, and the Tidesinger helped her and Sen see that more clearly. The Knights prepare to strike at Meridian, and things aren't looking too great for the Voltaris clan. The Voltaris Cold War is keeping the clan divided and weak, and Tigran and the Deathsinger are constantly at odds with one another. Ingressus still has around 2/3 of the Voltaris on his side, but Tigran's extremists are the vocal minority and are typically more capable of fighting. The Voltaris conflict is like a game of chess, but Ingressus only knows half the rules. Ingressus has spent a majority of his time tracking the final 2 Prime songs, while Tigran continues scheming to find the perfect time to kill the Deathsinger. Ingressus has Voltar and uses it to command obedience when he's present, the staff being the only thing that keeps the clan from falling into 2 distinct factions. Tigran has sowed a seed of doubt in many of the Voltaris' minds about the legitimacy of the staff. Voltar shows who currently is the leader, but not who objectively should be. Tigran has made a lot of the clan question whether the Deathsinger deserves Voltar, even if they still followed Ingressus after all the deceit. This has been happening between Seasons 2 and 3, and the tensions between the Voltaris grow even more when the Knights of Ardonia strike Meridian to free the city. Abigail and the others still feel hurt after Alistair's betrayal, and how much of a waste of potential he truly was. Had Alistair not gone against them and trained alongside them for the war, he would have reached King Rendor's level of strength and power. Perhaps the end itself wasn't wrong to choose him. Maybe the other Ender Knights had more to do with it than fate. The Knights of Ardonia and Ender Knights prepared together to face this triple-threat villain alliance as the Second Great War officially began. Denny retrains Thunderdome and forms a bond with him after Alistair abused him. Saxon and Trevor's dragon eggs hatched in Ataraxia at the same time, and rumors began to spread that the necromancers had something preposterous on their side. Something so unnatural and never seen before in the history of magic or sorcery that it made the Tidesinger deem them a massive wild card. The necromancers had an undead dragon. The Ender Knights have been training hard after Alistair humiliated them in combat, and they were personally trained by Gallius and sometimes Herobrine for all the things they were destined for. Saxon and Trevor's dragons are now big enough to fly and be ridden by Season 3. Saxon's dragon was a male that he named Sol, and Trevor named his female dragon Nox. Since Luna means moon in Latin, we just continued that trend for these names. Sol breathes bright lavender-colored flames, and since Saxon occasionally feeds him potions, it causes his flames to sometimes have rainbow streaks, while Nox is more timid and reserved like her master, and her flames are a beautiful light orchid color. Going with the trend of giving the dragons different colored flames, Lunas are a bright magenta while Thunderdomes are a deep lilac. Here's a quick little visualizer of all the dragon sizes and their flame colors. Sol and Nox are the youngest, so they're the smallest ones. Some more details we're introducing are their new weapons and ender magic. As far as weapons go, Gallius took Denny's family sword and repaired it as a gift for him, and Trevor has been working on his enchantment skills until he was able to enchant all the Ender Knight's weapons with an Ender Fire enchantment. Similar to Ingressus' sword, except they all light in colors that match their dragon's flames. Compared to the Nether, the end in the script doesn't have a lot of advantages or buffs. It seems there were only 5 or so knights at a time, so to compensate for the low Ender Knight numbers, they harness magic from the end. Abby and the others have been doing their research, and end magic is similar to the Force in Star Wars. It's a passive magic, unlike songs, and they still have a while to go until they're able to use their abilities in battle. In Crown Peak, the leaders of the Triple Threat Villain Alliance, Pythus, Deathsinger, and Necrolord, come together to discuss the current state of the war. Deathsinger tries reminding the other 2 leaders that despite them both having everything they want, he's still missing what was promised to him, the Prime Songs. Necrolord seems somewhat willing to offer aid, yet Pythus completely disregards his plea, for this beast still isn't satisfied and wants to rule over the End Realm as well, and the meeting is adjourned as the Deathsinger leaves, frustrated at Pythus' denial. Ingressus remembers the great King Chronos once was, compared to the monster Pythus is. Chronos and Ingressus created a complex plan involving time travel and intentionally retreating that no one else knew of, but when Deathsinger returned, Pythus killed his father, taking his retreat as an act of cowardice rather than an advanced chess move. Ingressus and Pythus were never friends despite being allies. They were complete opposites in every way. As their riders train, Sol and Nox are cuddled with each other while sleeping, and it would look absolutely adorable.
Abby returns from helping the rebels in an important battle, and Denny's on a side quest in Feldon and gives their resistance a nether star. After that, the Battle of the Two Beacons commences. Between seasons, Lucan and Nika's resistance has grown to around 30 people, including some of Lucan's criminal friends from Season 2, and even Marcus. Lawbreakers and law enforcers united to fight a greater evil. They also recruited Eddie, who allegedly commanded a snowman army, but it's hard to take a guy whose only character trait is being drunk seriously. This small group is using their knowledge as locals to cause problems for the enemy, using little-known shortcuts, hidden run tactics, and guerrilla warfare to keep them busy. Through the three-way villain alliance, there's an opportunity for a very interesting character dynamic: the Necrolord and the Death Singer. One chooses the dead over his own people, while the other would die to protect them. Ingressus knew Zahn was Voltaris when they first met, thanks to a sort of sixth sense from Voltar to identify clan members. Ingressus actually respects Zahn for his intelligence and creating an entire faction out of nothing. However, another part of him disapproves of him defecting from the clan and forsaking songs in favor of dark magic. While Season 2 was the peak of Necrolord's power, it also cost him the ability to use songs as a whole. Wielding songs is special to the Ardoni, and Zahn chose necromancy instead. Black magic has a great effect on its practitioners. It darkens Zahn's eyes and markings to a permanent dull grayish-red color, as the lights they emit also dim further when he uses necromancy, the opposite of what songs do to Ardoni when wielded. He's hardly able to wield songs by Season 2 and completely unable by Season 3. Zahn still keeps his songs, forever bonded, yet permanently severed from their power, thanks to his extensive use of other magics beyond songs, abandoning his identity as an Ardoni. Ingressus shows some sympathy for the Necrolord, and asks him why he hides his face and tells him he can take off his mask for once. The Nether has been keeping close watch over the necromancers, mainly through Pythus' right-hand Natharan, Scorch, local dictator of Feldon, #1 Felina hater, and now the Necrolord's babysitter. Doesn't matter what we call this douchebag. The Necrolord and Scorch have a rivalry of sorts, as Necrolord is extremely paranoid that Pythus' right hand was sent to Feldon only to monitor him like a child, and Scorch himself doesn't respect nor trust Necrolord at all. Tensions are high between the Nether and Necromancers, and Zarya only fans the flame from the darkness. He was the one necromancer who never forgot what Necrolord promised them, and has grown to loathe his so-called idol. He wanted to destroy both Necrolord and the Nether, so he's secretly been a spy for the Tidesinger, feeding him information anonymously and planting some of the seeds of Tidesinger's plan into the Necromancer's ranks. Although Zarya never revealed his double-crossing to anyone, the Tidesinger would have inevitably found out, since he's very cautious and has Gallius' vast network on his side. Zarya is one of the Tidesinger's greatest assets, yet no one knows this besides himself, Tidesinger, Herobrine, and the audience.
Hello there, Dragon Defender again. I will be reading The Battle of the Two Beacons. I'll be going over this fight with some added details that I think would personally benefit the rewrites just a little bit more. So without further ado, here we go. The Knights of Ardonia begin their siege on Meridian, Tidesinger leading the charge, with the Sidonians' last war elephant, supported by the few surviving Rhino Riders following behind. The Knights of Ardonia push through to the center of the city. In the sky, the Ender Knights and their dragons take on the Withers and Blazes. Thunderdome and Luna fend off the Withers and Blazes while Denny and Abigail jump down and help the KOA members on the ground. Tidesinger puts Zulius in charge of the allied forces, while Tidesinger and an elite team of the best KOA warriors, as well as Saxon, Trevor, and their dragons, Sol and Nox, spearhead a front that allows them to finally meet up with Hassan. Tidesinger orders Hassan to activate the beacon, warping Tidesinger and the elite troops to Feldon. On the Feldon front, Lucan and Nika gather their rebels, and after a firework and a plan of action, the Feldon front officially begins. Eddie and Marcus distract some of the Nether forces as Nika jumps down and activates the beacon. Just as they begin to get surrounded by the Nether forces, Tidesinger beams in with the reinforcements. Tidesinger is a huge game changer in the Felora fight, as he alone is able to hold off most of the Nether forces. But Tigran, the Angel of Death, and more Nether troops are on their way. Tidesinger warps again, attempting to cut off the rest of the incoming reinforcements. Within the warp, Achilian activates his aggro beam, cutting down a few Wither skeletons, but also signaling an ally. Herobrine enters the warp with his sword, terrifying the Nether forces and eliminating all of them with a single lightning strike. Herobrine and Achilian successfully had stopped the reinforcements heading to Felora, but had failed to stop the reinforcements that were heading to Meridian. Herobrine catches wind of this and teleports away, leaving Tidesinger to beam back into Felora. Tigran and the Angel of Death beam into Meridian alongside some Netharans and Wither skeleton reinforcements. A few Netharans riding ghasts fly over the city, dropping in more Nether troops, and adding more enemies in the sky for the Ender Knights to deal with. Herobrine teleports in following a bolt of lightning as he cuts down some of the Nether troops. Sen and Ria are far more competent fighters now, both being able to hold back the reinforcements on the front lines. Sen and Ria stay together, fighting through the city until they run into none other than Tigran. This time, Sen and Ria are much more evenly matched with Tigran. However, Tigran's brute strength still ends up overwhelming Sen and Ria, injuring them both pretty severely, taking them out of the fight for the rest of the battle, and breaking their confidence and spirits once again. Before Tigran can finish them off, however, Zulius appears, shooting his aggro vortex towards Tigran, causing Tigran to fire off his aggro spear to counter it. Zulius' song overpowers it and pushes both songs back at Tigran. The two face off for the third time, still being extremely evenly matched. Tigran, after being a bit worn out from having to put up more of a fight against Ria and Sen, gets caught off guard for just a second, giving Zulius an opportunity to uppercut Tigran and cause him to fall off the ledge. Tigran uses his Mobilium song to narrowly avoid falling into the lava lake and landing in water, being carried away in the stream. Zulius passes out from being too exhausted, causing Sen and Ria to carry Zulius somewhere safe from all the fighting. Herobrine confronts the Angel of Death, causing an epic battle to follow. Herobrine toys with the Angel and starts to easily overwhelm him, managing to get a few slashes in the Angel's wings, causing the Angel to fly away, attempting to retreat. Herobrine is having none of this, though, as he begins to follow after the Angel, striking him with lightning and causing him to come crashing down towards the ground. Herobrine rips the top of an empty tower and throws it at the Angel. The flying rat just barely manages to avoid most of the building as he flies away, retreating from the battle entirely. The Nether begins to retreat as they start to get overrun by the Knights of Ardonia. While retreating, the Nether troops are caught by surprise, as Magnerite soldiers from Carthan, as well as Ignis, arrive from the north, cutting off their retreat. The last Nether troops are surrounded and get completely destroyed, signaling an end to the battle on the Meridian front. Meanwhile, back on the Philora front, Saxon and Trevor, as well as their dragons, get subdued by Scorch, the Necrolord, and Ripper, the undead dragon. When Tidesinger beams back in, he sees Scorch dragging Saxon and Trevor, alongside their dragons, away, causing him to immediately jump in and confront the Necrolord. The battle ensues between the Ardoni who forsook songs, and the Ardoni who was beloved by songs. The two fight it out, Achilian avoiding most of Necrolord's necromancer magic. Achilian bounces around Necrolord with his Mobilium song, and lands a pretty good blow on the Necrolord, causing them to briefly stop fighting and exchange a few words of dialogue.
Tell me, Tidesinger, how can a legend such as yourself call themselves a hero if you are too blind to see the truth? Your alliance is frail, made up of outcasts and outlaws. So I ask you this. How far do you think that oblivious hope of yours will drive you in this war, ignited by hatred? Necrolord says. Achilian gives a witty reply back and says, Perhaps you are right. Yet my choices are far overshadowed by your own. You, an old delusional Ardonia, choosing the dead over your own living people. You fight beside schemers and kinslayers, yet heel like a dog to your foolish masters. What do you think happens when the use you have for them runs out? Before the two can continue, Scorch arrives and flanks Tidesinger with a few Wither skeleton forces. However, before Achilian begins to fight both of them, he notices the other knights getting surrounded. Instead of continuing the fight, Achilian chooses to save the lives of his soldiers, falling back and helping fight back the new reinforcements brought by Scorch. Achilian realizes the magnitude of the situation and knows he has to retreat before more of his soldiers get captured, or worse. Achilian tells Lucan and Na to fall back, telling them that they will have another opportunity to free Feldon. Achilian warps back to Meridian before the Nether forces can take him down, leaving his elite forces in Feldon to fight them another day. After the battle, Achilian beacons into Meridian and alerts the KOA that the Battle of Two Beacons was declared a victory. Amidst the celebrating, Achilian pulls aside Abigail and Denny to tell them about what had happened to Saxon and Trevor. Achilian admits that he was unable to save them in the midst of the chaos, causing Abigail to feel the weight of what had just happened to two of her knights. Meanwhile, Ignis and Sen reunite after not having seen each other in over 2 years. Onyx, in this rewrite, doesn't die in Meridian. Because of this, Onyx also witnesses the reunion and at first makes fun of Ignis.
But the other Magnarites from Carthan defend Ignis, informing both Onyx and Sen about what Ignis had achieved in Carthan. To Onyx, this was a bit of a slap to the face, as he had seemingly achieved nothing compared to Ignis. More on Onyx later, though. Now, let's get back to CK voicing these rewrites.
Ever since the war began, Tidesinger had deemed the necromancers the wild card of the triple threat villain alliance, so he sent Zulius and Masani to help the Felden rebels end the necromancers' dominion in the west. Achilian and Zulius have one final conversation at the city docks, discussing the Deathsinger and the war before they part. Without Gallius there to mediate the situation, it escalates and the two start yelling at each other, and Zulius finally asks Achilian, "How far are you willing to fall for this foolish stubbornness of yours?" Zulius soon turns around and boards a boat with Masani without looking back, sailing off to Felden to infiltrate the kingdom. With remorse, the Tidesinger watches his friend sail away, but he pushes his conflict aside and gathers the remaining knights at Meridian to fly off on Thunderdome to find the Protesium Prime. The Knights of Ardonia reclaimed Meridian from the Nether, and all of the other Voltaris who followed Tigran to the city were slaughtered. The only survivor was Tigran himself, and this alone caused his plans to almost immediately fall apart. Without a great majority of his supporters, Tigran lost momentum and Ingressus was able to unite the clan for the time being, using Tigran's reckless actions as an example of what happens when a clan is not unified. Now listen, Tigran is a terrible battle commander. He sacrifices so many Voltaris in the name of revenge and is the exact opposite of Ingressus, who would rather fight alone than let his clanmates be meaninglessly slaughtered. Tigran never cared about the others, and his lack of good leadership has made a heavy impact on his extremist cause throughout the whole show, but his disregard for the lives of his followers ended up being a costly mistake this time. Ingressus hated that some Voltaris had to die to restore a semblance of unity to the clan, and Tigran's fury only increased. He has no choice but to submit to the Deathsinger now, but his loathing of everything Ingressus does and everything he stands for does not cease. Tigran is even more motivated to personally destroy the Deathsinger, and he decides to do the very same thing a desperate Ingressus once did. Ally with the Nether King for a cause that would wreck Ardonia even more. Only this time, nobody knew about the lone Voltaris betraying the world. They would know when the time was right. Ignis accompanies Sen to Ataraxia, officially joining the Knights of Ardonia, and entrusting Borgin and Maxwell with everything in Carthan. Onyx joins them in Ataraxia too, still riddled with insecurities. After their success at Meridian, the Knights sent some of their wounded soldiers back to Ataraxia to recover, including Sen and Ria. Greg would also accompany them, not necessarily because he's injured, but because he wants to look out for his little bro. As he's recovering, Sen spends some time in reflection, reminiscing about his training with Gallius and has a calm talk with him and Val for the first time in a while. Ria tries to help aid and comfort the other soldiers who were wounded far more severely than she was, and it's clear how much of a better person she is now compared to the angsty teenage attitude she had in Season 2. Ria treats them kindly and embraces her softer side while still retaining the strength of a soldier when she needs to. A day or two later, Sen, Ria, Gallius, and Greg are in the workshop when they hear panicked screams outside as Ardoni urges them to take the Seporium Prime song and run. The Tidesinger refused to wield the Prime in battle, so Gallius kept it in his workshop for safekeeping. But of course, the Voltaris came after it. The Deathsinger finally decided enough was enough, and he tracked down Ataraxia to take back his song and gain another advantage over Tigran. Greg is about to run outside to slow the Voltaris, and he looks back at Sen one last time and tells him to be safe. Val is already outside fighting, so Gallius had no choice but to give the song to Sen and Ria, telling them they had to go now or else the Deathsinger would kill all three of them. Gallius knows he's too slow and couldn't outrun the Voltaris, so he quickly hands the song to Sen and Ria, pleading them to go. Sen nods, and he and Ria start to run off into the battle, trying to escape with the Prime song knowing that Gallius would probably be killed. Sen and Ria aren't fully recovered from their injuries yet and stumble around in the burning city, the beauty of Ataraxia being completely destroyed as the Deathsinger slaughters anyone who stands in his way. A Voltaris whose markings are hidden behind the ash and smoke uses an Aggressium song to collapse the bridge Sen and Ria were on, separating them. Sen finds himself alone on the other side, surrounded by rubble, clutching the Prime song as he tries to find a way out. The Voltaris who collapsed the bridge approaches Sen in the smoke, and Sen has no choice but to defend himself. The Voltaris fights Sen and knocks him down to the ground, still holding onto the Seporium Prime with all of his might. Sen takes a closer look at the Voltaris, and they both have a weird moment of realization. They shared the same markings, and the Voltaris lowered his sword and only muttered a few words. Could that be you? Brother? My voice acting sucks. But their quick second of neutrality didn't last long. The Deathsinger flies towards them with the Mobilium Prime and glances at both of the Ardoni, at first sharing their look of confusion, but after seeing both of their markings, he had all the confirmation he needed. Ingressus whacks Sen unconscious, regains the Saporium Prime song, and decides to take Sen with them to Hailstone. Delphius doesn't know what to think about the whole ordeal, but all the Voltaris leave Ataraxia once the Deathsinger got what he wanted. From another floating island, Ria saw a little bit of this interaction. She was weakened and distracted, only able to get in a few glimpses of Sen and the other Voltaris. But Ria did see the Deathsinger taking the Prime Song and Sen's brother recognizing him. Ria was about to leap into action and jump to protect Sen, but she froze in fear instead. Her mind was thrown into disorder watching Sen seemingly surrender to the Voltaris. When the Deathsinger appeared, Ria got flashbacks of the vault and a little wave of PTSD surged over her. Ria hid herself from the Deathsinger and her breathing became panicked and shallow. The sounds of the battle reverberating in her head and she was hyperventilating, trying to compose herself but she couldn't stop. After a few minutes, Ria managed to calm herself down. But by the time Ria looked back where Sen was, they were all gone. Sen, the Deathsinger, and the Prime Song were nowhere to be seen, and Ria tormented herself over what ifs and could-haves and should-haves. The Ardoni safe haven was now engulfed in flames, and the survivors were left with little hope after they lost so many innocents and soldiers alike, and the Deathsinger also claimed another Prime Song. When Ria and the others recover from the attack, they find Gallius' body bloodied with deep punctures all over, which could only have been the work of the Deathsinger's aggro-blast. When the city is sacked by the Voltaris, Ignis ends up being separated from Sen and Ria as they run, and he decides to instead help out those in need. He encounters a lone Voltaris and fends him off, utilizing his obsidian arm as a shield and saves a whole family of civilians. Then, he pushes the Voltaris off a ledge to end the fight, and he looks down saying something like, "Yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine," and runs off. Meanwhile, Onyx and Grek help people evacuate when a collapsing floating island lands near them, and Onyx pushes Grek into the evacuation trail while he remains on the floating islands, now with the big gap splitting them up. Onyx sees a score of Voltaris warriors charge at him, and looks back at Grek and says some corny Magnerite-sounding thing like, "Go on without me, meathead, this is gonna get ugly." Onyx unleashes his natural heat as Grek tries to get to him, but he too is being held back by other Voltaris. Onyx manages to kill 2 of them, but he's being overwhelmed, and keeps releasing more and more heat until his body begins glowing. Onyx lets out a heart-rending roar and he blows up into a boiling hot nothingness, taking the remaining Voltaris down with him. Grek watched Onyx die and feels remorseful since despite their quips and fights, they were still brothers in arms. His sadness quickly turns to rage towards the Voltaris that prevented him from reaching his friend, and he kills all of them without mercy. The next day, one of Tidesinger's spies tells of Saxon, Trevor, and their dragons being spotted in Velgrren. Abby and Luna fly there as Denny and some others find the Protesium Prime. Abigail fights Vulcanus in Velgrren, and we learn just how powerful he really is as he fights Luna barehanded, flinging her around and even uppercutting her into a building. Their dispute is eventually resolved, and Vulcanus offers Abby a way to see him again should she choose to, but Luna hates him for the humiliation she suffered. Abby returns to Ataraxia only to find it destroyed. The Tidesinger and all the other main knights return to the devastated city. Achilian and Ria help out in the search and rescue for survivors trapped under the rubble. Ria has already begun coping with the loss of Gallius and the apparent betrayal of Sen by choosing to ignore it. Ria tells the others what she saw, but Greg and Val advocate for Sen, refusing to believe he would betray them. Achilian decides the next best move is to find the final Prime Song before Ingressus, so the knights march up north to obtain it. They take a small detour and stop at Nestoria one night before continuing their journey, and Achilian has a chance to talk with Master Aurelius privately. They both know of Achilian's past, how he considered the Deathsinger a brother, and Achilian's unfortunate origins, even before Ingressus was around. Master Aegis saved Achilian as a newborn. He watched as Achilian's father brought his son to the ocean early one morning and nearly let him drown in the waves in his grief over the loss of his wife, wanting to end who he deemed responsible for the tragedy. Aurelius questioned the Tidesinger's willingness to kill Ingressus, asking if winning the war would truly bring back the peace he once had. Aurelius gets a more honest answer since he was the one person who did know about their former friendship. The old master convinces Achilian to wield the Prime Songs once and for all against Ingressus, and after linking himself to the Protesium Prime in Nestoria, he and the others leave swiftly the next morning. Sen wakes up alone in the chilling prisons of Hailstone, far north in the land controlled by the Voltaris. He looks outside the crack in his cell to see nothing but snow, and he's left by himself in the dark cell with plenty of time to contemplate the past. His thoughts, however, are eventually interrupted by the presence of another Ardoni, standing just outside the iron bars. Tigran Voltaris just had to visit the vulnerable clanless prisoner and shame him for his weakness even more. He pulls out Thalius' sword and twirls it around, degrading and taunting Sen, and the clanless Ardoni tries to ignore Tigran at first. Tigran's been lurking in the shadows a ton this season, especially after the Meridian fight, so this is where he wants to let out all of his fury and nearly takes out his anger on Sen. When Sen begins talking back to Tigran, Tigran angrily opens the cell door and begins walking towards Sen, laughing maniacally. The poor kid was just standing there, now scared and defenseless, when a much calmer voice was heard from the other side of the prison. The Death Singer puts a stop to Tigran before he so much as laid a blade on Sen's body, and Tigran immediately relented, although he absolutely did not want to, and submitted himself to the Death Singer like a dog. Sen is in pure confusion seeing Tigran, the most threatening, evil Voltaris alive, act submissive for once. When the Death Singer orders Tigran to leave, Sen is still tense being in the room now with another dangerous Voltaris. But Death Singer has other plans for Sen. He opens the cell... Wait, we already opened the cell door, hold on. He takes Sen to his quarters, where they have their first talk with no weapons being raised. The Death Singer is still mostly corrupted by this point, but the stark difference between his behavior versus Tigran impacts Sen's view of them both. Ingressus interrogates Sen about the Resistance, and Sen is lucky, because he actually didn't know where the other two primes were. When Ingressus finds out that Sen is genuinely clueless, he stops the interrogation aspect of the conversation and asks Sen other questions about his Voltaris heritage. Sen honestly had no idea about any of this, so Ingressus allows him to stay in Hailstone for the time being and meet his brothers. Ingressus also chooses not to kill him, since Sen really had nothing he wanted. Instead, Ingressus decides to teach Sen about the Voltaris and educate him about their perspective and way of life. He even asks if Sen would like to be initiated into the clan. For Sen's entire life, he'd been alienated from the other Ardoni, known as the clanless child, and now he's finally offered to be part of a clan. But of course, it has to be the Voltaris. As much as Sen wants to be part of something greater than himself and join one of the clans, he has not fully accepted that he's Voltaris yet, and he's scared by the thought of having the Death Singer as his leader. He'd rather stay an outcast than be affiliated with the clan that stole his home and his adoptive family. Sen gathers his courage and says no to Ingressus, who respects Sen's decision and allows Sen to stay within the confines of the city until the next time they meet. The Death Singer still kind of keeps Sen as a captive, but he thought there was no chance Sen would consider any of his words if he was forced to remain in that cell any longer. Sen goes to meet his Voltaris brothers for the first time, and they each have differing stances on the Voltaris conflict. Delthius is one of the few supporters Tigran has left, although after the disaster that was Meridian, he laid low and stayed away from Tigran as much as he possibly could. Almrak, on the other hand, lost one of his legs as a child and cannot fight, but he's always been loyal to Ingressus and opposed the extremist ideologies of Tigran. Almrak and Delthius haven't always gotten along in recent times due to their views, but they still love each other as brothers, and Almrak welcomes Sen with open arms. Sen has to come to terms with his half-Voltaris, half-Sindaris lineage, and Delthius storms away, not wanting to see Sen. Almrak stays and sits with Sen to have a genuine talk that makes Sen's worldview change even further. He cannot bring himself to hate either of his brothers for simply having red markings. While Sen acclimates to being in Hailstone, the Knights discovered the location of the other two primes while he was gone. They had already found the Partisian prime and gave it to the Tidesinger, and they swiftly marched to the northernmost point in Ardonia to obtain the final prime song, not far from Hailstone. After the battle, Ignis helps Grek deal with Onyx's death and Sen's abduction right after. Now that he's with the Knights, I'll go over some other reasons we made Ignis live and what role he plays in the rebellion. He supports Sen after he's abducted. Only Ignis, Val, Grim, and Grek believe Sen would never betray his friends and surrender to the Death Singer. Ignis and Grek bond over anecdotes about Sen, until they too become good friends. Also, Ignis basically goes full chronicler mode when he sees Achilian, asking him questions about his life and the Great War since he's a living legend. He's excited to talk with the Tidesinger himself and takes an extensive amount of notes about everything he says, just as a fun side detail. As the Knights cross the Northwind Flats, Ignis releases all of his natural heat and produces enough warmth to serve as a natural heater for those less acquainted with the cold, and makes the trek a lot easier. He even has a small moment with Grim at Frostburn, but that's a good story for another time. On their way up north, they pass a few half-buried shrines from an Aeon ruled by the Ardoni, but lost to time. It's just a fun little background detail that adds to the lore and would look cool in traveling scenes. The Knights approach Frostburn and meet with Roman, the captain of Northwind. Roman is from Songs of War What If. It's not even out yet, but shout out to DaFallout. We liked the name, so we went with it. We're also expanding Songs of War's animal kingdom with this one. Frostburn has 5 mammoths, and if you were paying attention earlier, you'd know the Sidonians ride rhinos and elephants into battle, which we thought was cool too. Ria is still in denial about Sen being Voltaris, and after hours of trekking through the snowy plains and ice sheets, they arrive at the village of Frostburn, where Achilian meets with the leader of the town. Frostburn in this rewrite is one of the very few places in Ardonia that is not nether occupied, because we imagine the people living there being like remote, crazy Siberians who are the toughest and most stubborn humans alive. A majority of the knights stayed with the people of Frostburn, while the Tidesinger led Ria and Grim to Gale Point, where the Aggressium Prime was hidden. Achilian, Grim, and Ria get the last prime at Gale Point, and they pass by one last frozen shrine with 2 missing pillars. The Glacian gives Achilian the prime song, but with the state of the shrine outside, he can't actually use it. Tidesinger has one final conversation about his morality here, and the Glacian's wisdom gives Achilian a new insight into his personal conflict with Ingressus. He asks the Tidesinger one simple question. Tell me, Achilian, have you truly done all you could? Or is there a reason you refrain from doing so? Which really leaves him thinking. When they return to Frostburn, a scout frantically rushes in with horrible news. A nether army was coming right towards them using the snowstorm as cover. And worst of all, the Deathsinger is leading them. They're mere minutes away from an unexpected battle, and Captain Roman ushers the knights to leave with the prime as soon as they can. Tidesinger refuses to abandon Frostburn, so he takes command and helps organize their small resistance. And Ria asks why he isn't just giving the prime song to Val, or getting himself on the back of a dragon and flying away with it. Achilian knew the Deathsinger had the Mobilium Prime, and with Withers at his command, he would do anything to catch up and claim the Aggressium Prime. Running away was useless. Instead, he decides to put just his own life in peril by finally confronting the Deathsinger and doing what everyone has been begging him to. Ria protests, but Achillean reassures her with a hand on her shoulder and tells her she's in charge for the meantime. The Tidesinger used the Aggressium Prime as bait to lure the Deathsinger away from the town.
Hello again. You thought I would only talk about one battle? Me, a big military history and strategy nerd? Ha! You thought wrong. Anyways, I will also be talking about the Battle of Northwind. Achillean rallies the Knights of Ardonia up, as well as Roman's armies, and forms a plan. Achillean knows Ingressus is mainly after the Prime Song, so Achillean lures Ingressus away from the rest of the battle. While Ingressus is lured away towards Achillean, the invading Nether forces meet the Knights of Ardonia and Roman's armies head on. Ria, Hubris, and Greg stick together as they watch each other's backs, having an easier time fending off against the many wither skeletons. The Golden Allay, accompanying the Knights of Ardonia, gets scared and latches onto Grim's head, causing Ignis to stick with Grim to help protect the Allay and fight off the Nether forces as well. Roman leads the Frostburn troops and runs the mammoths straight through the sides of the large force, plowing through the Nether forces' ground troops with ease. In the sky, Abigail and Denny, as well as their dragons, fight alongside Val as together they take on 2 withers. Since it was too windy and visibility was low due to the snow, the Nether decided to not send ghasts due to the weather conditions, and avoided blazes since their orange and yellow glow would also blow their stealthy cover.
The fighting begins, and the 2 singers oppose each other for the last time. Achillean refuses to hand over the prime, firing an aggro beam right in the Deathsinger's face, but he dodges it, and their duel commences. Achillean with only 1 prime is equal to, if not slightly superior to Ingressus' power with 2 prime songs, and they fight in the snowy plains in the middle of the storm, almost alienated from the rest of the conflict. Just when everything seems to be going well, a dark figure zooms in and tackles Val away from the main fight. The Angel of Death has arrived at Frostburn with unexpected nether reinforcements, all accompanied by one Natharan who would drastically alter the tone of this battle and make it far more cataclysmic: King Pythus himself. Pythus was annoyed by Frostburn's continued resistance, and after the loss at Meridian, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He sees flashing lights in the distance and realizes Deathsinger's fighting Tidesinger, alone. Pythus joins their fight, and he and the Deathsinger give each other a quick nod of acknowledgement as they team up on the Tidesinger. Achillean makes extremely heavy use of the Protesium Prime to fend them off. However, it was only a matter of time before Achillean exhausted himself and would end up exposed. Just when all seemed lost, another major player joined their fight. Lightning bolts all across the skies of Northwind interrupted the violent snowstorm, and a dark shadow zapped in front of the Tidesinger. Herobrine spawned in and fought alongside Achillean, and he sent Pythus flying all the way back to Frostburn. He crashed through a few buildings, but Pythus walked out completely unscathed. The Phantom taunts Pythus similarly to his infamous taunt to Steve, and uses his dimension-bending abilities to deter Pythus. But this lunatic is enjoying his time, laughing at the ghost's attempts. The The two singers are still fighting over the Aggressium Prime like a game of keep-away. Achilian was still conflicted about killing Ingressus, even when literally everything was giving him signs it was for the best. Then, they switched opponents briefly. Tidesinger was fighting Pythus, and Herobrine was fighting Deathsinger. Herobrine tries staring at Ingressus as an attack, but unlike many others before him, he doesn't go insane from looking at his eyes and seeing past the physical dimensions. The Primes still have an extremely strong grasp on Ingressus, and they're not going to relent so easily, not even to a myth like Herobrine. He tries forcing Ingressus into other realms to gain an advantage, but the Deathsinger is strong enough to propel them right back into Ardonia before they fully leave. The four combatants converge once again, and in a moment of confusion, Herobrine grabs the Aggressium Prime and quickly flies up, attempting to teleport back to his dimension with the Prime. The Deathsinger catches him mid-teleportation with the Saporochesis, and with the help of a Mabilla Wing song, he anchors himself to the ground while holding onto the ghost that stole his coveted prize. Herobrine is frozen in the middle of hopping between dimensions, and his physical form blinds the others as it looks like he's made of pure light. Achilian jumps onto the Deathsinger's back and begins choking him with the staff, trying to get Ingressus to let go of his grip on Herobrine. As the three are in a stalemate, the Nether King very unsubtly runs up and tries to take out both singers with one quick swing of his axe while they're distracted. The Deathsinger notices though, and finally brings down Herobrine, who crashes down and collides with Pythus on the ground. Ingressus composes himself and sees the Aggressium Prime had flown off in the explosion, and tries to claim it. The two singers engage in a struggle for the final time, and in a moment of breathing, Achillean catches a glimpse of the Deathsinger's eyes, yet sees nothing but anger without a single trace of his brother. He's even throwing Voltar around in this fight, far too desperate to get this Prime, and he's seemingly willing to sacrifice everything for it. Achillean's hope in believing there was some part of Ingressus left wavers, now believing maybe the fury of the Primes really is all that remains. He prepares to dodge the Deathsinger's attack, but in that quick moment, he reminisces of all the conversations and arguments he had regarding his beliefs. Yet one thing resonated in his head more than the others. The question the Glacian asked. In that instant of pure rage, the Deathsinger does something previously thought impossible. He accidentally activates a Mobiliburst and his Agroblast at the same time, and Achillean had his answer to the question, so he decides to take a gamble. One that could determine the fate of the Voltaris and the war. Achillean deactivates his song mid-charge, drops his staff, and lands on the ground, leaving himself wide open. When the Deathsinger notices, it's far too late. The Nestorus looks up at him, smiling slightly, and lets Ingressus attack him without defending himself. The Deathsinger lands a devastating blow to Tidesinger's chest, and Ingressus spins around to continue fighting as if nothing happened. He looks at Achillean, who's stumbling while holding a hand to his chest, and Ingressus realizes this was no trick. Herobrine and Pythus run up to the explosion and see the Tidesinger clutching his chest, injured. Herobrine realized the Tidesinger just made the extremely risky gamble of allowing the Deathsinger to kill him. He knew the probability of Achillean sacrificing his life was very high, yet he couldn't help but be disappointed that Ardonia's greatest leader let himself be overcome by emotions and allowed his enemy to destroy him. Herobrine doesn't understand emotions like mortals do, so he can't comprehend being compelled by them enough to pull a stunt like that. In that split second, all those thoughts race through Herobrine's mind. Pythus looks back at him while he stands there and instantly swings his axe at him. Herobrine merely looks back at the Nether King with a mix of frustration and disappointment and just teleports away before he can get hit. Pythus turns around and grins, watching Achillean collapse to his knees before heading back to Frostburn to capture the town.
The resistance is overwhelmed by the Nether, and they're losing a ton of soldiers. Abigail and Denny help evacuate many children and civilians on their dragons, shielding them with their bodies, causing arrows to get stuck in their armor. While flying off, they see Grek ignore the order to retreat, taking on the entire army by himself, and actually holding his own pretty well. Luna grabs Grek with her talons and the knights retreat, and after 2 years of fighting, Frostburn has finally fallen. Captain Roman charged into the fray atop his mammoth to buy the knights time to escape, yet both him and his mount are killed by Pythus, and the knights see the Tidesinger's near lifeless body, knowing the battle was a major loss.
Why didn't you?
I was wrong about you. Ingressus is gone. Deathsinger is all that's left in you.
No, I didn't want this.
All I ever have you back. The real you. I loved you more than anyone in Gressus. Why must it end like this?
I'm a monster. I've taken everything from you.
I forgive you, Gressus. I forgive you.
After giving Achilian a proper funeral and burying him in the north, the Deathsinger went to the nearby shrine to harness the Prime Songs. He finally has the power he sought for so long, but Ingressus didn't feel powerful. He wasn't happy that he finally achieved his goal. On the contrary, he couldn't stop thinking about Achilian and what it cost to get here. We're not rewriting Deathsinger, just adding a few things here and there so he can appropriately respond to everyone else's rewrites. 2 members of the Knights of Ardonia join the Feldenarch, Zulius and Masani. They get acquainted with the Felden resistance, and Zulius, Lucan, and Nika recruit Alec. He was traumatized after watching the death of the man he respected the most, Kiyoshi, at the hands of the Necrolord. Since the Villain Alliance took over, he's been with the last remnants of the Felden army at the Luma Watchtower, and acts as their leader. They're limited to helping rescue civilians and refugees, only engaging the enemy in small skirmishes when necessary. Lucan and Nika's resistance has been far more offensive despite Alec having more military capability. After some back and forth, Zulius helps convince Alec and his army to fight with them. While they're off recruiting what's left of the military, Masani finds Lyra helping out the rebels. Since there's no better time to tell Masani's backstory, we're gonna go over it now because she joins the Feldenarch. She and Lyra were childhood friends. Masani struggled with poverty, and Lyra was in training to become a Felden Council member. Masani was found by unyielding legionnaires where she was recruited. Her time in the Legion helped her become a fantastic archer and learn escape routes all over. However, she was also gaslit and abused by the Legion, threatened in all sorts of horrible ways if she tried to leave. And one day, she and some other legionnaires went to rob a vault in Felden. The high-ranking leader of this small division was a ruthless Felina male who was one of Masani's abusers. And during this heist, they're all caught and arrested by law enforcement officers. The leader blames Masani for everything during their time in prison, and all the other legionnaires start fights with her. Eventually, the leader plans a breakout, and all the others in his division join him. All except Masani. She took the time to reflect, and she never spoke once. Some prisoners even believed she was nonverbal. Once her sentence was over, Masani would have been hanged for her crimes against Felden, if it weren't for Lyra. She was a high enough council member to stop the death sentence, and bargained to have Masani exiled instead. Their last interaction was Lyra asking Masani how she's come to a life like this, and Masani turned away. She had nothing, and wandered aimlessly until Hubers found her in Etheria, while he and Grek accompanied Ria to enchant her spear. Hubers bought Masani a new bow, a rare, genuine act of kindness from someone other than her best friend. Masani became the 4th official member of the Knights of Ardonia. So when Masani is finally back in Felden and sees Lyra, she is shocked and extraordinarily happy, and so is Lyra. They finally reunite as friends after everything Masani has been through. Word spread of the Tidesinger's demise, and a memorial was held for his life and death in Kaltaria. When the news reached Zulius, he felt awful. He and Achilian had become very good friends, and after departing from him in anger, they never got to set things right. And they never would. Zulius feels terrible for acting so harshly and wishes he could take it all back, yet he still has to lead the Felden rebels against the enemies in Philora, so he carries on like Achilian would have wanted. In one meeting with Lucan, Nika, Masani, and a few others, Lucan insults Zulius for his lack of doing anything since the Tidesinger died, saying under his breath, "You're less helpful to us than the necromancers are to the Nether." And that's saying something. But his sarcastic comment made Zulius realize something important. The Tidesinger's plan from the beginning was never to defeat the necromancers. They were too unpredictable, given their powers over undead being completely unprecedented, and like nothing he'd ever seen before. Achilian knew the best way to destroy the necromancers without spilling unnecessary blood of his own comrades was through the Nether. Zulius uncovers what we've dubbed the Tidesinger's puzzle. Gallius' vast network of communications helped Achilian spy on the necromancers from afar during the war. With the help of dozens of spies, he was able to lay down the seeds of betrayal in the Necrolord's mind, and manipulated the already paranoid Ardoni into believing the Nether would overpower his faction. By the time Zulius figured everything out, the necromancers were already set on the path to betray the Nether, and now it was up to him to figure out how to take advantage of the situation. Zulius remembers all the subtle hints Achillean gave him, and despite their arguments, Achillean trusted Zulius to carry out his plans. Even in death, the Tidesinger cannot help but save the world. The Necrolord may have been smart, but the Tidesinger's cunning was leagues ahead of him. With the help of the locals, and after enlisting Alec's rebel team, Zulius leads the Felden resistance and prepares to strike. Necrolord's broken mind has finally snapped, and he prepares his faction to strike against the Nether in fear of them doing the same first. A few moments before the liberation of Philora, Necrolord is about to unchain the undead dragon. Zarya interrupts though, and says he will free the dragon himself since the necromancers have already taken position to attack, and any delay will cause the Nether to catch on. In his delirium, he trusts Zarya, so he gives him the key and runs off. Zarya, of course, never does unchain the dragon, and runs away, throwing the key aside. During the battle, Necrolord searches desperately to find and kill Scorch, but he's nowhere in Philora. Scorch fled the city when the fight started, tattletaling back to Pythus about the necromancer's treachery. The Felden resistance jumps into the fight, taking advantage of the now three-way battle. The necromancers begin to slaughter the Nether forces, and Zulius and the Felden resistance jump into action and strike at both warring factions. The liberation of Philora has begun, and it quickly became a three-way battle between the resistance, the Nether, and the necromancers. In the Necrolord's frantic search for Scorch, he instead comes across Masani and Zulius, and fights them. As Zarya watches that duel from afar, he knows his job is done and the necromancers are doomed. But he has one final loose end to tie up: Lucan and Na. He's a spy, yes, but he cares not for the two standing in front of him, as he has a strong vendetta against the pair. In his fight against them, Zarya cuts off one of Nika's ears and suddenly blinds Lucan by slashing his eyes. Before you come at me saying that's a little graphic, just look at Star Wars Rebels. Maul blinds Kanan in a kid's show, and it would be very similar to that scene. Except it's in Minecraft. Zarya and Nika keep fighting until she disarms him, and he could have run away or used necromancy to continue on, but he just stands still and lets Nika stab him. Before his strength fully ebbs, he takes off his mask, smiles, and thanks Nika, dying happily in his own twisted way, at least satisfied he's causing them both a good amount of pain with their injuries before he dies. No one beyond the audience in Herobrine would ever know or learn of him being the double agent who helped everything fall into place, and Zarya died as an unsung anti-hero of sorts. It's also symbolic in a way. Zarya thought Necrolord liberated him from slavery in the Nether, but that wasn't true. He was then a slave to Zon and to the necromancers, under the guise of independence and glory. Zarya was never free. He was practically born enslaved, but he didn't want to die a slave. He may have died truly fighting for no side, for no righteous cause, but at least he died free. In the fight, Zulius and Masani encounter the Necrolord, while Lucan and Na face off against Zarya. The Nether troops compose themselves from the surprise attack, and they start slaughtering both necromancers and resistance members alike. The battle is turning in the Nether's favor. Unlike the necromancers who are beginning to lose morale, the people of Felden refuse to back down. They never lose sight of what they're fighting for: their homes, their families, and their freedom. Instead of giving up and despairing, they keep up the fight. Zulius breaks away from his duel for a moment and manages to kill the Wither of Philora, and the people of Felden get a massive morale boost and begin fighting harder than before. Ordinary civilians start grabbing any weapons they can and join the fight. However, the duel between the Necrolord versus Zulius and Masani goes wrong. When Zulius left to kill the Wither, Masani had to fend off CK Voltaris all on her own, but by the time Zulius returns, he sees Masani was killed, and it becomes a one-on-one between the two Ardoni. Zarya is eventually killed by Lucan and Na, and with his death, the last of the necromancers are swiftly killed off. The duel between the Ardoni has moved up to the very tops of Philora, and Zulius finally disarms the Necrolord and knocks him to the floor. Just when Zulius is about to deliver the final blow, Zan utilizes a necromancer trick to distract Zulius and sneaks away, like a coward. Regardless of that, the battle down below came to an end as Alec killed the last Wither skeleton in the city. The battle was won with the necromancers, minus the Necrolord, being effectively wiped out, and all the Nether forces at Philora were destroyed. The rebels won a decisive victory with minor casualties, all thanks to Achillean's master plan, Zulius' leadership, Lucan and Na's resistance group, and last but certainly not least, Masani's sacrifice. While Philora was liberated, the rest of Felden is still under the Nether's grasp, so Zulius and Alec lead various campaigns to free the entire kingdom from enemy control. Their successful uprising helped inspire the people in all the other kingdoms to fight back too. The Tidesinger's enduring faith in Zulius despite their quarrels saved Felden, and Zulius realized Achillean's trust in his friends was what ultimately helped them win their battles. Zulius' purely pragmatic thinking is challenged by the late Tidesinger's perpetual faith. and it starts to change the way he thinks. The Necrolord, unlike Zarya, is a coward, and actually does use a Wither Skull to distract Zulius and escapes with a dirty trick. He runs through the tunnels where the undead dragon was chained and was supposed to be freed. Zahn finds the key on the ground and the dragon still chained, realizing Zarya betrayed him. He hardly has any strength left to fight, so he unchains Ripper and flies to Crown Peak to explain what happened to Pythus, hoping to save his own skin while all the other necromancers are killed. After Tidesinger's memorial, Abigail remembers what Volcanus gave her if she wished to meet again, and returns to the ruins of Ataraxia where she left it without telling anyone. She recovers a little skeleton bird, and just as she releases it, Denny appears behind her. Denny says whatever she's doing, they'll do it together. She smiles as they wait for Volcanus' answer. Denny and Volcanus have their first encounter, and Denny's skeptical, but relents as Volcanus promises he'd help them rescue Saxon, Trevor, Sol, and Nox if they simply help him. Volcanus reveals more about himself, telling of his dead wife and daughter who passed away many years ago. This strikes Denny and Abigail, and they apologize for his losses, and Volcanus genuinely appreciates their sentiments. Back in Crown Peak, the Necrolord arrives atop the undead dragon after fleeing from Philora following his defeat at the hands of Zulius. The Necrolord lands at the bottom of the throne room steps, and as he dismounts, Pythus is already strolling down the stairs with the Angel of Death and Scorch flanking him from either side. The Necrolord attempts explaining what happened at Philora, yet before he can ramble any further, Pythus raises his hand, cutting him off, revealing that he already knew what happened and how his army attacked the Nether forces first, and how Zan was the one who started the fight. Pythus' calm demeanor frightens the Necrolord as he knows it means certain doom, so he raises his staff and commands the undead dragon to attack. And Zan is confused as the dragon doesn't listen. He turns to the sky and sees 4 withers surrounding him, their gaze focused on the dragon. Pythus lifts Zan by the neck and takes his staff, handing it to the Angel of Death and explaining that he had been researching how the bonds between dragon and rider works, all thanks to Saxon and Trevor. He had finally learned how to take control of the undead dragon, so the Necrolord's services were no longer needed. He throws the Necrolord into a recently dug out pit and finds himself surrounded by undead of all kinds, and they tear the old Voltaris apart, ending the last of the necromancers once and for all. And now Pythus has gained one of the greatest weapons for himself, the undead dragon. The Knights of Ardonia crash land in Kaltaria after the Battle of Frostburn, where they meet with the Ardoni Masters and inform them of the Tidesinger's death. The Ardoni hold a memorial for Achilian Nestoris, honoring his life and noble sacrifice. The Masters want to opt out of the war since their trump card failed, but Ria has to find a way to stop their cowardice. The Knights call for a meeting with the Masters and their highest-ranking soldiers, and Ria's first step towards earning her leadership role is convincing the Masters to continue to fight. With Grek, Hubris, and Master Aurelius taking her side, Ria succeeds. She feels like she has to be the best leader she can for everyone else's sake, like the Tidesinger was. Ria has had almost 2 whole seasons of slow character development, all leading to this point. And now that Ria finally is the captain of the Resistance, it feels earned, and she has a reason to be in this high position. The Knights prepare to head south and send messenger birds to every village and every settlement to let the people know that they have not been defeated. Ria wants to give the people of Ardonia a message of hope during this darker time, inspiring them the way the Tidesinger would have. Once Ria is done, Master Aurelius comes to have a talk with her. He informs Ria something the Tidesinger told him before he died. Ria was the descendant of a champion. Osivian's dad, her grandpa, was a champion before Thalius, which is why her family was entrusted to keep the Prime Song safe after the First Great War. She remembered all of the horrible things Achillean taught her about champions, and now she has her own struggle of acknowledging who her family is. The same struggle Sen is facing. Master Aurelius says the Tidesinger withheld that information so she wouldn't have any more stress. However, he was planning on telling her after the Frostburn battle, had he lived. Ria and Sen both have to come to terms with who they are, and instead of joining the other knights heading straight for Carthan, Ria travels alone to her old home in Sindaria first. Another conflict Ria now faces is becoming more pragmatic since she's the resistance leader, especially concerning Sen. Deep down in her heart, Ria knows Sen would never join the Deathsinger's cause, but all the evidence is stacked against what she desperately wants to be true. Ria has to think rationally and cast away her feelings, and for her own sake, blocks out any possibility of Sen still being on her side. Meanwhile, in Hailstone, Sen is taken to meet with the Deathsinger again to learn more about the Voltaris clan. Sen can tell Ingressus is behaving a lot different than their last conversation. He doesn't seem so distant and tries to be more personal with Sen by sharing the story of his clan and Thales and Daris' massacre against his camp. Since the Vault fight, Sen's worldview of the Voltaris has slowly but surely been shattered. But this is what destroys it once and for all. His idolization of Thales is destroyed when Ingressus tells him what being champion really meant, and Sen can no longer bring himself to hate all the Voltaris. Sen knows a battle took place not long ago, and when he asks Ingressus what happened, Ingressus hesitates when he admits that he killed Achilian. Sen has an emotional reaction hearing this, and another terrifying truth clicks in his head. If he killed Achilian, there had to be only one reason why he did it. He's mortified upon discovering the Deathsinger has all 4 prime songs and is terrified for his life and all of Ardonia. Ingressus tries to gain Sen's trust by teaching him more about the Voltaris and how to fight like one of them, but Sen wants nothing to do with the Deathsinger. Olmec and Sen grow closer together, and Delthius continues ignoring his clanless brother. Ingressus continues attempting to mentor Sen, paralleling how Achilian mentored Ria. Because of Olmec, Sen finally accepts that he is a Voltaris and that he always had been one of them. He's still very wary of the Deathsinger, but little by little, his fear ebbs every time they talk. Sen has been in Hailstone for a few weeks now, and though he's learned a lot from his brothers and Ingressus, he wants to escape and rejoin the Knights. Now that Sen knows who he is, he wants to use his unique role to keep fighting for what was right. Sen was not going to deny his Voltaris heritage. Rather, he would try to bring peace between the clans because he was half Sindaris and half Voltaris, which is the same way Olmec views their lineage. Delthius doesn't care about Sen's plan, but Olmec obliges and helps Sen get out of the city, and Sen begs Olmec to escape with him. Olmec just looks down at his cane and missing leg and tells Sen he'd only be a hindrance and would just slow him down. Sen doesn't want to leave him there, but Olmec insists that he goes alone, saying something like, "I'll be okay. Ingressus is here and he will keep us safe. I'll miss you, Sen. I hope we see each other again soon." The clanless Ardoni reluctantly leaves Hailstone and runs away from the mighty city alone, and the Deathsinger watches Sen disappear into the snowy plains from his balcony, but does nothing to stop him. Sen ventures into the frigid mountains of Northwind and survives, and he finds himself on the border of Sindaria. He recognized the scenery and navigated his way to his old home, now overgrown with wildlife and all abandoned. The mood is somber as Sen walks around to his old room and the field where he and Ria sparred for hours on end. Sen sighed, taking it all in, thinking about everything that's happened since the good old times. His thoughts, however, are interrupted by a familiar voice.
Sen?
He spins around to see none other than Ria, who also came to Sindaria to reflect on the past, but for a completely different reason. They stare at each other, and Sen is slightly apprehensive, but a part of him is happy to see Ria. Sen is open to making amends and healing their broken relationship. Ria, however, is much more defensive, and keeps her pragmatic belief that Sen is a traitor. Both of their journeys have led them here, and now they must choose to either keep letting their differences alienate them from each other, or to finally tear down the walls between them. They have a massive disagreement, and Ria draws her spear and holds it in a defensive position when Sen takes a few steps closer to her. Sen's eyes widen, and he looks hurt, but this makes Ria double down on her belief, thinking it's a manipulation tactic. Sen tries telling her he's not there to harm her, and he keeps his iron sword slung across his back to prove it. Ria takes a few deep breaths before she focuses on Sen, quietly says, "I'm sorry," and lunges forward to attack him. Sen remembers what Ingressus taught him and quickly grabs his sword to block her attack, and they start fighting in their old village. Sen is trying to reason with her and goes on defense, much like he used to do when they sparred as kids. Ria wasn't having any of it at first, and just kept on asking Sen why he would betray them. After a few minutes, Sen used his song to defend himself from Ria, causing her to stumble backwards and fall to the ground. Her spear was knocked out of her grasp, and instead of pointing his sword at Ria, Sen reached out for her hand to help her back to her feet, mirroring the Season 1 scene. This time, when Sen offers Ria his hand, she's the one who tricks Sen and pulls him right back into fighting. They both let out all their unchecked anger into this fight, and after they've both collapsed on the ground, exhausted and tired, Sen finally asks Ria, "Are you done?" Ria answers in a snarky tone, something like, "I don't know, are you?" In between tired breaths, Sen just looks over at Ria, and Ria looks back at Sen's eyes and sees real kindness. Sen is about to say something, but Ria cuts him off, only now realizing just how irrational she was acting. Ria apologizes to Sen first, showing maturity because she knows she did more wrong than Sen did, yet she framed him as the bad guy. Ria genuinely regrets what she did, and Sen accepts her apology and admits to Ria his own wrongdoings as well. Ria tells Sen everything about her being a champion and becoming the leader of the resistance, and Sen then shares the truth of him being half Voltaris and being trained by the Deathsinger. He also tells Ria what she'd unconsciously known from the start. He never was a traitor. The two Ardoni take the first steps to fixing their relationship, though they still have a long way to go before they'd ever be as close as they were in Season 1. And not long after, they journey together to rejoin the other knights for the final battle of the war. Meanwhile, Vulcanus, Denny, and Abby head to a hidden nether portal, one too small for Luna and Thunderdome, yet big enough for smaller dragons like Sol and Nox. Abby and Denny say goodbye to their dragons and they head inside. Once there, Volcanus pretends to betray them as they're surrounded and taken to the deepest, most secluded dungeon in the city. Abigail wakes up to find Saxon and Trevor on the opposite side of the dungeon. However, they look unbearably weak and exhausted, barely even clinging to life, all because of the many cruel dark magic experiments Pythus performed on them and their dragons. Just when they start despairing, Volcanus appears, and Denny tears him a new one like he did Alistair. Volcanus places his hands behind his back, winks at them both, and this confuses them so much that Denny stops ranting. Volcanus beats up the two Natharan guards, upper-kicking one and nailing him to the roof while headbutting the other, sending him all the way across the hall, all with his hands still behind his back. After opening the door, Abigail tries punching him, but this does absolutely nothing to the Natharan, and the two knights demand an explanation. He instead ushers them to free Saxon and Trevor and follow him as there's not much time left. Once they're somewhere safer, Volcanus gives Saxon and Trevor some healing potions while handing the knights their weapons and armor. Volcanus explains he did that to figure out where they were keeping Saxon and Trevor, since he never had access to their dungeon before, and he needed the reactions to be genuine. Abigail demands more openness from now on, and after Saxon and Trevor semi-recover, Volcanus tells them Kiki will guide them to their dragons. We get a fun little nether prison break sequence, as Saxon and Trevor rescue their dragons and Volcanus sneaks into the treasure room. He says since he's fulfilled his end of the bargain, it is only fair Abigail honors hers, as he motions to the ender chest in the center. He needs her to open it, and inside King Pythus' personal vault, he finds the nether blade and nether crown, two artifacts he hadn't seen since the day King Chronos was murdered. Volcanus has finally truly declared war on Pythus after all these years, and intends on using the items the false king locked away so no one could judge whether or not he was the true heir to the throne. Volcanus reveals he's the rightful Nether King and gives Abby and Denny some gifts. He hands Abigail a full encyclopedia of the end, and Denny a bottle of dragon's breath, vaguely explaining what it does when you drink it. Volcanus tells them to follow him as they reunite with Saxon, Trevor, and Kiki, now also accompanied by Sol and Nox. Volcanus reminds them where the exit portal is and tells them he will do all he can to stop Pythus before he finds out. He leaves with Kiki, wishing them good luck, and the group sneaks through the city until they see a portal in the distance. However, a passing wither spots them and begins firing at them. They run for it, and Sol and Nox go through first, followed by Saxon and Trevor. And when Abigail and Denny are about to cross, Denny instinctively pushes Abigail so she goes through before him, and just then, a blast hits the portal and it explodes, leaving Denny stranded alone in the nether. Denny looks back where the portal once stood, now nothing more than a broken obsidian frame. The wither is still floating by, and he hears the enemy mobilizing to see what the commotion was. Denny realizes his situation is as dire as it can get. He's locked in a literal hellscape surrounded by nothing but demons and monsters. Denny still composes himself and makes a plan. 100 wither skeletons and a dozen Natharans charge at him through the bridge, yet his resolve never wavered. For he had one mission and one mission only in his mind: get back home. Denny decided something was more important than the sheer amount of fear he felt: returning to Ardonia and seeing his family again. He pulls out the dragon's breath and drinks it as he drops the bottle and it shatters on the ground. His indigo eyes glow a majestic purple as he stared down his charging foes, placed his helmet back on, and ignited the enchantment of his sword. He solemnly took a deep breath, readying himself, and charged back at the nether forces. The wither fired at him, but he dodges every single shot and clashed with the army, desperately fighting through the city in the hopes of finding another portal. Denny spots one in the distance and runs to it, killing anyone in his way. Random Natharans, Strider Riders, and more withers join in the fight to kill the trespasser on their home. The dragon's breath gave him tremendous strength, yet he knew the effects would not last long as he felt its strength fluctuating. He even unconsciously used end magic, and after throwing his sword right through a Natharan, he instinctively stretched out his hand and it flew right back to him. However, it wasn't long until Denny was struck once by a Natharan, then again by a wither blast, then again, and again, and again. But Denny kept fighting, pushing through it all until he came to the steps of the portal. He was crawling towards it, too weak to stand, desperately trying to get through as hundreds of bodies lay behind him while withers floated above, watching the desperate knight trying to make his way home. Loud footsteps can be heard, and a Natharan wielding a massive axe appears, for it was King Pythus himself who went to see the commotion. Pythus steps up and crushed Denny's foot with his own, preventing him from moving further. He then ripped his helmet off just to see the poor knight's face before he killed him, staring into Denny's indigo eyes. All the false king saw was a poor boy hiding his absolute fear with the defiance of a true knight. Pythus merely snarled at this and brought his axe down on him, ending the farmer's life as well as Denny's last stand. The others saw the portal deactivate from the overworld, and stared in fear as they realized Denny never made it out. None of them knew what happened, but they were all terrified for Denny and had no way of knowing if he survived. Thunderdome felt the moment Denny was struck down, as the bond between them was broken at his death. He lets out a heartbreaking roar and flies off, despite all the others yelling at him to come back. Denny's death took a huge toll on all of them, and Saxon and Trevor also needed some time to recover, physically and mentally, from their time as Pythus' captives. One of Abigail's biggest struggles is grappling with the idea that Denny's death was her fault, and believing his death could have been entirely avoided had they walked through the portal together, instead of one by one. She laments and cannot imagine how his family will look when they discover what happened. She questions everything she's done, and whether or not she should even be the Ender Queen, asking why the End called her, and not someone more worthy. Meanwhile, Tigran's secretive schemes begin falling into place as the Deathsinger gets his redemption arc. Only the few extremists Tigran trusts know about his plans post-Meridian, and Delthius was not one of them. Tigran thinks lowly of Delthius because of his perceived cowardice, the fact that his brother is a clanless rebel, and that his other brother is a pacifist whispering around ideologies of peace rather than vengeance. Only Lucidius and a few others know what Tigran's been up to. Thanks to Lucidius spying on Deathsinger, they know he plans on betraying the Nether, so they planned a counterattack that would thwart the Deathsinger's coup d'etat. Tigran already sowed the seeds of an alliance with King Pythus earlier in Season 3 to crush Ingressus and make the Voltaris powerful again. The audience would have had no idea about this aspect of Tigran's conspiracy. There would have only been slight allusions to it. He and Pythus are ready for the Deathsinger and Volcanus to walk straight into enemy territory, being vastly outnumbered and outsmarted. After grieving and gaining back strength, the 3 remaining knights made the decision to focus on winning the war so Denny's death would not be in vain. Abigail also remembers that Volcanus told her about something called the Ender Trials. They go to the End so Abby can get the Ender Blade and prove herself worthy to the End. They spot Thunderdome, who established himself in the city, but the two groups stay out of each other's ways. Endermen teleport in front of Sol and Nox and guide them to an End Crystal to heal further. But Saxon and Trevor refuse the healing for themselves and accompany Abby and Luna to the trials. Abigail takes the Ender Blade from its resting spot, and the platform begins to descend as the trials begin. Saxon and Trevor wish her luck while Luna becomes worried, but is reassured by the two knights. The ambiance has shifted and is more illusory and dreamlike than before. These trials test all areas of an Ender Knight's being: physical, mental, and emotional. When Abigail spins around to look for the others, in their place stands Denny, sporting his original farm clothes from Season 2. Abby still blames herself for his death, but this trial tests her ability to let go of her regrets and work to create a better future. Abby's surroundings change once again as she emerges in the second trial, a talk with Mr. Finch. She has to learn to accept her responsibility and all it implies, and Abby feels a pang of guilt for refusing to talk to him after she ran off. The third trial is a confrontation with Alistair to understand what it means to rule as queen and serve as a knight. The fourth trial, Abigail comes face to face with the spirit of the late Ender King Rendor, who finally reveals the gravity of her place in all this and what would happen if she died. Now I can finally reveal more about our rewritten End lore, since the audience would learn alongside Abigail. All the realms need to stay in a balanced harmony, so when the End rises, the Nether must follow, and vice versa. If the balance is broken, the existence of all 3 realms and the higher realms is in danger. The End stores its magic in its knights, giving them strength, yet also depending on them to keep the balance in order. The End has become weak in the last 100 years, especially with the 3-way villain alliance, and it depleted the last of its energy to Abby and the others. When past Ender Knights or Kings died, the End could manage, but now it was far too fragile. We learned some of this lore in Herobrine's rewrite, but in this talk with Rendor, Abigail would really learn what that means and all that her death can cause. Also, everyone else in the trials is an illusion. The End is merely testing Abby. Yet King Rendor is different, as she sees the real ghost of Rendor as what we've named an Ender Spirit. The strongest and wisest Ender Knights can turn into beings like Force Ghosts after death, and Rendor is one of them. Ender Spirits cannot leave the End, and they have a somewhat purple and translucent appearance with magenta highlights. Rendor is somewhat shocked seeing a female Ender Knight, but instead of chastising her like Alistair, he says there's never been a female Ender Knight before, yet he will trust the End's decision in choosing her. The 5th and final trial begins next, a fight with Volcanus. She needs to understand what must be done to keep the balance, and after she hesitates killing him and gives him his sword back, her armor glows a mix of Ender Purple and Nether Orange. The trials end, and the Ender Crown doesn't light up for her. Abigail, being the End's embodiment of resolve and willpower, doesn't give in to her despair this time and gives a speech to the Endermen and hatches a plan. Saxon, Trevor, Sol, and Nox would stay in the city to heal and prepare its defenses, while she and Luna go on one final secret mission. In Nazgard, Pythus learned of the successful campaign led by Zulius and Alec to free Feldon, and before he could prepare a counterattack, loud footsteps reverberated in the room. Volcanus entered the game board after stepping out of the shadows, enraging Pythus. The Death Singer, Tigran, and a dozen Voltaris warriors enter soon after, and the throne room confrontation is very similar to the script. Pythus merely laughs at their defiance, a terrifying mocking laugh. He says they should have simply looked inwards for leeches in their ranks, and Ingressus' eyes widen as he looks at Tigran, who's smiling deviously. Pythus orders the Angel of Death to slaughter the Voltaris at Hailstone, and Volcanus confronts Pythus. The entire city becomes a slaughterhouse as Netharans fought each other and Withers blasted one another. Some supported the true Nether King while others remained loyal to Pythus despite learning the truth. Tigran may have outsmarted Ingressus in the throne room, but he didn't account for everything. After Pythus and Tigran reveal their double crossing of the Death Singer, Lucidius stabs one of Ingressus' loyalists, starting the clash. Pythus sent the Angel of Death to begin the slaughter at Hailstone, and Ingressus flew off to try and stop him. Tigran sprinted to catch Death Singer and 2v1 him with the Angel of Death, and Ingressus threw the Angel to the ground and fought them both. Ingressus ignored Tigran, his main focus being to stop the Angel from destroying his clan, having a not now Tigran attitude because something far more important was at hand. The Angel of Death gets away because of Tigran, and Ingressus looks up at the portal, horrified to see the Angel flying through it, knowing it's all over. Tigran wastes no time firing his Aggressium at the Death Singer's back, and as Tigran wickedly grins, Ingressus turns around, hardly even injured. Tigran's best attack merely caused the Death Singer to stumble, and Ingressus stares at Tigran with pure, unadulterated rage. Tigran's face morphs from a look of victory to nothing but fear as the Death Singer charged at him. Ingressus barrages every Aggressium attack possible at him, and after 10 seconds of getting absolutely ragdolled, Ingressus Spartan kicks Tigran into a pit of soul fire.
This is Sparta!
Tigran falls into a literal pit of fire, and the Death Singer stands above him, watching Tigran suffer trying to climb out. Tigran was defeated in 10 seconds, even though the Prime Songs pushed Ingressus to drag out Tigran's torment. The Death Singer wanted nothing more than to watch Tigran burn for all he'd done, but Ingressus turns around and leaves Tigran for dead because, unlike the latter, he cares more about his clan than revenge. A few strikes into their fight, Pythus confesses his crimes to his brother, and Volcanus says he already knows what he did to their father. Yet Pythus corrects him. He tells of all of his crimes. How he killed their mother by pushing her off a balcony because he thought her weak. How he's guilty for his niece's death as he was annoyed by her sheer existence. And finally, how he had Volcanus' wife murdered since she discovered the truth of their daughter's death. Volcanus lost it, ignoring his people's oath to never use magic against one another, and used his knowledge in nether magic to attack his brother, going as far as utilizing dark sorceries in his rage. While Ender magic is more passive, Nether magic is dynamic and active, and easily visible. Pythus' bait worked, and called for his people to bear witness to Volcanus breaking their ancient oath, and when everyone saw, Pythus used his own magic and sorceries to counter his brothers, engaging in a battle of both physical might and magical prowess. It looked like a dance of weapons clashing and sorceries flying, a beautiful spectacle to behold. Despite Volcanus' best efforts, Pythus proved to be way more powerful and with one quick strike, sent his brother skating across the floor of the throne room. All of Volcanus' remaining sympathizers are killed, and Pythus berates his brother for acting all high and mighty when all of a sudden, a roar is heard, and Pythus is bathed in magenta-colored flames. Abby and Luna arrive with some Endermen, and Volcanus escapes with them. Pythus orders Lucidius to regroup at Crown Peak and sees Tigran climb out of the soul fire pit. Yet he doesn't care, and tells Lucidius to just do whatever he wants with him. Pythus turns to his commanders and tells them to ready the undead dragon, for they will march to the end with an enormous army, leaving Scorch and the Angel of Death at Crown Peak just in case. In spite of that, this is not the end for Tigran. His body is charred and burned from the fires of the Nether, yet his durability and indomitable will allowed him to escape the blue flames, badly scorched and barely alive. Since his body was consumed by the Nether soul flames, we thought this would also weaken Tigran's connection to his songs, just to make him suffer more for his evil deeds. Tigran leaves the Nether once he's finally able to walk again, having survived the Death Singer's pure wrath and the unforgiving soul fire. Every single slight movement makes his entire body ache and scream with pain, yet Tigran's sheer hatred is what drives him to keep going forward. He endures his burns long enough to regroup with the few extremists left at Crown Peak, and aside from Sen and the Death Singer himself, they are the last remaining Voltaris. Abby and Volcanus talk more, and Volcanus is the most emotional we've seen him after his plan failed, and he knows everything Pythus did. He says how Abigail and his daughter would have gotten along, and just how much she reminds him of her, but all grown up. Abby slightly smiles and tries to reassure him, and Volcanus leads Abby to an ancient, long-forgotten place within the End to find reinforcements. The seemingly abandoned city is in ruins, and Volcanus says this place was once a hub of end magic, where old creatures called Enderlings were abound, and hopes that some are still alive. Yup, we're adding Minecraft Dungeons mobs. The Endrealm needs more inhabitants and an actual army. From the darkness, glowing eyes open and they reveal themselves as watchlings. Luna growls when suddenly blastlings and snarelings are seen at the tops of buildings, and a massive creature teleports in front of them, the last Endersent. A powerful creature that has acted as a pseudo-guardian of the End ever since the last Ender Knights disappeared a century ago. Abigail recognizes the Endersent as the one who saved and healed her in Season 2, and walks up to it despite Volcanus' warning. There would be some foreshadowing for the Dungeons mobs throughout Seasons 2 and 3, and Gallius indirectly references the Endersent himself, so him saving Abby doesn't just come out of nowhere. The last Endersent stares at her, and Abigail speaks of how they're at war and they need his help. The Endersent looks at her, and Abigail says she will fight whether they join or not, and how despite never asking to be given such a great destiny with an overwhelming burden, she will see it through because that's what her duty is. As Abby begins to walk away, the Endersent smashes the ground and a shockwave explodes, and a bunch more Enderlings of all three kinds teleport in, and Abigail looks at the Endersent who nods. As she smiles, Luna roars into the sky victoriously, and Volcanus looks proud. The Nether Army arrives at the now fortified End City, with Saxon and Trevor above the improvised battlements ready for the fight. Saxon had Endermen bring all sorts of materials to make potions with, while Trevor practiced new ways to use enchantment magic. Endermen throw lingering potions as the fight begins, and they hear a monstrous roar from the distance. Pythus has arrived atop the undead dragon, a terrifying combination that doesn't last long as another roar is heard. Thunderdome flies in and engages the undead dragon, knocking off Pythus from its back. Cue epic dragon battle, with a riderless Thunderdome against the undead dragon. Thunderdome is more powerful since he's an alive dragon and actively being fueled by the End, but the undead dragon is noticeably larger and more ferocious, so the fight isn't one-sided. Saxon and Trevor find their courage and face off against the False King despite all he'd done to them, and Saxon uses all the potions he can while Trevor enhances them both even further with enchantment magic. Saxon throws potions at Pythus while Trevor attempts to place curses on him as they fight, yet it's no use, and the two get overpowered and beaten down. However, Abigail and Volcanus arrive atop Luna with an army of Enderlings and the last Endersent, saving Saxon and Trevor and reigniting the dwindling fight in full force. Saxon and Trevor are exhausted, so they mount up Sol and Nox to help Luna fight against the Withers. After the Withers are defeated, the three dragons rush to help Thunderdome fight against the undead dragon. Together, they destroy the insult against nature once and for all. As the undead dragon dies once again, the rulers of the realms fight throughout the city. The End channels all of its power through Abigail, and Pythus throws Denny's sword into the fight and taunts her while telling her what he did to the poor farmer boy. Just like Denny in his final stand, Abby is also finally able to use the End magic in combat, being driven after hearing of Denny's demise. The False King still knocks Volcanus aside and stabs Abigail right through the chest. All it took was one slip-up to end the universe. The destruction of the realms has begun, as all the energy that had been bestowed on Abigail was the last the End could spare, and with her dying, the End begins to fall as the balance is broken. A tremor is felt across all three realms as voids of pure nothingness appear in the End, bottomless chasms open up in the Nether, and rips in reality appear throughout the overworld. Volcanus sees this and has a flashback of his daughter the day she was found dead, and remembers Pythus' confession, reinvigorating him and forces his weary body to rise. Pythus takes his axe out of Abigail and rips the Enderblade out of her hand, raising his axe to finish her, but before he can strike, a ghost-like image appears in front of Abby. The Ender Spirit of Rendor glares at Pythus as he steps back a bit in fear. This was all the time Volcanus needed to grab the Enderblade and wield the blades of both realms together to fight Pythus. Rendor's ghost disappears, and the two Natharans have their final fight, taking them to some small floating islands orbiting one of the larger voids like a black hole. Thanks to the advantageous terrain, Volcanus beats Pythus and has him hanging from the edge of an island. Yet before Volcanus can strike him down, Pythus lets go, and allows himself to be consumed by the void of pure nothingness, preferring to be erased from existence than allow his brother the satisfaction of killing him. Volcanus quickly moves on and takes Abby to an End crystal, but the End is too weak to respond, and Abigail dies as the lights on her armor fade away. Vulcanus remembers his daughter one last time, and through his genuine desire to save Abigail and protect the memory of Venelia, he uses spells of nether magic to try and save her. The End itself senses this, and it too uses the last of its strength, and this harmonious combination of the two realms' powers creates a spell so powerful, it heals and revives Abigail. Once she awakens, the voids begin to close. The chasms reconstruct themselves, and the tears are sealed by Herobrine as the realms are saved and in balance once again. When the Tidesinger dies, his role in the Knights of Ardonia is split between Ria and Ignis. Ria takes the leadership role, and Ignis becomes the new rock for the Knights. Ignis and Achilian were both there to support everyone, and now that the other most morally sound person is gone, Ignis takes up that mantle from Achilian. When the Knights and representatives from all the free territories meet in Tartarus, Ignis reunites with Aaron, who survived the war, and they briefly catch up. Aaron offers Ignis the job again, but Ignis politely refuses. Aaron just says, "Worth a shot," as the two old friends have a good laugh. Morgan and Maxwell are there too, and they helped organize this all in their capital city. In the meeting, some commanders, including Hassan, question the possibility of using the rock giants as weapons against the Nether, just like Malachi used them against Cydonia. Morgan immediately shuts that idea down, since the rock giants are uncontrollable and far too dangerous to use offensively. Sen unexpectedly arrives at Tartarus alongside Ria, and Ignis' stance was proven right as they both explain he was not a traitor, and Ignis is glad to see his friend again. And so, Ignis goes along with the Knights to Crown Peak to liberate Ardonia in the final episode. Okay, since Ignis crosses paths with him here, I may as well discuss one last character, Solomon. As much as I love his stupid death in the script, we have something new for him. Solomon in this rewrite isn't just a lazy bum throughout the war. Instead, he has to earn his keep and becomes the official head alchemist of the Triple Threat Alliance, brewing all sorts of potions for the enemy. He expanded his rudimentary lab into a larger facility and even hired some goons with the threat of either helping him or being enslaved. Now back to the Crown Peak battle, Solomon tries fleeing the scene like a coward after he betrayed all of Ardonia, selfishly abandoning his alchemist crew and taking a whole caravan filled with all the potions they had with him. Ignis coincidentally intercepts Solomon coming out of a secret passageway through the mountains with his potion caravan. Ignis basically goes, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't right," and easily subdues Solomon, bringing 3 carts filled to the brim with potions to the army. And so, Solomon isn't killed, instead sentenced to life in prison for his treacherous actions, and will most likely die of old age in his rotten, lonely, dark, and dirty prison cell. An appropriate fate for Solomon, if you ask me. Ignis also has a funny moment with Grek as he tries to drink a potion. Ignis is curious and says something like, "There's never been a recorded incident of a Jagathan drinking a potion. We're making history here." And then the whole potion incident from the script happens. Ignis takes notes of everything while Grim innocently stands there in the corner, watching.
Guess I'm up for round 3. The Knights of Ardonia storm Crown Peak, seeking to bring an end to this conflict once and for all. In the city, only a few Voltaris show up amongst the Nether forces. Zulius helps lead the fight alongside Ria, splitting their forces to attack the two fronts. Zulius and his team from the south, and Ria and her team from the west. Just before the Knights of Ardonia infiltrate the city, a lightning bolt shakes the ground, and Herobrine teleports in to aid the Knights. Herobrine had seen the Knights continue to fight despite them losing their greatest warrior, earning his respect and inspiring him with their efforts. In Crown Peak, there are 4 Withers, the Angel of Death, Tigran, Lucidius, and Scorch, all facing off against Sen, Ria, Zulius, Grek, Grim, Val, Hubris, Ignis, Borgin, and a few Ardoni warriors from the 4 clans, as well as any remaining soldiers from any of the 6 kingdoms still able and willing to fight. In the west, Herobrine, Sen, and Ria fight one of the 4 Withers, all teaming up to take it out. Val leads the flight team of Felina warriors aiding Zulius' charge on the southern side of the kingdom. Zulius and the rest of the notable resistance members push through to the beacon platform and successfully call in reinforcements from Carthan using the beacon. While the forces begin beaming in, the Angel of Death and the remaining 3 Withers fly in, taking out most of the flight team and destroying the beacon. The loss of the incoming reinforcements causes the Knights to begin to lose the battle, as the Nether and Voltaris take advantage of the opportunity. As Herobrine, Sen, and Ria join the battle at the beacon, a tremor is felt at Crown Peak. Rips and tears in reality start to appear in the sky as Herobrine attempts to fly up and seal the cracks in reality, but he's being blocked by all 3 Withers. The tears cause a weird anti-gravity effect on the battlefield, throwing off both the Nether and the Knights. 1 Ardoni of each clan, Sen, Ria, Val, Hubris, and Zulius fire an Aggressium song at one of the Withers, taking it out, giving Herobrine an opening to begin sealing the cracks in reality. Since Abigail was stabbed, the End is losing the last of its energy, and the balance of the realms are interrupted. Herobrine exhausts most of his energy trying to seal the tears while the knights continue to fight the last of the nether forces. The Angel of Death and another Wither flies up to Herobrine in an attempt to stop him from sealing the tears. Val flies in and fights the Angel, while Herobrine is left to deal with one of the remaining Withers. While this is happening, Sen and Ria stumble upon Tigran. However, this time, they would look at Tigran in horror for a very different reason. Tigran is burnt and scarred beyond repair. He stands there, wincing in pain with every movement he makes. Tigran tries to fire his agrosphere, but it struggles to form, causing Sen and Ria to jump on the attack. This causes Tigran to cancel out his song, and the three begin to duel. The two of them tag team Tigran and kill him much easier this time, as Tigran is barely able to do much with his injuries. Ria slices Tigran's arm off with her spear, causing him to drop Thalias's enchanted broadsword. Sen picks up Thalias's sword, and for just a split moment, has a slight look of pity on his face, before he stabs Tigran in the chest with Thalias's sword, truly earning it. And just like that, Sen and Ria have finally killed the person responsible for all their pain, all their anger, and all their loss. At the beacon, Grek fights Scorch and Hubris fights Lucidius, while the other knights are busy finishing off the last of the ground forces. Scorch thrusts forward with his weapon at Grek, causing Grek to block it with his double-bladed sword. While their weapons are interlocked, Grek takes advantage of this moment, and uses his strength to spin his whole sword around, causing Scorch's weapon to twist out of his hands. Before Scorch can even react, Grek continues the momentum of his sword spin and decapitates Scorch. In one swift spin, Grek has defeated Scorch. Hubris and Lucidius duel each other. Lucidius swings towards Hubris' head, but he blocks it, holding his sword with both of his hands. Hubris steps forward, moving right in front of Lucidius while still in sword lock. Hubris slides his sword down Lucidius' blade and slashes him right across the chest. Hubris has defeated one of the last remaining Voltaris, other than Sen and Ingressus, but we'll get back to that later. Herobrine is almost done sealing the tears in reality as the Wither continues to shoot Wither skulls at him. Herobrine teleports to dodge most of them, but with every teleport, a tear rips open even more. Herobrine is starting to have enough of this, and he uses his telekinesis powers to throw one of the Wither skull blasts back at the Wither, catching it off guard as Herobrine lunges forward with a trail of lightning following him, and slashes off all three Wither heads in one swing of his sword. This exhausts Herobrine, and he only has enough energy to keep the tears from ripping further, not able to seal them fully. Fortunately for Herobrine, Volcanus had successfully healed Abigail, and the tears begin to seal back up without requiring much energy from Herobrine. Val and the Angel continue duking it out in the air. The two fly apart and aim back towards each other again and again and again. Just like a game of chicken, the two fly quickly towards one another to do one final strike. Before the two collide, Val twists in midair, causing one of her blades to slash off one of the Angel's wings, causing him to plummet to the ground. This results in a victory for Val and the death of the Angel, the Flying Rat. Ria continues to lead the rest of the counterattack, carrying on the legacy of the late TideSinger. With the help of Zulius' battle plans and Ria's ability to make level-headed decisions in combat, Ria is able to successfully lead the knights to take out the last Wither. And with that, they finally did it. The knights had beaten Tigran, destroyed the Nether, and killed the last Wither at Crown Peak. Ignis arrives at one of the portals with Solomon, and before they can decide what to do with Solomon, another Wither appears, and Grek pushes Ignis and Solomon through the portal before it gets destroyed. Sen, Ria, and Hubris are caught in the blast radius and are knocked unconscious for a few moments. Val leads the Wither away from the group while they begin to recuperate. Herobrine is looking exhausted, but just before he lifts his sword to teleport away, the knights hear a sound behind them. They hear the sound of a heavy metal object being dragged on a stone floor.
Sen! Sen? Sen!
Are you all right?
You took heck of a blast from that Wither.
It's okay. I'm fine. Where did it go?
It chased after Val. We need to make sure she's safe.
Oh, you mustn't worry about your friend. I'd say your own lives are in far more jeopardy. Sending the majority of your forces into the Nether was a foolish mistake. And now you're all alone with me.
Well, I hate to break it to you, Lava Man, but you're heavily outmatched.
The power I wield is all that is needed to bring you all to your knees.
You needn't worry. Go. We can finish this.
Enough! You are all beneath me. I am the Nether King, Dark Beast, and I will not be humiliated by
Did that get him?
I think so.
Ardonia, a species able to wield great powers, the Sons of War. Tell me, what benefit are these powers if you die the same as any other? And not only in death do you humiliate yourselves. I have seen what they do to you. The songs damage you beyond repair. Your very purpose is to serve as an instrument for their bidding. Ingressus believed the Prime songs would give him strength, but look at how they have served you all. His clan, your resistance, yourselves. That is not power. Let me tell you what real power is. Power is an illusion, constructed constructed in the minds of those who feel it, and I am the most powerful of all.
The Death Singer arrives, and they have the most devastatingly epic battle in the whole show. Death Singer is utterly blinded by fury and goes full offense against Pythus, using the Aggressium, Saporium, and Mobilium primes to their fullest. He fires every Aggressium song he can, attacks from all angles possible, and throws entire buildings and other objects with Saporium songs. He is so blinded by fury that he completely disregards his defense, never once using a Protisium in his assault. Too enraged to think properly, after Pythus ordered the genocide of his people. Pythus uses everything at his disposal and takes advantage of his monstrous strength and durability, while implementing his knowledge of magic to counter Ingressus' barrage of songs. He only learned enough magic to match his brother, and is only above average at best in the craft. His crude spells are no match for the full unleashed power of the prime songs. Pythus notices Ingressus' lack of defense and takes full advantage of it, using a spell to disorient him for a split second and slashes the Death Singer. In this rewrite, Ingressus has all 4 prime songs, so he heals himself with the Protisium and goes back on offense again. But one can only heal themselves so many times. Even the Death Singer has his limits. Ingressus comes to his senses after healing multiple lethal blows and fights defensively now, but it was too late as he was exhausted and couldn't end the fight instantly like he could have had he been sound of mind from the start. Pythus also began to exhaust himself as Ingressus delivered far more punishment in a few minutes than he had endured in a century. The battle reached its climax as they made their way to the throne room, where Pythus lands one last lethal blow across Ingressus' chest, and he can't heal this time. He's completely out of energy. Pythus looks pleased and is about to finish the job when Ingressus lets the prime songs consume him in rage one final time, numbing the pain of his wound, and he attacks. Pythus is shocked, and for the first time ever, he becomes truly afraid. In that final exchange, Pythus realizes he was never the most powerful being. The Death Singer shattered his whole ideology with one slash of his sword. The two run at each other at the same time. Pythus misses, but the Death Singer doesn't. Pythus realizes what happened as he crumbles to the ground, his last thoughts of how it wasn't fair and he didn't deserve it. Basic narcissist stuff. He collapses to the floor, finally dead. And so Pythus, the second son of Chronos, the false Nether King, the Kinslayer, the Usurper, and the most evil mortal in history, has fallen. Sen walks to the throne room alone to find Pythus' dead body and Ingressus clutching his chest. Ingressus tells Sen that all the others are dead and begs him to take Voltar. Almrak, Delthius, and all the other Voltaris had been slaughtered, and even Tigran's extremists at Crown Peak were all killed in the battle. Sen hesitates, but he takes Voltar from the Death Singer's hands and promises to restore the Voltaris clan the way Almrak would have wanted. Ingressus' life story and last words would resonate with Sen more because they actually had a slight bond in Hailstone, and Sen understands the meaning behind everything Ingressus admits. When he confesses to Sen that he was wrong to ally with the Nether, he's not only admitting that the act of treason itself was wrong, but also that event is what caused all the wars and extremists like Tigran to destroy the Voltaris clan from within. They took Ingressus' act of distress out of context, and it cost him everything. Sen comforts Ingressus and assures him the Voltaris will live on, as Ingressus watches the sunset one last time. The Battle of Crown Peak brought the Second Great War to an end, and the Ardonia Masters allowed Sen to restore the Voltaris clan. Master Aurelius is the one who convinced the others, and a quick scene of Sen succeeding at redeeming the Voltaris where Ingressus failed would add so much more finality to his arc. Sen becomes the Voltaris Master and re-establishes the clan, founded upon ideals of peace, forgiveness, and unity. The new Voltaris clan was rooted in Almrak's beliefs, and Sen was content with his new role carrying on the legacy of his late brothers and made peace with being the successor of the former Death Singer, Ingressus Voltaris. Ria continued leading the Knights of Ardonia after the war ended, continuing to fight for what was right. She aspired to be like the Tide Singer, Achilian Nestoris, and though Ria could never replace him, she wanted to keep his spirit alive through her leadership and service to the people of Ardonia. Ria's arc is nearly complete. She went from a doubtful fighter in a ragtag rebel group to the highest-ranking leader of a continent-wide resistance. maturing slowly and growing more competent through each conflict. Both Ria and Sen come out of the Second Great War as fully developed characters. The Deathsinger and Tidesinger were never able to make amends while they still lived, but Sen and Ria did. They had already begun to amend their friendship and, in time, would eventually regain the connection they had all those years ago in Season 1. Sen and Ria are the ones who finally break the cycle of violence between the clans, completing their character arcs and forever solidifying their places in history. In the aftermath, the Ardonia decide to leave the Prime Songs in the hands of Herobrine, who's recovered from the battle and his vessel is back to its full power. The Primes would be safe in Herobrine's dimension, and they trusted his judgment to choose whether an Ardonia is worthy to wield them in the future should the need arise. He returns to his home with one final bolt of lightning, having helped save Ardonia and the realms from total ruin. Zulius' back got obliterated from the violent crash after his brief encounter with Pythus, and sadly he ends up with a limp. Ria gave him the Tidesinger's double-sided staff since his was broken in the battle. Zulius used Achilian's staff to help him walk rather than to fight, as he would no longer be able to and resigned from the Knights of Ardonia. Even though Zulius retires and is no longer a warrior, he takes up the mantle of the next leader of Ataraxia, overseeing its reconstruction and keeping Gallius' original vision for the Haven alive. Zulius passes on the Tidesinger's morals and extraordinary faith to the younger Ardoni, using him as an example of not only a great leader, but also a great friend who trusted those he loved beyond belief. In the epilogue, Abigail, Saxon, Trevor, their dragons, and the Endersent have one last meeting with Volcanus at the steps of a nether portal. Abby and Volcanus bid each other farewell, and Volcanus says should she need his help in the future to feel free to contact him. Abigail thanks the new Nether King, who sees his daughter's reflection in Abigail one last time. Only this time he sees her alive and happy, imagining how she'd have looked as a proper Nether princess, had she gotten the chance to grow up. He smiles and walks through the portal, determined to rebuild the Nether and undo all the evils of Pythus' reign. Abby and her friends have plenty of work to do themselves. The Endermen and Enderlings repair the damage of the battle as the Endersent, Abigail, and Luna overlook the repairs. Saxon and Trevor settle in their rooms. Dragon eggs are spread across the overworld again to find more Ender Knights, and the three travel to Pinkelson Farms. Abby returns their family sword and reveals Denny's fate. John is shown sad at his brother's death, yet proud of what he accomplished after hearing his story. John invites them to stay for dinner, and they gladly accept. The story ends with Mr. Finch coming out of his house one morning and finds Luna outside with Abigail beside her. Mr. Finch drops his sickle in surprise and runs to Abigail as she runs to him. The two hug each other and Abby apologizes for everything. He's just glad to see her again, and Luna approaches from the side and gently nudges Mr. Finch, who, although scared, is reassured by Abby, and he pets the mighty dragon. The camera slowly pans out as Abby and Mr. Finch reunite, concluding the Ender arc and Abigail's story. In Philora, the rebels have won against both the necromancers and the Nether, and Zulius and Alec lead the remaining civilians and armies to take back the entire kingdom. However, Alec still dies, only this time it happens a bit later, during the final battle of the series at Crown Peak. Alec falls at the hands of Scorch, keeping his original cause of death. All that changed is the time it happens. Lyra is also killed in this battle, as she went to honor Masani and continue fighting for her. Lyra is the one who ignites the city beacon as she's shot down by skeletons, ironically enough dying the same death as the original Masani. At Crown Peak, Scorch also finds his end, courtesy of Grek. Lucan and Na stayed in Felden to recover from their injuries while the Knights of Ardonia won the Second Great War. The two of them started the chain of events that led to Felden's liberation, inspiring the whole kingdom to fight for freedom. Throughout Season 3, they slowly became closer together despite the occasional quarrel, relying on one another especially in their final fight. They've both developed a ton from when we first met them in Season 1. Lucan really did become a hero fighting for a greater cause rather than a selfish street rat. And Na finally completed her goal of eradicating the necromancers and is no longer a lonely castaway. Lucan stays with Na despite his blindness, and it's symbolic because unlike other Felinas he chased in the past, he learned to love Na for who she is, not her outward appearance. The arc ends with them at the top of their new home, leaning on each other, as the sun rises over the jungles of Felden, at last concluding the story of these two outcasts we've come to love. Ignis survives the Second Great War, and he's there when Sen becomes the Voltaris Master. He joins the Knights of Ardonia on their journeys, and he's the one who reads the Carthan and Cydonia section on the Walls of Time in the epilogue, deservedly replacing Nitsuki. In Carthan, Borgen led the Reformed Council to restore Cydonia's once fertile lands and uphold peace between the two neighboring kingdoms. Meanwhile, Maxwell becomes the international ambassador for Carthan, advocating for unity and reconciliation between Magnites and humans, using his own experiences to help the cause. Ignis stays with his friends and serves as the honorary chronicler of the Knights of Ardonia, documenting the group's adventures and finally receiving the happy ending our favorite Magnerite deserved.
Alright then, it's time for the final rewrite. We've stolen it from CK, and I'm just gonna start with Greg, so let's just get into it. She's not paying me for this anyways. So, we all know Greg, our favorite Jagathan pal who first showed up in Season 2. Most of Greg's personality has a pretty solid foundation, so we won't be changing him fundamentally as a character. Rather, we'll build upon it and use him properly within the story. Greg was always the class clown, the one we all wished to be, and he stood out amongst crowds to cope with his fears. He was abandoned by his parents as a child, and is one of the few Jagathans left in the world. Greg was often driven out of places as a kid for his antics, and he was left to wander Ardonia in search of his kind. Greg learned to survive on his own, getting into many fights and eventually finding his way into the Knights of Ardonia. Now, Greg is closest to Sen in the Knights of Ardonia. Sen and Greg are like two of Thales' own brand peas in a pod. They're besties, and their back-and-forth interactions in the story make for some wholesome comedy. Sen grew up an outcast, as we all know, and Greg also knows what being an outcast is like. He wants to help Sen find his place in the world, as he did, and hopefully he can help him find Oakendale too. Greg also has a strong relationship with Onyx, who looks up to him secretly with a little brother energy, and I imagine their relationship going in a sibling type of direction. They often train together, and while Onyx refuses to admit it, he learns a lot from Greg about humility and how to be a better fighter. And as for Greg and Hubris, they honestly have kind of a comedic bickering contest going on, although I honestly doubt Hubris sees it that way. Oh, and lastly, Greg is also the only one in the Knights of Ardonia that can actually understand Grimm, which is funny given literally no one, including Greg himself, has even heard of his species before. Bro just magically knows exactly what he's saying, word for word, but only translates for the others when he finds it funny, which is honestly so real of him. Speaking of Grimm,
aha, a he, a who, and I thought my jokes were bad.
Hey, what's up everybody? I'm CK Voltaris, everybody's favorite Joker impersonator and Pythus simp. CK has mistakenly given me the privilege of rewriting Grimm. So let's fuel my crazed Songs of War addiction and just jump right into it. Many moons ago, Grimm lived peacefully in a tribal village on a remote island. His species was completely unknown to the rest of Ardonia, but as fate would have it, a terrible storm hit the island, and his entire village was washed away into the ocean. Grimm was swept into the current, never to see his family again. By chance, he was rescued by a mercenary ship. These mercenaries weren't going to let him off so easily though. Grimm literally owed them his life, setting him on a dark path to pay it off through another group, the Unyielding Legion. And this is where Grimm teams up with Jalkar. Now, after watching Songs of War nearly 6 times a day, no, this is not a joke. Jalkar abandoning Grimm seemed more like an inconvenience than anything else. Grimm isn't even sad, he's just pissed off. Now Grimm has to find another way to repay his debt. After his fight with Abigail, Grimm stumbled out of the crags and happened upon a certain Jagathan. Yep, that's right. Greg finds Grimm and actually tricks him into joining the Knights of Ardonia. Greg magically understands Grimm's gibberish and confidently lies to him, saying they'd help him out, and Grimm dead believes him. So Grimm joins the gang after a few months of innocently following them around. He finally asks Greg when he'll get his debt paid off, and that's when Greg reveals,
"Oh, right, about that, I don't know, I totally bluffed. I was just seeing how long you'd stick around for. You're kinda cute. We'll just keep you anyways."
So in Season 2, please Square Media make it happen, Grimm sees Abigail again, and we could build off their dynamic from Season 1. They fought as enemies originally, but Abigail showed him mercy, and Grimm realized that maybe he was fighting for the wrong side. If the mercenaries who saved him just never found him again, did he really have to pay off that debt? Nah, screw it, he said. He was just gonna stay with the Knights and hope they all died in the Never invasion. L. When Grimm meets Abby with the Knights, he smiles innocently, and Grimm motions to her side, wondering where Sam is. Grimm pats her on the shoulder after finding out, and they have a surprisingly heartfelt moment as they both lost something because of Jalkar. Grimm's importance will be more evident in Season 3. We'll get there soon though. Oh, and you remember that little moment between Ignis and Grimm mentioned in the previous rewrite? I do, says the obsessive Songs of War fan watching this video. Ignis is the unofficial chronicler of the KOA, and he finds an old guide to all the known species of Ardonia. Ignis tries finding Grimm's species, and it turns into this funny interview where Ignis is trying to get information and asking Grimm all these deep questions, but Grimm can't really answer, and Ignis doesn't understand anything he's actually saying. Ignis has the book and is prepared to write down Grimm's answers. Grimm just kind of flails his arms around and yaps in this gibberish language. Ignis just goes, okay, next question? While Ria and Tidesinger are actually doing important things like getting the freaking Prime song they came there for, perchance.
You can't just say perchance.
Okay, now that you have all bore witness to a Pythus simp gaining the ability to write a Songs of War script, you may all sleep peacefully knowing that Grimm's story is now complete. The rewrite is safe in my capable hands. Yeehaw. I'll pass it back over to Star now.
Thank you, Dragon. Next time, please ask first. Alright then, let's move on to Val. But right before that, I wanted to talk about Hubris some in this last rewrite. But unfortunately, since he's already been expanded upon a decent bit in the previous ones, there honestly wasn't much I could do. So I apologize to all of the Hubris fans out there. And with that out of the way, time for Val.
Val is so cool. Like look at her. She's so cool, okay? No one can deny it.
Like Ria, Val is one of the, quote, last remaining female Ardoni, and her rebellious streak should do more with expanding upon that. This also helps to expand on her mentor/mentee relationship with Gallius. While he has trained her both with songs and how to defend herself without, he is quite overprotective of her, similar to her biological family. Val didn't like this, knowing she is strong enough to keep herself safe, and she doesn't like being treated as something fragile. From Val's perspective, she believes she's seen as something helpless despite the training and skills she has. She's been treated the same throughout her entire life and being prevented from doing what she wanted out of fear of being hurt. But here's the thing. We already have 3 girl boss type of characters with Ria, the Mary Sue, Nika, the cat girl, and Abby, who's surprisingly decent in comparison to them. And they're all similar in their motivations because they're female. Excluding Abby though somewhat, as it is a more important part of her arc. Val is kinda the opposite of them. She's very bubbly and a much more feminine character. She's not angry at being treated like she's fragile because she's female. She's angry at being treated like she's fragile because she can take care of herself. For her, being female doesn't play into it. When she meets Sen, she quickly feels much more comfortable around him since he doesn't treat her as the fragile thing she's viewed as. This would accelerate their initial friendship, eventually developing into a much more romantic one. But Val begins suffering the consequences of her idealism and rebelliousness. She is the one responsible for Gallius' death. During the Siege of Ataraxia, Val attempts to face the Death Singer alone, forcing Gallius to reveal himself and distracting Gressus from killing her after giving the Prime Song to Sen and Ria. Gallius' death is like a slap in the face to Val. It makes her heavily reconsider her actions and recklessness. She was never dumb or unserious, yet she was much less self-conscious about the consequences of war and death. Val grows to become much more mature after Gallius' death, considering the possible outcomes of her actions and decisions. She hesitates in killing the Angel of Death as she doesn't want someone else to die because they were trying to protect her like Gallius was. In the end, she does decide to attack though, winning the fight and killing the Angel. Even in the heat of battle, when decisions have to be made in an instant, Val is consistent about making sure to consider all possibilities of her decisions in that split second before she moves. Val becomes much less irrational, often being one of the more reasonable voices in the room, helping to make sure all possible outcomes are considered in any decision.
Haha, Star! I am starting my part now. Anyway, I'm gonna talk about Unk Galley. So strap in, you scallywags. It's time for the unsung captain of the sinking ship to speak. During the Great War, Gallius didn't fight like Valius, but he was involuntarily recruited along with a few other blacksmiths and pacifists instead serve as song retrievers. These recruits were sent to battlefields in the aftermath of a clash to aid survivors, but more importantly, to retrieve any songs they found from dead Ardoni. Gallius saw the devastation left behind everywhere the Ardonia warriors went, and all the wounds caused by songs. Thalius didn't see what happened to the battles after he fought in them, but Gallius did, only furthering the divide between the brothers. And what really fueled Gallius' hatred was that the new masters, with the exception of Master Eggers, cared more about retrieving songs from dead Ardonia rather than burying the bodies or helping survivors. The other song retrievers were just as horrified, and they all banded together to become the founders of Ataraxia. Thalius and Gallius had their fallout soon after. Chat, my ride is here. Hasta luego!
Ooh, sorry, Scribbled. I guess I'll attend your funeral later if I have time. This rewrite was a lot more unserious than the others, but since we've already talked about all the major events, it was only fitting to make the one about the Knights of Ardonia a little more goofy, just like they are. No doubt there's many of you who looked forward to the final 2 rewrites, and I completely understand. The main reason there won't be a 7th rewrite is because things have taken a turn behind the scenes. Alex retired a few months ago, and Scribbled has been hard at work on his own really cool project. I've been prioritizing things besides rewrites, hence the slow upload schedule, and I've been looking forward to creating other kinds of videos for this channel. I also want to give a massive shout out to all the community members who volunteered to help with this video. Let's see if we can name them all in one breath. Scribbled, Star, Valerie, Varric, Dragon, Cobalt, Meowsomnia, Tyler, Clash, Shadow, Luna, Asher, Stopwatch, Luca, Kevin Liberty for voicing Zulius, Game for voicing Greg, and Chronos and Aiden Abina for making fun animations. Let's go, we did it! Thank you so much for watching this rewrite series. It's been quite the journey and over a year-long endeavor from the release of the first rewrite video till now. There are so many rewrite fan arts, renders, and fan animations that have blown me away, and there's still more currently in the works. Let's continue keeping the show alive as we wait for the spin-offs. Before you click off, here's one final compilation of rewrite fan arts for you to enjoy. And thank you for watching.
everybody. Dragon here. Well, the other dragon, not the Pythus simp dragon. It is me, Dragon Defender. Here for one last part. I just wanted to thank CK Voltaris as well as her entire team of renderers and writers for the series. I had this idea many months ago, and I think at the time a lot of people weren't really serious about it, but I was 100% serious about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's been fun. I appreciate her for making the custom intro for this video. I didn't really do much, I literally just ordered everything together, so definitely go subscribe to CK Voltaris as well as all the other Songs of War YouTubers and animators. They're all really amazing. Definitely keep an eye out for Songs of War What If that will be dropping here soon, at least the first episode, as well as the spin-off episodes that Squared Media has officially announced that might be coming at some point next year. But yeah, basically, I kind of just ordered all these. If there are some events that some people might be like, wait, didn't they say the end of this episode says this? yes, basically this is chronological order for the most part. There were just some things that I wanted to put in a certain order just so it transitioned better with the video footage that CK has released. And the ending, I kind of always thought that for the epilogue when they're reading off the Walls of Time, I thought it would be great to have the backstories for some of the other Knights of Ardonia characters be read off during the Walls of Time. So you can kind of get these like little final like tying together loose ends that, you know, were never really answered throughout the series. So that's why I put the final rewrite video mostly at the end, because I just thought it would be really fitting to have the character backstories revealed and some of the other things that were kept a secret throughout the whole series revealed at the epilogue for reading the Walls of Time. With that being said, thank you all for watching. The fact that you've made it this far is actually kind of insane to me. Like, it's just actually crazy. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. This took many weeks to put together. Yeah, and I was also working on this video for finals week, so I am so glad it's done, and I hope you guys enjoy this. And yeah, no, CK lied. This is the quote-unquote 7th rewrite video, so yeah, I guess I did you all a favor, so you can thank me later. But anyways, I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and who knows, you might see me around again. Who knows, anything is possible. But for now, goodbye, and have a good rest of your week. Adios.